when you see the podcast in the picture that was shown to you earlier today, you will say, this is the podcast. The rest of the podcast can stay. That's up to you. But the choice for that lead podcast is not up to you. Now, you will see me one more time if you do good. You'll see me 2 more times if you do bad. Good podcast.
There's sometimes a podcast. How many hosts does a podcast have? There's so many more you could do. Come on. No I podcast. I thought you might do that.
Oh, sure. A man's podcast goes some ways.
Oh, you just like the cowboy.
Yeah, I do.
But you're not doing his voice. You're doing a more generic cowboy.
I'm doing more generic cowboy
There's
voice.
sometimes a buggy. I wish I could do Monty Montgomery exactly right.
Monty Montgomery's Secret Legend of Blank Check.
He's come up before. What episode?
Do you know the guy? Leslye, you can talk about. Do you know who plays the cowboy?
Yes, the producer.
Monty, right?
Yeah.
But was the
Legendary
co-director of Catherine Bigelow's first film, The Loveless.
Excuse me?
Which we covered on the show. And was also the producer of Jane Campion's Portrait of a Lady.
True.
And then produced several of David Lynch's films and appears in this as an actor. Like, has now crossed 3 miniseries in a way, in a capacity that kind of feels like the role the cowboy plays in this movie relative to those people's careers, where it's like, I just roll into town, I make a big impact, I disappear.
There's sometimes a buggy.
I'm working with you very intensely for a short period of time, and then I'm gone.
What were you going to say? What were you going to say about the cowboy?
We've covered him as a director, a producer, and an actor.
That's true. We have.
Well, he, in Room to Dream, he talks about how he just wanted Monty for the role and said, I would like you to play this role. And Monty said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But then people kept calling him, being like, so here are your dates.
Right, which I do think is kind of the Lynch. The funny thing to think about, he's in the TV pilot. We're going to talk about all of this. And you can just imagine the Twin Peaks thing of like, sorry, buddy, now you're just going to be in every 5 episodes. Like, right? It's like, you're the log lady now. You're just going to be showing up.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just you did me a favor for the pilot.
He is very log lady,
That's what I'm saying.
Because the light flickers before he shows up.
I was just double checking. This is his only acting
It's
credit.
his first and only acting
Like, obviously, not only was he not a professional actor, but it's not even like he has a cameo in The Loveless. It's not like he has cameos in his other films he produced.
No.
He does.
Lynch saw him.
Yeah.
And
had already been working with him for like 5 or 6 years at this point.
But do we think he came up with the character looking at him and
Possibly,
thought,
I'm kind of guessing,
or he had the character and then felt Monty's the only person?
When we talked about him in our Loveless episode, and this was before we had researchers, as we were fucking scrambling for context on mic, we were like, who's this guy? And we Googled him and saw a picture of him. We're like, first of all, his name's Monty Montgomery.
Here's the picture. This is his IMDb picture. It looks like a tintype of a bank robber from the fucking 1870s.
We did like 40 minutes of bits of like, how did this man enter through a time warp? So I kind of see David Lynch looking at him.
I believe he wore his own clothes.
Yeah.
And so I believe...
He'd be like, you know what? If I just put you in front of camera and you just say my oblique dialogue, that will have some power to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, in Room to Dream, he says that, or maybe Thoreau says that he said, do you want to run lines to Monty? And Monty was like, I'm good.
Hell yeah.
That rules.
Then showed up. They start the scene. He has no idea what he's saying.
Yeah.
So they just wrote the lines and then taped them on Justin.
We should cut to Justin just covered inside.
Sometimes there's a buggy. You know.
Have you guys seen
You're too
those
busy
pictures?
being a smart aleck to be thinking.
The behind-the-scenes pictures from the filming of The Godfather, where Brando, of course, was in his PQ card era,
right?
And every other cast member. There are photos from The Godfather where you're like, this is one of the most iconic scenes in the history of movies.
Right, and Michael Corleone just has cue cards around his neck
There's
or something.
There's a great one of Duvall, where he literally has 10 different pieces of paper pinned to his wool suit.
But hey,
I've seen this one. It is.
Yeah.
It seems to
Robert Duvall looks like he's doing the Love Actually proposal.
Yes.
And he's just got like giant...
You are perfect.
It works, man. If it works, it works.
That's the thing. If it works, it's working.
I mean, that's so funny, though, especially, I mean, like Clooney, the famous thing with Clooney that I talk about sometimes is that in ER, he would put his sides on his, little clipboard, right? Because he's a doctor.
Yeah.
And he looks down at them
Yes.
all the time. And then it turns into a tick that he uses in all his movies, not to look at things, just because he knows it makes him look cute and vulnerable to go like,
And there's the famous story.
and it's the number one Clooney move is to look down.
There's the famous story when they're making The Peacemaker, the inaugural film released by
DreamWorks.
And his sort of first star blockbuster.
And Spielberg had obviously been like part of the process of him getting on ER and whatever. And he's now on the set of like the first vehicle that a studio is banking on.
Yeah.
And Spielberg comes out from behind the monitor.
That was pre-Batman?
Yeah.
It's
It's
year
the same
before.
year?
Or maybe the same year.
It's
Anyway.
right around the same time. But Spielberg
same
comes
year.
out from behind the monitor and he puts his arm around him and Clooney thinks he's about to get complimented. And Spielberg's like, I swear to God, you'll be a movie star if you can ever stop looking down. You gotta get over
He was
this thing."
wrong.
And I think he knew like the backstory of it.
Right.
But he was like, if you can just fucking nip this one tick in the bud,
Never.
you'll be a movie star.
No, he's going to look down for the rest of his damn life.
Yeah.
Please introduce our show. I have so much to say about this film.
Really?
Mhm.
Had you seen this before?
Yes. I have seen this one before.
Mid, where do you stand on it?
Wait,
This is basically my favorite movie of all time.
I would say
This
it's
was
definitely in my top 10.
In
for sure.
David's Sight and Sound top 10 list.
That's true.
It was on his ballot.
Mhm.
Have we covered? I feel like
I
we
think
litigated
we've
this in
gone
the
through
Elephant
this.
Man
We
episode.
covered. We did I did have Alien
Yes.
on my Sight and Sound top 10.
We did on
Uh-huh.
Patreon.
which we did do on Patreon, and that is it.
Yeah, right.
Of my Sight and Sound top 10. This is the first film we're covering.
Well, you're forgetting I Love You to Death.
Yeah, that was year 10. You
Well,
were forgetting
guys
because
did
it wasn't part of a proper like director
But
miniseries.
you did
It was a Ben's choice.
you did a Kasdan then.
We didn't. No.
No,
Ben sometimes just picks
just
a
gets to
movie
pick a
that he thinks is elemental.
That are usually kind of curated around what was on Comedy Central
And
Yes.
when you were
sort of
like
the early
12 years old.
2000s
Right.
in the
Don't
summer
sell
and the
yourself short.
afternoon.
That's how
They're
I
usually
saw that
curated by like
movie.
what are
Yeah.
the most totemic films in American cinema. It's sort of his
Well,
own Sight and Sound ballot.
What
Yeah.
films start with a freeze frame of a spinning pizza? Which that movie does.
Blank check
Please frame.
with Griffin and David. I'm
I haven't
Griffin.
seen it in so long.
Oh, it's normal.
I'm
Yeah.
David.
It's normal.
It is normal.
It's a normal movie.
Aggressive.
Oh, normal.
Top to bottom, tip to tail.
Not to
This
get
flick is normal.
not to get derailed, but Ben, just give me like one or two other ones that you've picked.
Oh, please.
sure.
Oh, let's run this
no,
game.
you want some
Too
Ben's
little?
choices?
Yeah.
The Man Who Knew Too Little, Under Siege 2, Dark Territory.
We find out halfway through that episode that he had never seen Under Siege 1. He has now since seen it,
I have.
Pretty good.
but at that
It's
point in
good.
time,
It's
when
actually
he
kind of
picked it
better than 2.
as one of his favorite movies of all time,
No.
we said, Ben, you could pick any movie. He said Under Siege 2, and an hour into the conversation, we were like, is this what the character's like in the first one? He's like, I don't know. Wouldn't know. Never seen it.
Fletch.
That was the first one.
Fletch. Yeah.
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 That's
That's a solid choice.
Street Fighter,
Yeah.
I'm on a roller coaster. right now.
Assassin's Creed. There have been 2 video game
No.
movies.
You're a gamer, Leslye. Do you like Assassin's Creed?
No.
Well, here's
No.
what's fun. Neither does Ben. He never played the games before watching the movie, much like
yeah.
Under Siege.
I just got really into it and I was in a bad relationship and I just kind of kept rewatching in the middle
This
of the
happens.
night. And then
He'd
I got
wake
like
up and watch it
obsessed with
again. He saw it
Yeah.
like 30 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought him the Steelbook. It was a nice
Yeah.
present. Wait, are we forgetting one?
There's so many. What do you mean, Joe Dirt?
Joe Dirt.
Joker.
Clifford,
Oh,
obviously.
of course. Clifford. We've done it twice.
We went back for seconds. Clifford 2, Hyper Clifford.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Look,
we're
that's
moving on.
What our show is sometimes, but what it's usually about
is
it's usually a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have
Nicely done.
massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes your failed pilot is retrofitted into a feature film that not only makes David Sims' ballot,
sure.
but ranks number 8.
That's a good question, actually. What do you mean, like on the total?
I
Sight
believe
and
on the
Sound
last
list?
Sight and Sound ballot, it is insane to go like, what is this movie? David Lynch made a 90-minute pilot for ABC that they deemed unairable.
Sure.
Oh, great. So it's lost to time? No, he got a French company to let him film an hour of new footage and edit
It was
the 2 things together.
8th in the critics poll.
Oh, so the movie's a disaster? No, it's considered to be one of the 10 greatest films of all time.
That's true.
Didn't something, I don't know what it was, but something named it the greatest film of the 21st century.
I think that is what it is.
But shortly after it came out.
Yes.
Yeah. Like,
right.
it was just, in 2001.
Yeah.
It was like, this is it. This is the bar.
It is the highest ranked film of the 21st century on the Sight and Sound poll, right? It's the only one in the top 10.
It's actually not.
Fuck. What's
Who
higher?
else is it?
It's In the Mood for Love is ranked higher.
Okay.
Okay, fair.
Which is another wonderful film.
Yeah, fair.
That is the only other one that's ranked higher, though.
Best American film of the 21st century.
Well, I watched this movie last night with my friend. I've seen this movie. Oh, wait, have you finished the spiel, please?
This is a miniseries on the films of David Lynch.
Thank you. Sure. We're blank check over here.
I said all the other stuff.
Yeah, choo-choo.
It's called Twin Pods Firecast with me.
Sure. Whatever.
Our guest today triumphantly returning to the show. Pumping fists.
Oh, I'm
ready to fucking go.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm very regretful that our Zodiac, I feel like we barely touched the surface.
Sure, but
barely.
I'll say this. We had like a little bit of a there's a problem moment with the response to that episode where people were like, I'm so disappointed it's only 2 hours and 45 minutes. What went wrong? And we're like, how have we gotten ourselves into a gilded cage where if an episode is only a little above 2.5 hours, people feel like we're ripping them off?
Okay.
I agree that I could talk about that movie for 7 straight hours. But also, hey, motherfuckers, if an episode's longer than 90 minutes, that's a kindness.
That's it.
And usually they're way over that.
I feel like, but I specifically feel like just this is why I had to come back in a tone.
Sure.
I had to atone because.
And you've cleared out your week.
I'm here. We're gonna be
you
sleeping here tonight.
Bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Leslie did text me and, like, hey, do you want to do, Mulholland Drive? That sounds great. Yeah. When can you do it? You guys need like all day, right? And I was like, I mean, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leslye Headland, the acolyte of Sleeping with Other People, my favorite romantic comedy of the 21st century.
Thank you.
Bachelorette.
Yeah.
Many other things.
Mulholland Drive.
A show
crying out loud
that no one was ever going to watch because they said, no, thank you. This does not go to series. I just can't get it. Is the weirdest.
I know you can't get over it. That is the most Griffin
I've never
thing
gotten over it.
Okay, well.
It is so bizarre that this is the process that leads to this movie, and the movie turned out the way it did and has the reputation it does.
Yeah.
And I just want to state again, the only clear takeaway from this is that Moana 2 is going to be the greatest film of the last 20 years. It's the first time since then that someone's finally gotten the idea of we should replicate.
Is there any other example?
I can't think of one.
TV pilot
I think
rejected,
Moana 2 is the first time since Mulholland Drive that someone has finally had the bravery to say, fucking, these aren't episodes. Add some new shit, re-edit, put it in theaters. Sight and Sound, here we come.
Oh my God.
Well, it's sort of interesting.
Lone Best Director nom.
It's interesting to think about it with Twin Peaks, and we're going to talk all about this. But obviously with Twin Peaks, he does the same thing. He makes a 90-minute pilot, shows it to ABC, convinces them. They are suspicious, but are like, okay, let's do it. But he did then shoot the quote-unquote international version of Twin Peaks that has tacked on scenes that sort of explain what's going on, in that you see Bob in a basement going like, I
like being crazy.
Yes, it doesn't explain much.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's sort of what he does here.
Yeah.
Where he's like, well, let me tack on an act.
Right.
Where I go nuts. I'm maybe simplifying, but I guess he thought like, well, I'll just do something like that again.
You saying already that you like this as much as any movie ever made. That it's on that tier of movies you can comfortably call your favorite movie, even if it's not, strictly your number one.
Yeah, and like as a lesbian in Hollywood who suffers from suicide ideation, this is a biopic.
You find it hard
this
to
is
relate.
a biopic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this all happened to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, we were talking about a couple days ago getting ready for this episode, and I was, much like I'm now doing on mic, just spinning out over like, I can't believe this is how this movie came into reality. And you were like, and the craziest thing is you can so clearly tell while watching it what was part of the pilot and what he shot later.
Well, and I can't see that.
I will reveal.
That's really
now.
Interesting because I can't.
I'll say I don't know if I would nail it 100% of the time, but I was watching it and feeling like I could parse it out. And it's like there's even just like the sense of like some shit being shot a year later.
I'm just going to cut you off. I have seen the pilot. I found it and watched it this week after long avoiding it.
Yeah.
Out of fear, not of just of spoiling my love of Mulholland Drive.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's on the the You can find it if you look. You can go look on it.
Okay.
You can
I didn't do the work.
It's fine. I didn't want
Me
you
neither.
to, honestly.
Thank God.
We will talk all about this. But the pilot is essentially the first 90 minutes of Mulholland Drive.
That was my
without
guess.
too much fucking around. The only thing that is added is the Winkies scene, which is not in the pilot at all. The
the Patrick
diner.
Fischler?
Yes, that is not in the pilot.
And the sex scenes and the nudity are not.
No, that's what I'm saying. So when they find the body, like
I see.
when they go in,
everything after the
that is the
basically.
end of the pilot.
Yeah.
The only thing that's really added is the Winkies scene. A couple things moved around. There are a couple extra scenes of Robert Forster in the pilot. Love to see him.
Sure.
Yeah.
But literally just him kind of doing like, well, looks like
Checking
something's
in a
going
couple
on
more
here.
times.
Where you're
Right.
like, right, this is going to be
No, that was
a continuing story.
that was my guess. And the visual
some
language of the
scenes
movie
are shuffled around a little bit, but it
changes a little bit after that point. But also it's like that's built into the text of the movie.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
That like the movie's vibe changes, the characters change, the look changes.
It's because I had no idea of the backstory the first time I watched the movie,
Yeah.
and the movie made such a deep impression on me. I watched it. I saw it in the theater.
Uh-huh.
It was the first David Lynch film I'd ever seen,
Wow. Okay.
and
Possibly
I
same.
was on ecstasy,
Cool.
and
Not same. now our paths diverge.
and
Weirdly for
or
me,
I took
same.
ecstasy right after.
Sure.
There was
Okay.
ecstasy.
Yeah.
But what do the kids call it now?
Molly.
Molly. I was doing Molly either during or
No,
after.
but Leslye, we're similar ages. It's ecstasy.
Yeah.
Now, it pisses me off so much that people don't call it that anymore. I'm like, God damn it!
sad.
I grew up with everyone calling
I know,
it
just
that.
kind of like
And it's a great name.
Why
Why
It's a great
rebrand?
name.
It's
Why
a name.
rebrand?
It's a great name.
Euphoria. It's
Yeah.
ecstasy,
Anyway,
right? No, Ben just making fun of me.
it made
What?
such an impression.
It's just
I know it's a little different.
it's
or
different
whatever.
because the era of ecstasy was pills, and a lot of times it was cut with like weird
I know,
stuff.
I know.
And it's actually better that nowadays MDMA is pure and it's referred to as Molly.
I'm aware of what happened. And I grew up in the 90s where they were like, don't take ecstasy, you'll die like this one kid did one time. Everyone else seems to do fine, but there was that one kid. you know?
Ecstasy and Dungeons and Dragons lead to
Like,
death.
kind of.
And
yeah.
you're like, there's one example, and maybe the story doesn't check out.
anyway, you
No,
saw.
I was just saying it made such a deep impression on me. And when I was rewatching it for this, I felt like the best place to come from would be to really do the sense memory of this is what I felt the first time I watched it, and in rewatching it for this is
Sure.
Yeah. But I had no idea the background of it. I don't think I
when
found
you saw
out.
it the first time.
Oh
Sure.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think I found out about that until 10 years later.
I was
You
going
know,
to say, I think the same with me. And
Okay.
when I heard it, I was like, that can't be true.
yeah, that does not process.
I would have known that. And the movie would
That's
have
so
felt
funny
that
that you
way.
guys.
That's what's weird. I don't remember
That
when
you
I
didn't
learned,
know
but
that.
it certainly wasn't within the couple of years of the movie coming out and being feted. It was probably 10 years later.
I was 15 years old. It's David's story time now for doing a Mulholland Drive episode.
Wait, you were 15?
All right, so you're a little older than
Oh,
me.
God.
Okay, it's fine. Leslye, I'm 38. What are you, like? It doesn't
43.
matter. Yeah, exactly. We're similar age.
I'm 21.
But,
yeah.
did you see
Ben
this in
is 5.
theaters?
No, I watched
Right.
this on DVD with my mom when she rented it
Right.
probably a year later.
Fuck
Right, and that
yes.
was like super cool
yes.
when the sex scene happened and everything. You were
Yeah.
just kind of like white knuckling it
Yeah.
on the armchair.
The armrest got a big workout on that couch.
I was 15 years old. If I had seen a Lynch film before this, that I actually do not remember.
I saw Straight Story, which I will have talked about in that episode.
Yeah.
But that was my parents being like, there's a David Lynch movie released by Disney playing at the Angelica that's appropriate to take kids to. We'll
Let's
take
go.
the boys.
Right, and you liked it.
And I was like, well, that gives me no sense of who David Lynch is. Like, I walked out, my parents
Was
were
it
just like,
Disney? Or
It's a
Touchdown?
Disney film.
Touchdown
Disney-
or
it was
Disney
released
proper?
as Walt Disney Pictures
Dear Lord.
Presents.
Okay.
The
David
Straight
Lynch.
Story.
It's on Disney Plus.
Yes. And they couldn't
With the
stop saying,
Acolyte.
like,
With the
it's-
Acolyte?
It's so weird that he made that. And I was like, what do you mean? That's the most normal movie I've ever
Seen.
seen. It's
Yeah.
normal to a fault.
Yeah.
So when I'm watching this a couple years later on DVD, at that point, I probably knew him by reputation, but also was like, oh, this is the weird David Lynch shit everyone's talking about.
Yes. Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was 15 years old. I'm a budding cinephile. I certainly know I have to go see this new movie that won a prize at Cannes. That is
Right.
the new David Lynch film,
It's on
his
the
first in
awards.
4 years.
Prognosticator lists.
I know that I do know about the TV pilot thing. There is an article in Sight and Sound, which of course later I would rank this for, as a working film critic. The dream of my life was to get to make a Sight and Sound top 10, which I then got to do, and I made a really boring one. Good job, me. But I did put Mulholland Drive
David's
on it.
process was borderline insane for developing this.
I was like, boring. So I read Graham Fuller's piece. Graham Fuller is in the New York Film Critics Circle to this day, of which I am currently the chairman.
Must be nice.
I just
Fancy.
think, I read David Graham Fuller's piece on Sight and Sound, on Mulholland Drive in Sight and Sound 100 times.
You're saying this movie represents a lot of full circle stuff of your entire
I'm saying
relationship to film and
the
film
tunnel
culture.
opening for me.
Yeah,
For
I would
my
say
life.
Yeah.
It is formative in my identity. Like it
For me
seeped
as
into
well.
my bloodstream, into the molecules of my body in a way that
And I am not a lesbian who works in Hollywood and had suicidal ideation. And
humble brag.
nonetheless.
drag me.
No, I'm just using your words against you. No, I went to see it at the Holloway Odeon with my friend Oliver Stevens. Shout out Ollie. Yeah, he's now Ollie Kinderberg. Actually, I should use his current name.
Yeah. He did kind of a Mulholland Drive character name switch.
He did. God bless. And I've never been so scared by a movie in my life, and never will I be.
Oh, same, yeah.
Because it's so elemental. Like now, I go see Long Legs, and I'm just like, all right, like
We're scared.
I was.
read your fucking byline.
Well, I didn't write that headline.
Okay.
But I was scared. But it's now.
It's just funny for you to say that when this week
It's like,
a
yes,
review
Long
got
Legs
published.
is scary.
The-
Yes,
li-
was the headline
literally
they put
the
on it.
headline they gave David's review is like, it's true. Long Legs is as scary as everyone's telling you it is. And then David's here going like, yeah, Long Legs, whatever.
I'm just saying, I'll never have that
Sure.
elemental fear that I was of like, I don't know what's going to fucking happen.
And
in
where did this
movie.
come from?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Right.
like not scenes like the diner, of course, freaked me out, but then also just scenes where like they're just in their house,
Sure.
and I'm just like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Is someone going to come in? Are they going? Like, what's going to happen? I'll never have that feeling quite the same way again.
Yes.
And it changed my life. And I owned the absolutely shitty bowdlerized DVD that
Did you have
David
this
Lynch
DVD,
put out that
Leslie?
blurs
What'd you say?
the
The
nudity.
DVD, did you have it on DVD?
Yes, I did. I
Yes.
did.
David
I
was obsessed with his hatred for this DVD.
Well, it's famously bad in that it doesn't even have chapters. It's nothing.
It's bad.
Yes.
Yeah. It's got those weird 10 clues.
It's got the 10 clues, which
Yeah.
are very annoying.
Yeah.
And people
And there's no,
fixated
like,
a little too much on.
I don't think that they remade it.
There are no special features.
No
He
special
censored
features.
the nudity.
Yes.
And there are
It's-
no scene selection, and he put in the fucking piece of paper.
And it's
This is when
obviously
you
not
know
great
he's sick.
quality.
Is he okay?
I think he was kind of whatever. He was dealing with the dawn of the digital era,
Yeah.
in his own way. I feel like he's now kind of.
feel like I want to say his Criterion discs don't have scene selection still.
I think they do not, which is fine. I mean,
Actually, that tracks.
I don't
for him.
mind
He's got
that.
a big like I don't want people
What's
jumping
the
around.
scene? Yeah, just think about it. Like what?
Right.
Like even as I was watching it for this, I sort of started to go, okay, so if I could just get my thoughts together,
Yeah.
This section and then this section,
Sure.
and I got so lost in trying to make the bullet point outline that I just brought my laptop this time
There it
because
is.
I was.
I just noticed you have your laptop in front of you.
Yeah.
I mean, Zodiac I know so well that I felt confident coming in without it.
a far more linear movie that you can
But far-
obsess over Robert Graysmith style and be able to
Yeah.
recount how many steps it took to get from scene 1 to scene
To scene
15.
two. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And break it up like in that LA
I know, I've
Confidential
walked
way
it.
of like, I know this section, then
Yes.
this section, then
yes.
this section.
It
Yeah.
is a very
But
So-
this is no way.
No.
Yeah.
So, but I know I watched the DVD over and over and over again. I can read everyone's lines.
and every
in this
time you're
movie.
fuming. You're white knuckling.
The quality of this is poor.
Yeah.
No, I was obsessed with it. No, I had the 10 clues pinned to my wall. Just I'm a little embarrassed to admit that now. But
Well,
I
I had a big I would steal, or not really steal, but like at the end of the day, I would take Variety magazines home. And this is back when they were
Yeah.
like, huge.
Humongous.
Yes.
Humongous. So all of the
They were basically wallpaper.
they were basic. That's what I did. Is I took out. I did. I took out
Leslie?
I took out the ads.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
full
FYC
page-
ads
Yeah.
or
Oh, yeah.
whatever.
FYC,
Right.
the
Yeah,
full
yeah, yeah.
ads, and just put them on my
I
wall.
also did
Yeah.
that.
And just it just became. I think I had like not that many, maybe like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I had a lot more than that.
But
You know what I would do?
I had this FYC ad for Quentin Tarantino, Best Director for Kill Bill Volume 1, which he got no Oscar nomination for. That's him and his little...
I thought she was nominated, though.
The movie got
she was snubbed.
0 noms.
0 noms.
Both
insane.
Across the 2 films, 0 noms.
And she wasn't?
No, it's wild.
Was it a Golden Globe? Is that what
She got a Golden Globe nom.
Yeah.
And it's him doing this, and Uma's like looking at him in her yellow tracksuit. I think about it.
What I meant was I had just Mulholland Drive.
Yes, yeah.
Only
right.
Oh, okay, got it.
That was the only one.
That was the only one I cared about.
Yeah.
Oh, and Amelie. I had a couple Amelie.
2001, baby.
It was 2001, baby. That accordion music.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
We had nothing else going on. I keep trying to explain this to people who are younger, much younger than we are. I'm like, you don't understand. We didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
Or it was the dawn of
we
didn't have
ancient
anything
internet.
to do. It was like that wheel with the stick. Like we had was what we were doing.
This is what's interesting. My version of that was we got the fucking trades. Like my dad had Variety and Hollywood Reporter subscriptions. I would certainly pore over those FYC ads.
Mm-hmm.
I would love being like 2-page FYC spread for Meet the Parents, and my dad would be like contractual obligation. They don't think it's going to get anything. Terry Pulliam for supporting actress, and he's like, it's baked into her contract. But I would never think to pull those out. New York Times would always do summer movie preview, fall movie preview.
Oh, God, remember that?
In addition to the art section.
Yeah.
For those 2 seasons, they'd be like, here's its own thing that's full New York Times sized posters for all the things that are coming out this summer with the dates, basically in chronological order.
Yeah.
And I would pull those out for whatever movies I was most excited for and put them all on my wall. And to your point of the internet not existing, sometimes I'd be going through that and movies, giant blockbuster movies that were coming out 2 months later.
Yeah.
That would be the first time I heard about it. You're like, this movie cost $100 million.
Yeah.
I'm paying attention to everything. I'm watching Entertainment Tonight. I'm reading Entertainment Weekly. And the New York Times in May is telling me what is going to be the biggest movie in August. Like, what the fuck is The Sixth Sense?
Oh, that is a movie that does not exist with the internet.
No, and that
the
poster is nothing.
That's a fair point.
It just doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Or not in the same way.
No,
not
it just
in the way
doesn't.
of like 6 weeks later, people being like, I guess I should see that, huh? Like, everyone's
Same
talking
thing with
about
The Matrix, I think.
Yes,
Same thing with The Matrix. That was a weirdly, obviously it was a huge hit.
Yeah.
But both of those were weirdly word-of-mouth movies.
And same year.
100%.
And both of them.
99. Right.
And both of them have the same
Who's
thing.
the fucking idiot who was like 1999, the year that changed film?
Let's not say his name on mic. Yes.
Oh, okay,
no, we can. No, please go ahead.
We know this person.
David thought about pitching that book.
Is it? But it was an wasn't it an Entertainment Weekly
yes
that's who did that?
Yeah, I think he worked at I can't remember.
Like 10 years later they were like, we're going to make this a thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like everybody already knew that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why it was a good pitch for a
and
book.
It's right. The thing with that
you
year
need to
is
pitch something that lots of people know.
The cross section between things
they
being
already
like
know it.
popular phenomenon and that culturally important. Like
the
you
had Star Wars and Blair Witch. You had The Matrix and The Sixth Sense and Fight Club and Magnolia.
But like
and
Sixth Sense making $300 million and getting nominated for 6 Oscars and being critically beloved. Good ass movie.
I just rewatched it. I was like, this fucking movie is
both
so
of
great.
Those movies,
while
being very mainstream blockbusters, had this thing where they like come out, they open a little better than expected, and then the marketing campaign is people saying to you, "I can't even tell you what this is. You just have to
watch it.
My word for it.
Yeah,
just go.
Yeah,
which is how Lynch movies usually tend to stick in the culture. Or Twin Peaks, people just going like, I can't explain this thing. You just got to watch.
You just got to go.
That's how you know, as like a budding cinephile, usually most people watch Eraserhead. That's how people got into Twin Peaks at the time.
Yes, Leslye, do you have a larger Lynch take or whatever? Like, you know, if Mulholland Drive was your first Lynch, like, do you like David Lynch?
I love David
Have you seen all of his films?
Yeah. I have not seen all of his films. I have oddly read a bunch about David Lynch, like Catching the Big Fish, Room to Dream, Lynch on Lynch. I find his personality to be sparkling.
I mean, he's
really
one of the
he's incredibly
funniest people
uncharismatic.
who's
Like,
ever
not
lived.
just-
hot and not cool.
Oh my God, he's so hot.
He's really hot.
Jesus
He's very
Christ.
handsome. This is another thing we
all the
talked about.
arrows,
Costner
too. All
and
the-
Lynch.
all the-
Two of the most
Yes,
handsome.
you're right. But you're right.
Yes.
Lynch was
Yes.
always hot.
Always.
There's different kinds of Lynch
Yeah.
or whatever, but
Yeah.
he's hot in all types. Yeah.
He's aging
feels-
like Paul Newman. It's that thing where you're like, every version of him.
Yep.
He feels like this is not quite right, and I think he's a superior artist, but he does feel like the cinematic version of Tom Robbins in terms of
Interesting.
everything that happens feels like this stream of consciousness of him.
Yeah.
There isn't sort of a setup payoff to Still Life with Woodpecker, and yet at the
Sure.
same time, once you finish it, you have the experience of, oh, that was holistic.
This is what's
Even though it felt
yes.
like each step was so wild,
Yes.
but you had characters you could hold on to, you had themes you could hold on to, you were compelled by particular things,
Yes.
but then you're told other things or you're shown other things, I should say, for Lynch, that you're trying to place as you're just trying to place. I guess I love Lynch because and this is what I mean by Tom Robbins. It's like you're always trying to find your footing, and
Yes.
yet you are taken care of. You don't feel completely abandoned.
What is so bizarre about him?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't say this in the framework of me patting myself on the back and being like, "What are you talking about? All these movies are easy to understand. I figured them all out." But it is fascinating for how much hand-wringing there is about interpreting meaning of shit in Lynch movies, right?
Yeah.
And this movie's Wikipedia page is the longest Wikipedia page I've ever seen for any movie. It has 20 subsections of analysis and theories and fucking whatever, right? And I feel like was talked about so much as this puzzle box movie, this completely bleak, like people are obsessed with trying to crack it thing, to the point of putting the 10 clues in. And maybe it's just that, like, watching them in the context of this podcast,
And all
where
that
we are
came
going
around you.
chronologically
You didn't
and we're
just
reading
fall out of a
dossiers.
coconut tree or anything.
This is true.
Yeah.
I'm like, all of these movies are clearly very representative of things that he's going through in his life. Like,
Well, that's true.
They're
That's
all
true.
so personal,
Yes.
and they make sense in the chronological
Yeah,
order of
perfect-
like
His wife
everything
fucked
we're
Billy Ray Cyrus.
Yeah, that's what the
perfect-
movie's about.
The
No, it's about a girl who lost her keys. I'm sorry. I have to make that joke with this one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I've been saying that every movie is about a guy who lost his keys, and this movie actually has a key in it.
Yeah,
Wait, you've been saying that?
It's like a joke, like just
with
being
David
like
Lynch?
movie easy to solve about guy who lost his keys.
that's David's joke about
How people are like, I can explain Eraserhead to you. Okay, the guy lost his keys. By the end, he got his keys back.
But I think people try to read them like he's trying to transmit some weird
No.
message.
this is
to
a
us
clue.
and
I
he's
don't
This is
smart
a
enough to
clue.
crack
This is a
it.
clue.
I
It's
Yeah.
like, no,
think
he's
so.
trying to work through his own shit.
He's inviting you. This is what I mean. Like,
Yes.
he's inviting you into his brain.
Yes.
He's not going to apologize
Mhm.
in any way for it. It's
Right.
going to be extremely confident.
Yes.
Yes.
And he is gifting you the opportunity to have an experience
Right.
digesting it.
And the miracle of him as an artist is that he does that in a way that is compelling to people who don't have the puzzle pieces of what's going on inside his head
Yeah.
or in his life.
Yeah.
That it can represent different things to different people in meaning and be gripping and be
Yeah.
funny and be
Yeah.
scary when
Yeah.
he is also not really playing by any conventional rules of narrative cinema.
I remember the other thing too is the word that keeps coming to mind is experiential, because when I think of David Lynch, I don't have a beginning, middle, and end narrative that comes to mind.
Mhm.
What I think is I know exactly where I was sitting
Mm.
when I saw X scene.
Sure.
You know, like Laura Dern's monologue
Uh-huh.
in Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
I know exactly where I was sitting. I know exactly the feeling
It's
I
a
was
physical
having.
sensation
Yeah,
that you're remembering as much as remembering the film.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And you just, like, I remember watching that and going, how long has this been going on for?
sure.
Has this been the whole movie?
Right.
Is the whole movie this scene?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to, usually with other films, you're watching the scene in relation to the scene you just saw,
Mhm.
right? So there's this quote, I don't know who said it, that in plays, the viewer is thinking, this is what's happening now.
Mm.
And in movies, they're thinking, what's going to happen next?
Mm.
Interesting.
And I think David Lynch is you have to watch him with this is what's happening now.
Yeah.
You can't say while you're watching Laura Dern, you're not going, I wonder how
Where's this leading?
You just think,
It is
wow, what am I watching?
You're never going to predict where it's going with David Lynch.
But I think that his thesis statement might be because Blue Velvet comes out of the disaster that's Dune.
Yeah.
So it does. I like this movie better. I consider this movie to be his masterpiece.
Yeah.
But I do understand that Blue Velvet is what cements him as him.
Yes.
Eraserhead, he
No.
bursts on the
There's
scene.
nothing controversial about saying.
Yeah.
Blue Velvet
So
is
with
what
Blue
cements
Velvet, I think if there were a thesis statement for him that he hasn't already said, I think he articulates his work extremely well.
I agree.
Woman in
But
Trouble.
I think
Or
that
whatever.
it's when Isabella Rossellini discovers Kyle MacLachlan in her closet.
Yeah.
And then she's like, take your clothes off or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And she says, what do you want? And he says, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like
This guy is like trying so hard to figure himself out, and that's what all of
and
these
that's what all
movies
of
are.
the movies are about. Yeah.
And they're reflective of whatever the specific issue is he's dealing with at that point in time.
Yeah.
To some extent.
Yeah.
Right.
I think with Mulholland Drive,
It's about a woman who loses her keys.
it's about a woman who loses her keys. No,
That's
I think
genuinely true, though.
It is.
Yeah.
But like, I do think there is. I don't think it is a.
Say it,
I'm
David.
so afraid of making like any blankety statements. But anyway, I think there is a.
You are representing your personal relationship experience. To
Well,
this
no,
movie.
I'm not. I'm saying like,
Okay,
I think
then
that
you're
there's
making a grand blanket statement.
a fairly not straightforward, but like there is a way to read the plot of Mulholland Drive that's not that complicated.
I would agree with
Agreed,
It uses
yeah.
dream logic, obviously,
Yeah.
and that's the idea of what's going on here. There are other things that are a little more like it's up to you.
Sure.
But I also think David Lynch very happily wants anyone to bring anything to these movies.
Yes.
And so to all of his movies, right?
Right.
And so he's obviously certainly never going to sit down and be like, the thing that's going on is this. But
You
and if-
never do that to an audience.
Right. And if I went up to David Lynch and I was like, Mulholland Drive is about like something that happened to me, like, you know.
He'd be thrilled.
Exactly. He would be like, that's great, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Or
Yeah.
he would be like, you know, have you heard of transcendental meditation? I'd be like, yes, I have.
He
David.
would absolutely.
But I do feel like this film came out at the dawn of the internet.
Yep.
Not
Uh-huh.
dawn, but, you know, of
Yeah.
where people would then go.
I would say mainstream of the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Type in Mulholland Drive. There is a website called mulhollanddrive.net that still runs, that has this kind of lovely early 2000s sort of aesthetic to it,
God,
that
I
has
know.
like theories and stuff that people were piling in. There's a very famous salon.com article that I remember I would read over and over again that was like trying to explain what's, you know, like it was the beginning of let's use the internet to collectively try and understand something that was confusing. A movie that made $7 million that was not like some sensation.
It wasn't like Twin Peaks.
But was an abstract piece of storytelling, not like aggressively abstract, but still abstract enough that broke into a mainstream sense.
Yes.
And thus, lots of people are like, what was that?
But
though?
here's
You
what's
know,
fascinating about it to me is like Twin Peaks had that same cultural, we are in on trying to game this out, right? Kind of thing.
It did.
But
We're
in
going
a
to talk about
pre-internet
Twin
era.
Peaks.
I know.
Yes.
In a pre-internet era where the way that happens on a peer-to-peer level is so much more bizarre and
but Twin
circuitous
Peaks-
and whatever. And that's a phenomenon that stretches out, but also like rises and falls really quickly. And then, as we've discussed, the stuff between Twin Peaks and this movie is largely reviled. He
It is.
goes through this
That's
period
true.
where
Goes through,
people are like,
That's
he's cooked.
true.
He's gone too far up his own ass.
Yes.
Over
and
on
also
Lynch.
they're mad at him because
Yes.
I mean,
Why are they mad?
I'm talking about people in the 90s in the broadest brush, but I think people felt betrayed by Twin Peaks.
You gave
because
us a beautiful thing and then you killed it.
when you break
destroyed
through
it.
with a show that has such a wide cultural, you know, acknowledgement or whatever, and people are like, but you fucked that up. Like, I didn't like that Twin Peaks like didn't end how I wanted it to, or didn't keep going how I wanted it to, or whatever.
What about I mean, listen, echoing a particular fan base, I may say, the first season, why didn't you give us the answer?
Sure.
You know, second season, you gave us the answer, we didn't like it.
Right.
You
Go
know,
fix the answer.
Go fix the answer.
You're talking
You know.
about young Sheldon fans, right? When you're talking about which fan base. I'm sorry, the Sheldon verse.
We need closure. Here's the closure.
How did he get older? As time passes, people grow up. I don't like that answer.
Do we even have a lore director? Sheldon wouldn't do that, even if he were young.
Saying, okay, fine. All right, fine. Sheldon discovers an autism cube when he's 10, and that's okay. What do you want from me?
Autism cube.
I just like the idea that someone's like, explain why he's like that.
I think some of the Sheldon legends should count. Work them back in. Reclaim Sheldon legends.
I do think that is a sign of a fan base that has gone on too long and needs to be nuked from orbit, where they're like, I know you removed all this from canon, but I liked that one, and enough of us do that you've got to bring it back. And they're like, all right, bring it back. All right, we're going to take that one thing.
Honestly, in my opinion, Timothy Zahn wrote Sheldon better than anyone else. I don't even think Chuck Lorre really got... He created Sheldon by accident. He never even really got Sheldon.
Mulholland Drive. Sorry.
Mulholland Drive starts with Tony Krantz.
My point I was going to make. Just to finish this off.
For me to do one sentence of the thing and then break in with some other shit.
I'm not helping.
Thank you.
What?
No, it's just this film, when this comes out, and as you said, in a much smaller way, 7 million domestic, 1 Oscar nomination, what have you. It's not a cultural phenomenon on the level of Twin Peaks crossing over the mainstream. The first time in 10 years that the public was like, let's lean in, crack our knuckles, and try to figure this thing out.
People were ready for Lynch to be back.
Yes.
They were ready.
And the internet helps fuel this be like, there's now a dialectic going on between the viewers of the movie.
Yeah.
And this other section of like pop culture and the text itself.
Tony Krantz is a CIA agent.
Okay.
He is instrumental to the creation of Twin Peaks in that he sort of brings Lynch to ABC and somehow makes that work, which obviously must have been a little complicated. Supposedly, Lynch recounts at one point that he has this idea for Audrey Horne's character in Twin Peaks, Sherilyn Fenn's character, Audrey Horne, that one day she'll have like a storyline where she goes to Los Angeles and starts a movie career, and we'll make a movie about it.
Interesting.
Right. Well, kind of like, because there's been a lot of talk over the years.
Not
like,
another show.
Right. He was like, we'll do like a Audrey Horne movie that'll be about her trying to make it in show business.
This is in a world
or
where
we'll
he
do a
assumes
TV
Twin
pilot
Peaks
or
extends
something.
for years and years and years and has multiple tendrils.
Mark Frost remembers something similar. Like, we were maybe going to do a spin-off show. We were maybe going to do a TV movie. We were maybe going to do a pilot. Who knows?
And it's one of those like classic, like we wrote on a napkin.
Idea.
We wrote on a napkin.
They may not have even written it on a napkin. They discussed it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sherilyn Fenn, who is, I will say, insane. So she can't be completely trusted. It confirms this, like, yes, this was something they were cooking up. Like, I would go to California. I'm sorry to call her insane, but check out her Instagram. It's insane. David Lynch says, I don't know about that. All right. Well, thank you, David Lynch. The answer is it's probably somewhere in the middle, right? You know, like, I don't know. Someone discussed this. However, of course, Twin Peaks falls apart on the air, and Hotel Room kind of turned David Lynch against TV for a while.
Sure.
Right.
You said on the air?
On the air.
Yeah.
And Hotel Room.
Have you ever seen On the Air?
I haven't.
It is so bizarre in how much it isn't weird. Like, but that's the thing. You're watching it and you're just like, is this like sarcastic?
Are you
I don't think it's bad.
I think that I was going to go on a tangent.
But it feels like him being like, I want to make an old-timey sitcom, and then he just does that.
There's Lynch is very attracted to the quote wholesome.
Yes.
He really likes that, you know, so it makes sense. It makes sense that he would do that.
Yes.
Are those HBO is Hotel Room?
HBO was Hotel Room.
But who's on the air?
On the Air was also ABC? Am I wrong?
Was on ABC in the summertime.
Yeah.
In
it was
1992,
a real burn-off.
which is right when you know a network is confident. Your show will be debuting in July. So, but however, Krantz, and who now works at Imagine Television, the spinoff of Ron Howard and Brian Grazer's show.
Water Be Dropping.
Yeah.
Ripple effects.
Imagine. Is still like, no, man, you should make another TV show. Like, you know, it's over the years just kind of like, come on, any ideas? Throwing
that was your biggest success.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you try to do that again?
Lynch, of course, says, yeah, here's my perfect idea for a movie. No, I'm joking. He says, I picture Mulholland Drive at night. You know, classic David Lynch.
Sure.
He doesn't even have a story.
I have one thought.
Right.
And that's like...
It's a road of mystery and danger.
But isn't Blue Velvet like the ear?
Yeah.
It's the
Blue Velvet
first
is the
idea.
ear, and I've always wanted to crawl into a woman's closet and watch her dress. I'm not joking.
Yeah, no,
that's something he said to somebody.
He said that?
Pitched it to execs. when they said, you got anything
what happens
else?
next? I crawl into a woman's closet.
Didn't they say that in the framework of, do you have any movie ideas?
Honestly, that's hot.
They were like, do you have any ideas? He's like, I have always personally. But also, Lost Highway is like, what if you got a videotape of yourself?
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah,
That was the whole fucking
one
thing.
idea. Yeah.
Right. It's all.
And this
like,
was the street sign,
It's
right?
a mysterious road.
Yeah.
It's rural in many places. It's curvy. It's 2 lanes. It feels old. You feel the history of Hollywood on that road. Now, I have only driven on Mulholland Drive once or twice. It does, when I was on it, I am like, it is fucked up that this road exists. I don't know. I mean, you probably, have you ever lived in LA, Leslye?
I have. I lived in LA for ballparking 3 years.
Okay.
And I gotta say, I'm excited to get into it
Mhm.
because he really pinpoints particular LA, like corners of
Sure,
LA,
right.
and they all amplify the characters so much.
I want to
You
just
ever
say,
driven on Mulholland Drive?
well, I don't drive.
Well, I mean,
famous.
been in
I've
the
definitely
car.
driven up there, and there is
Yes.
this like it's especially at night. There's this like sort of like dreamy feeling
I
to
mean,
it.
It's
and
kind of cool.
and it's dangerous.
Yes.
And you
It's
feel like
fucking
I'm gonna
dangerous.
kill.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill someone, or someone's gonna kill me.
It's the Fury Road.
But then
yeah,
during the daytime, it has this, like, if I'm remembering correctly, like one side of it is this kind of like Burbanky,
Mhm.
we're in the desert. And then the other side of it is like the richest of the rich.
Yes.
Uh,
Right. I mean,
Laurel
look, it's
Canyon
like
or
it's
whatever.
Yeah.
like
Hollywood
fucking
Hills.
David Lynch designed a road to
That's
metaphorically
true.
represent his
That's true.
entire relationship to the entertainment industry.
That's
It's just,
actually
you
true.
look at a map of LA and you're like, here is LA, and then here is, whatever, the North Hollywood and Van Nuys and all the stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like in the middle there are these mountains. You're like, oh, okay, mountains. And then there's just the map just has this one road that's like,
Yeah.
and you're like, what's that? And they're like, Mulholland Drive. And you're like, okay, it looks like you're driving through the Pyrenees. Like it just, anyway.
I want to make it clear I'm not
Cool
making
road.
an empirical slam on the city that many people live in and love. But much to the point of what you're saying, I watched this movie and I'm like, this is why I don't live in LA. I'm like,
it's
and
very.
it is, I think it's very specific to like specifically a certain type of person who wants to work in the entertainment industry
Yeah.
and doesn't like specifically the culture of living in that geographic place while trying to do this type of work.
Yeah.
And
I
the
was
way
drawing
the
a
city's
squiggly
built
line.
around it.
For
Well,
the
and the
listener,
road's
I was drawing a
squiggly
squiggly
line.
line.
Yeah.
But I watched this movie and I'm like, yeah, David, I fucking get it. That's
Yeah.
how I feel too.
In-
I think that
All of
it's-
this feels weird.
It's one of those movies that I think people love to say, it's a love letter to this. Maybe they don't say love letter, but it's
twisted love letter.
It's a twisted love letter
Yes.
to the city. It's Los Angeles plays itself. This
Sure,
kind of,
sure.
and I'm like, no, it is Los Angeles.
Yes.
Right.
It's not.
This is certainly what
He's
I think
actually
Los
not
Angeles is.
making any value
There's
statement
no-
on it.
He's not making any statement on it.
Right.
That's it.
You know what the love letter to Los Angeles is? The fact that he still lives there,
I thought that
right?
when I was reading the book
That's
before
something like the movie's saying. This is a movie about him being terrified by this city, and yet he stays.
yet he stays.
He doesn't have
He's
to.
like, I moved there in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I woke up the next morning and it was so bright.
Right.
He just like loved it. He never left.
Right, and Twin Peaks, or not Twin Peaks, but Twin Peaks to an extent, I was going to say Blue Velvet, but like the suburban section of his work is like, this is the environment in which I feel the most comfortable. I genuinely get pleasure and that sense of security
Yeah.
from this type of attitude, culture, look,
Yeah.
vibe, whatever. And I acknowledge there's stuff right under the surface, right?
Right.
Versus this movie is him being like, this is fundamentally alien to me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
choose to stay here, but all of this is weird. This business is weird. This city is weird. People are
The
weird.
people in it are weird.
Yeah.
I'll say something else. I think David Lynch is kind of weird.
Well, he
In
would
August
disagree.
1998,
Mhm.
Straight Stories in pre-production, Lynch and Krantz pitch Mulholland Drive to Jamie Tarsis, the then somewhat legendary head of ABC.
Inspiration for Amanda Pete's character on Studio 60.
A great character with
Oh.
Voltron. Basically
Hmm.
pitches
Passed
them.
away recently, kind of
Yes,
tragically.
yes, a little too young.
I thought you meant Amanda Pete and I.
No, we still have her.
Great.
Amanda Pete's still alive. Amanda Pete's Studio 60 character canonically dead. She died filming season 7 of the UN or whatever the show is that she's. I'm joking.
She committed seppuku live.
What a
During a
commitment to that
broadcast.
cast.
During
of Studio
broadcast of
60.
Studio 60.
Will
Right.
someone
commitment.
please end this?
Please, can we
Bradley
stop?
Whitford
Guys?
chops her head off.
Yeah, she's pregnant with Bradley Whitford's 10th accidental
Okay,
child.
all right. They pitch essentially 2 pages, they say, which is basically like a woman who's trying to be a star in Hollywood finds herself becoming like a detective, digging into an underworld. Jamie Tarsis, somewhat to their surprise, is like, you have $4.5 million and can make a pilot. They get another.
And does she approve at 90 minutes?
She approves essentially.
Whatever it takes.
They get a little bit more money from Touchstone TV, and so they basically approve a $7 million budget for a TV pilot, basically feature length, 90 minutes. They do demand
25 years ago, at a time where no TV cost that much per episode. That is crazy.
They demand the closed ending.
Yeah, for the international.
Sort of the same deal with Twin Peaks of like, you need to produce a cut that we could maybe like sell in Europe as a movie. Okay. All right, let's do it. Krantz hooks up with David Lynch with Joyce Eliason, I want to say her name is, who is an experienced. She did the Jacksons miniseries, if anyone remembers it, with Angela Bassett, which is really good, actually. Yeah. But kind of like an experienced TV hand, kind of the same thing as Mark Frost. Like, here's someone who can manage a lot of the sort of day-to-day TV shit.
You think about it, must have been such a weird moment to be like, look, we're 10 years out, basically, from Twin Peaks, right? So now there's enough distance that everyone's calmed down a little from their anger over how it collapsed. And everyone's starting to feel like it's an X.
Yes.
If we give it another try tomorrow, would it work?
Would it work? Yeah.
So they're probably like, look, we don't know where Twin Peaks came from last time. You got to do your David Lynch thing. But everyone's also like, let's keep a little bit more attention on this.
Yeah.
Let's put some like steady hands around him with good taste.
Nonetheless,
exactly. Yeah.
David meets with her a few times and they don't get along part ways. He writes the whole thing himself. He delivers the screenplay to ABC. They order the pilot. Hey. So it's not like he fucking comes out of nowhere with the thing he makes.
Yeah.
They have 6 pilots ordered. They only have room for about 3 or 4, but nonetheless,
this is
strong contender.
The 99 or 2000 season.
I think this would have gone to air in 99, probably. Okay. A few other projects that Lynch passed on or sort of, considered at the time: American Beauty.
Yep.
The Ring. And Motherless Brooklyn, which, was sort of kicking around at that time.
Wild. All 3 make sense. I mean, those are 3 separate parts of the Lynch worldview.
That's actually true. Yeah, the suburban discontent.
Right. You can see what someone saw for him in any of them, but obviously none of these went anywhere with him.
Right.
J-horror.
And the sideways detective story.
Yeah.
You're like, most of his movies are those 3 things happening simultaneously. It's fascinating
Can you focus on one?
See 3 movies on his desk that are all just like, you just do this for 2 hours.
David Lynch's casting process famously is he basically just looks at photos and just waits until something, strikes him.
Sure.
Well, he really trusts Joanna Ray. Yeah. He's just like, I'm assuming this person can act if you're showing me a picture.
Sure.
Yeah.
Naomi Watts intrigues him, Australian actress who had done some Australian stuff, but I feel like when she is in this movie I'm mostly reading that she was Nicole Kidman's roommate when she was a teenager.
Yeah. Someone, when I said I was doing this podcast, I was doing the movie for this podcast, was like, is that the movie with Nicole Kidman's best friend?
Right.
And I was like, burn, bitch.
Yeah. No, I think that's a lot of it is like they both are like, we're going to go to Hollywood and try to make it. And Nicole Kidman hits 10 years earlier than Naomi Watts does. And Naomi Watts
I wonder why. So strange.
Some of these inexplicable things. You know who I was thinking about a lot?
It's so strange, isn't it?
It is.
It's not.
I think someone is serving the C word over here.
Somebody.
I understand what you're saying.
Somebody gets married. Yeah.
But yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But also,
I'm not saying she's not talented.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
that her early career.
It's interesting.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot while watching this, both in the real Naomi Watts narrative of her career leading into this movie, and of course the character she's playing, where there are a lot of parallels.
I was thinking that too.
What this movie represented for her as a chance to basically get off the bench.
Yeah.
This is your shot to make them take notice.
Yeah.
Right. We probably talked about this in past episodes, but this insane stat that for both Bryan Singer's Superman Returns, if not additionally also maybe some of the earlier developmental Brett Ratner, McG versions of trying to revive Superman, and for Nolan's Batman Begins, Amy Adams was the actress who screen tested against all of the candidates. Amy Adams was playing the role that would go to Katie Holmes. Amy Adams was playing Lois Lane. when those tapes leak out and you can see Cillian Murphy in the Batsuit as Batman, it's Amy Adams over the shoulder, right?
Whoa.
And they talk about that and how, like, when she got cast as Lois Lane in the Spider-Verse, or the Snyderverse, rather, it was this full circle moment, right? And you're like, okay, so Amy Adams was in this position where she had been living in Hollywood for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And was respected enough.
Yeah.
That John Papsadera, the studio, whatever, was like, oh, yeah, no, bring her in. She'll give the actors good things to work off of.
Yeah.
Was nowhere near the conversation of getting either of those parts.
Getting the parts, yeah.
And in both cases, you're like, would have been better than the people they hired.
One of them was
And if you're her, you're like, what isn't happening
all
here?
All right.
But you know,
okay.
no, but I think this relates to the movie. Where
I
you're
agree.
Like,
I was just going to say.
I have the goods. I'm here. I'm in the room. I'm having the conversation.
Yeah.
People are acknowledging me.
Yeah.
And yet it's not happening.
Yeah.
Which is the kind of thing that drives a lot of people crazy and leads to, let's say, a Mulholland Drive-esque psychology.
Yeah. 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 I couldn't agree more.
Naomi Watts, it's the classic David Lynch thing. She's beautiful. I want to meet her.
She's got quite a face.
She really does. Yeah, she's beautiful.
And
but in a unique
was
way.
Like, famously, the first time he met her, she was like, "I look like shit," and I feel like he wasn't that into, like, you know, I wasn't giving my
Wasn't
profile
she like
picture.
she'd just come off a plane or some shit?
And so she asked to meet with him again, but she was basically like, "This is like my story." Like, remember, she's only seeing the pilot. She's not seeing Diane. She's seeing Betty.
But that also, I imagine, seeds something in his brain where he's now seen her at her most tired and worn down, and then a second time,
and then a set comes back,
right? Where he's like, "Oh, this woman has the range,
the range to do both."
Yeah.
I didn't think of that because I read that story too, and I was like, "Ooh, I got a kind of icky feeling from that." And then I was like, "Oh, you just pointed it out." I was like, "Oh, right, he did have to see essentially both versions."
And
of
when
her.
I've heard her recount that story, she doesn't make it sound like, well, he was judging me for looking tired. I think a lot of it's her internalization.
She's in her head about it.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he does say, when I meet her, she looked nothing like her picture.
Okay,
she didn't look bad, but she didn't look like her picture. And I wanted the girl in the picture. I thought, this is crazy. I'm
This is the
imagining a
girl.
person who doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I asked if she could come back, made up, and she came back.
Okay, so I'm wrong.
Yeah. He meets...
But he did need to see both.
Laura Elena Herring was Miss USA in 1985. She's obviously... Like, she is
Was
such a
married
Lynch
to
girl.
the Prince of Denmark for 2 years.
Who
and
hasn't been... We've all fucking
all
flirted with a European prince or two.
Yes, she was briefly a von Bismarck from like
I think
87 to 89.
Wasn't that later? I'm trying, but yes, certainly she was in some royal family. Let me find it. Yes, Karl von Bismarck. So actually, you know what? He's just the fucking Prince of Bismarck, Griffin.
Okay.
And Germany abolished its royal family long ago.
Well.
And all that. But he's still probably a count or whatever.
Yeah,
you
he's
know,
a
he's
fucking
got some castles.
She was a countess briefly. 10 years later,
anyway.
gets cast in a David Lynch project.
Well, she met him at the 92 Cannes Film Festival where he's presenting Firewalk with Me. And 1999 years later, Johanna Reyes, like, David Lynch wants to meet you again. And,
this is also the kind of person David Lynch loves to cast, where it's like they're carrying over some weird energy of like, you were Miss America and then you were a countess
and then you were a
now
that's what he
you're an
loves.
actress.
And also,
Like he loves people who have some weird metatextual history.
she is such a Lynch girl,
Yes.
image-wise. And like, when you
Yeah.
think about who he put in Twin Peaks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you think about this as his next Twin Peaks, like, she makes so much of just this throwback look.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah.
totally looks like someone from 50s Hollywood.
She's got Rita Hayworth vibes.
She really does.
She really does.
Yeah, yeah. Because they're both Hispanic.
Yes.
Yes. She
Yeah.
is
So
Mexican.
yeah.
We will talk about it more, I assume. And it's certainly, this movie is built in a way where, of course, it's more of a showcase for Naomi Watts, and it makes sense that she's
Sure.
springboarded, but it remains wild, the absolute disparity between the Watts trajectory immediately after this movie
Yes. Yeah.
versus like kind of nothing immediately.
Yes.
You're like
Yeah.
3 years later, she's Travolta's wife in The Punisher and hasn't
Hey.
really had good roles
There
in
you go.
between.
I mean, I think Laura Herring is not the actor that Naomi Watts is, I guess.
would
If
agree.
you made me, be mean
But
about
she's
it.
pretty excellent in this, and you at least think she should have had a better version of the career she had off of this.
She's just perfect for this movie.
She is.
And perfect for David Lynch. Like, there's no question. Justin Theroux, kind of nobody at this point, right? Like, what did Justin Theroux been
That's a
in?
good question.
No offense to him. I mean, he's had a great career.
You're throwing bombs left and right.
I guess. Oh, right. You know what? He's in Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion, and he's so funny.
Oh, right.
He's in American Psycho. He's one of the zillion.
Yes, he is in American Psycho. Yeah,
But
he's
that's
in the business card
basically
scene.
concurrent with this pilot.
That's
being
true.
shot.
That's true. Yeah.
So I don't. There's nothing really on. There's definitely no like. I saw his picture and I fell in love. I mean, I don't know. He's great casting.
It's a nice shot, Andy Warhol. Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the other parts here, Robert Forster, Monty Montgomery, Ann Miller, like that's more classic Lynch of like, I want these old Hollywood people like who it's a Hollywood story.
Or Monty Montgomery, my buddy who has a vibe.
He's old Hollywood though.
Yeah.
Yes, we right, the Monty Montgomery story. Dan Hedaya, for whatever reason, David has always thought that Angelo Badalamenti looks like Dan Hedaya's brother.
Oh, that kind of tracks.
He's like, I want to do that now. I would like you two to play brothers in Mulholland Drive. And Angelo's like,
that's
okay.
him? I didn't know that.
Yes, he's the guy who hates the espresso. Yes, he is.
I did not know that.
Shit.
Yeah.
If
you could see my face right now, listeners, I'm gooped.
It's fun to tell people that.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Apparently, Billy Ray Cyrus came in to talk about another part. I'm not sure.
The Naomi Watts role, I think he...
Betty/Diane.
I got a real strong take.
And Lynch said he was Gene the pool guy, which I don't know how Billy Ray should be taking that.
I don't know.
He is kind of incredible.
Yeah.
So I guess.
He's amazing.
We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but Billy Ray Cyrus has blamed him being on this movie for the dissolution of his family.
Excuse me?
When he and his wife were getting divorced and Miley Cyrus was going through her, like,
No.
I'm trying to own being an adult and having sexual agency era out of, like, Disney stardom. And Billy Ray Cyrus went to the press and he was like, my whole family has strayed from the path of good. We were corrupted by Hollywood. None of this would have happened if David Lynch hadn't cast
No,
me.
what he says, I do want to give Billy Ray credit that he does say that David Lynch, I love him and he changed my life.
He doesn't blame
Lynch. But
Lynch.
he's like, because
it started the path.
I was in it, I was right. My kid was now in Hollywood
We
while I was
moved
doing
there.
that.
Right, yes.
Oh,
I remember feeling, quote, this is Billy Ray Cyrus, not me, this might not be what God had in mind.
And then what he chooses to do is continue to ride it out, make a ton of money playing her dad on her show. Like, it's not like, he's not saying like Lynch cursed us.
Yeah.
But he's like, that was the siren song that called me over to Hollywood.
Right.
And then now my daughter, can you believe it?
I did not put that together.
Has a body, and my wife doesn't want to be married to me.
Who is his wife?
Well, now she's married to Dominic Purcell.
Ooh, old potato head.
Trish Cyrus?
Sure.
Maybe?
He's amazing in Mulholland Drive, Billy Ray Cyrus.
He is fantastic. Yeah.
He cucks the shit out.
Oh,
there's nothing. If I ever get cucked,
last guy.
It better be Billy Ray Cyrus, and he better, like, as I walk in, just be like, just leave.
Just
Okay,
leave.
so you don't
Just
want
get
this
outta
to
here.
happen.
Your
Like,
attitude is if
I'll just be pumping
God
with my
forbid
fist.
you have to be cucked. This is
Yeah.
who you want it to be.
It'd be great.
I'm like, this would piss me off so much.
If it was this exact situation, you'd like be.
His energy.
You would go paint mode.
Yeah. Paint mode?
Just pouring paint. He
I
pours
would-
the paint.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. I'd paint a fucking jewelry.
I don't know what this says about me, but now that I never thought this watching the movie, but now that we're talking about it, what does it mean about me that I would just walk away? Like when
you would be like, you know what, buddy? 10-4, I'm out of here.
I'm outta
You know
here.
what?
Like, I would just
fucking
I would just go-
eternal
I would-
sunshine, baby.
I would
Paint
just-
can lid would remain on, you're saying.
I'm turning on the window wiper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just get back into the Porsche.
Yeah.
I'd go golfing,
Yeah.
and I'd deal with it later.
Right. Yeah, I do think to some extent, if
I don't
I
know what that
walked
means.
in on the love of my life in bed with Billy Ray Cyrus.
But is she the
I
love
don't
of
know
his
that
life?
she's
That
the
was
love
the
of
other
his
thing.
life.
Okay,
so then,
she doesn't seem that nice.
Yeah, good point.
No
you know,
offense
like
to her.
she seems.
Then let me no, I think you're right, and
Her
let me
reaction
rephrase
is
it.
so funny too, where she's like,
Now
you
you've done
fucked
it."
This up. I kind of
You know why I would? Because of that. Because
Yes,
she said
no,
that.
I
just
think
be
you're
like,
right.
fuck the pool guy in peace without you being here and it being a problem.
And I was
So
like, I'd be like,
let me correct my statement.
fair,
If I
babe,
were-
fair.
If I were
Do your
dating
thing.
someone and I walked in, she was in bed with Billy Ray Cyrus, that
Yeah.
was her energy, and that was his energy, I'd go like, well, this was never going to work out.
Yeah, I gotta
How
go.
can I feel offended? It's insane that you were ever dating me if this is what you...
Yeah, you're gonna hear from the lawyer.
You're into this?
I would be
You're
more
gonna hear
like,
from the lawyer. I
Yeah.
would probably iPhone time, just take a picture and leave.
Yeah.
I just would
Would you
like to
post it
speak for the
to Maine?
audience listening right now, the ones who are thinking, I would lose my fucking mind and scream and rage. Just want to put that out there.
Ben would fucking
Would
open
you?
40 paint cans.
Yes.
What if Billy Ray Cyrus fucked your wife?
Fiance.
Fiance.
Oh, are they not married?
Maybe it's because
No, I'm saying in Ben's case.
I'm saying we're specifically going.
I guess maybe
I would
I think
light a cigarette, take a couple puffs, throw it on the ground, and burn the house down.
Wow.
Jesus Christ. Maybe it's because I'm gay.
Maybe it's
just because I'm gay.
I think I would also just be like,
I mean, I love.
I'm not this. If you wanted this, like, all
That's what I'm
right, take a
saying.
tumble with old
See,
B.
my attitude is
RC.
just my basic operating principle as a human being is if you break my heart, my achy breaky heart.
Oh,
Keep going. Keep going.
Fuck off.
I just don't think you'll
Speak on
understand.
that.
What's the next line?
I don't know.
I know, I just have to make that
I
joke.
think it. And if you break my heart again, it just brings it back.
Yeah,
Now-
a lot of repetition.
They shoot the pilot for Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
Everyone has a really nice time making it.
Okay. Oh.
And Disney does not seem dissatisfied with the dailies. Jack Fisk said he got a little trouble from Disney getting their money to like build sets and stuff, but that
Yeah.
just sounds like working with Disney.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's because fucking Scrooge McDuck was running payroll at the time. He's
so
not letting go of those fucking coins.
in
He's got to do
April,
the backstroke.
in April 1999, Lynch delivers an
Ben thought it
initial
was funny.
cut.
He gave me a knowing look. Go on.
An initial cut that runs over 2 hours. 2 hours, 5 minutes.
Jesus. Oh, so they have to get it down to 80.
ABC is like, David, 88 minutes. That
Respectfully,
is your
yeah.
that is your edict
But that leaves,
here.
and then how much is ads?
Well, that's what I'm
right,
saying.
'cause
I think
it's-
they're like, if you give us 88 minutes, it can be
We-
a
it can
2
be a
hour.
2 hour
Yes,
slot.
yeah, got it.
At a time where the longest any episodic show is 44 minutes.
Right.
That's what's crazy to think about is he delivered something that was over 2 hours and they were like, we were being generous by asking for 88
minutes.
double what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
So pretty quickly, from Mary Sweeney, Lynch's editor and
Mm-hmm.
longtime sort of collaborator partner, says,
In life and in work.
yes, I think they were, the minute they saw it, they were immediately kind of like, we're not going to do this.
Right. You
Like,
didn't recapture the magic. It's not going to be Twin Peaks
Despite
again. Yeah.
88 minutes, whatever. He did get it down to like the pilot that you can watch in very shitty VHS form. It's
Mm-hmm.
sort of floating around. It is 90 minutes. So he clearly, he gave
Took
them
the
what
note.
they wanted, but he
Yeah.
didn't really give them what they wanted.
Right.
According to the network, it's not that good. It's slow.
the actresses are old.
Mhm.
That was, I think, something. I mean,
Yeah.
which is funny because, right, with Twin Peaks, like, he smartly is sort of like, it'll be like a high school show. So there's all these young people in it,
Yeah.
along with my lovely collection of
Right.
freaks.
To them,
like,
it's
Yeah.
like, why are you
the Richard
discovering
Babers.
actresses who are already in their 30s?
right.
These people aren't famous and they're
Well,
older than
I
25?
have been in that position before
Interesting.
in casting,
Speak
where
on that.
if you're looking for somebody of a certain age,
Yes.
you do kind of get into this weird space where you have to get, let's just say a male in his 50s.
Sure.
Let's just say that.
Sure.
And you need to either get an A-list actor,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that has, if you're 50, you've either been working for decades
Right.
or no one has found out about you.
Right. If
So
you're,
that is
even
a
if you're not presently A-list, they want someone who at one point was A-list.
Exactly.
And you could bring them back.
Exactly. Because discovering somebody at the age that Naomi
Yeah,
Watts is
That's the thing.
is odd.
And it's one of the things this fucking movie is about to a certain extent, this feeling of desperation, right?
Yep.
And going back to sort of the Amy Adams thing, and Amy Adams and Naomi Watts, both people who seemingly didn't go crazy.
Yeah.
And when they got their deserved shot, were like, great, I'll get to work. I'm professional.
And I'm not saying it doesn't happen because
Of
it
course.
happens to Naomi Watts with this movie.
It does.
So it's not,
Of course it happens.
but
Right.
it is when
But
you're
the-
in that
well,
position,
yeah.
you're in David Lynch's position, it's odd.
The industry does genuinely go, wait a second, if you are over 25 and
Yeah.
it hasn't happened yet,
Yeah.
and other people haven't taken the chance on you,
Yeah.
what do they know that we don't?
That we don't. Exactly.
There is a fear-based,
Yep.
there must be a reason we have not yet uncovered.
I realize
Why hasn't this apartment rented?
that's what,
It's low. The price is low. It's been on the market for 2 years.
and this
It
does,
must have bed bugs.
and this,
Right? Like, that's sort of their thinking. They're like, if you're 30 and you haven't gotten famous yet, then there's a problem.
and it does relate back to the movie because
yes,
what
yes.
you're saying, which is absolutely correct, is It is a fear-based way of thinking, and Hollywood, the main fuel of Hollywood is fear.
And those, the people who are making this decision, deciding your fate, it's fear. It's fear. It's absolutely fear.
Yeah.
They're operating on a fear-based system, and then they are thus creating on the people whose lives they control an even greater sense of fear.
Yeah.
And so you end up in this state where you feel like you're in a fucking David Lynch movie. And you're like, what is this reality I am in? Does it ever change? Do I ever become the other person I want to be?
The movie.
And what is the exchange of that? What do I have to do in order to get that?
And that's literally
what do I need to protect and make sure I don't give up?
You just
That's the whole fucking movie.
That's the log line of the movie.
Yes.
That's the log line of the movie.
Yes.
And that's why I'm only half joking when I say it's a biopic. It's my
yes.
Because I even think at the young age that I saw it, which was 20, I still sort of, as somebody that was in theater school and had aspirations. It did cement in my mind, this is what you're entering into.
Right.
It isn't Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
Which is like a big, he's got the car, he's got Paramount, he's got the street sign.
Yeah.
He wanted to put some of the score in the movie.
Sure.
So it's not going to be that.
It's also interesting to think about this movie being whatever it is, 15 years after Blue Velvet.
Sure.
And the amount of hand-wringing in the press and such of people being like, is this movie exploitative? Is it evil? How dare he do this to Isabella Rossellini?
Right.
Is it abusive? And it's like that woman becomes his life partner.
Wife?
For a number of years. Wife?
Partner.
Yeah.
Long-term partner. And has always been like, no, I felt completely treated properly.
Yeah.
And for him to 15 years later make this thing that is in many ways about his own experience coexisting in LA, but is also sort of him doing this act of like, what does it feel like to be on that side of it?
Yeah.
And is there a position where you can feel like, no, I have complete autonomy. I want the guy to do the version of the scene where we get real close. And I'm choosing to do this, and I'm getting juice from it, and my performance is great. And then maybe 15 years later, do you back up and go like, what the fuck was I doing?
Exactly. I think that's
what I'm saying.
Well, anyway, we can talk. I want to talk about that scene later. We're going to go through Mulholland Drive like a fine-tooth comb. But I do want to tell you that ABC passed on the pilot. I'm sorry to break this news to you. May of 1999, they said no.
I'm just hearing this for the first time right now.
Lynch now says it's a blessing.
Standing at the tarmac, putting a finger behind my ear.
Lynch says, look, I do think the first thing I sent them was too slow, the 2-hour cut. But then I do think the finessed cut was kind of not good,
compromised.
Right, the rhythms of it were off. And I look back on it now and I'm like, it was fate. It's better. The way it turned out was the way it was supposed to turn out. The show that everyone assumed ABC would put it on Thursday night at 9. The show instead that they order is a show called Wasteland. A Kevin Williamson show, follow-up to Dawson's Creek, starring Sasha Alexander and Rebecca Gayheart, gets canceled after 3 episodes.
And doesn't it get canceled the day or the week that Straight Story goes into theaters?
That sounds right. 1999, fall of 1999
it's so
or something.
funny to think about David Lynch at this point just like deeply entrenched in two different sides of the Walt Disney Company. Like a movie he made
think of that.
independently with foreign financing is now bought by them and released by them at the same time he's working at ABC and trying to get through their development process.
I also just can't imagine Lynch in the development process.
No.
It is hard to imagine any of this, and I do think from what I've read about it, it's like he has a person who's usually good at being a middle person between him and a studio.
What
Not
David's
that he's
trying to say is right,
but the other also hey David, the studio said this, but maybe knows how to finesse that with him.
And also at this point he is a proven brand. All these people are bringing him for the meeting are he's doing the David Lynch thing.
David Lynch.
To some extent they must be excited that they're where does he fucking get these ideas? Who else talks this way?
Rumors circulate that HBO might pick it up.
Implying that Goofy was one of the execs in the room. Okay.
That's right. It was ABC. Doesn't happen. Sits on a shelf. Pierre Edelman at Studio Canal, who has worked with Lynch in the past, finds out about it.
The French HBO, basically.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
Canal Plus is right.
It's TV, but Canal they have a film.
They produce their own films.
Studio Canal.
Yes, but just to create a sloppy analog for people who don't know.
He's basically there's a David Lynch project.
That's
complete
just,
or almost complete.
It's a jump ball.
That's there?
that's sitting there.
Right. He finally hears about it, and Lynch is like, look, I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to think about that anymore. Like, it didn't work out. Edelman raises $4 million to buy back the rights.
Sorry, not to interrupt you, but he also hates that the pilot is out there.
He does. He's very upset that I can watch it.
Yes, he's very upset about
Which
that.
I had respected his wishes until I was like, I'm doing a podcast on it. I'm finally going to see what it looks like. And
So
I know Mulholland Drive so well now that I will be okay.
Pierre buys it for $4 million.
$4 million. Then he...
The money against this movie at this point, what is it, $12 million?
That sounds right.
Okay.
I guess. It's like, sort of $7 million of Disney's money, another 4 or so of Pierre's money.
Yeah.
They have to then essentially convert it from TV pilot form to cinema form. So they have to deal with that.
What amount of time had elapsed from when they filmed the pilot? Do you know?
I will tell you. He gets $2 million more, basically told, go shoot a third act.
So $14 million.
Yeah, we're piling on here. Lynch is anxious. Like, he's like, I don't know if I have a third act.
Maybe he should have tried transcendental meditation. I hear it works very well.
He's worried that, like, the sets have been struck. Like, how am I even going to do it? And so there's a lot of anxiety about that. But, they figure it out. Supposedly, Tony... Krantz, the agent guy who we've been talking about, who had sided with Disney basically and sort of helped fuck the project, threatened to sue him at one point.
Yeah, they had a big falling out.
Seems very fraught.
Yeah.
But then finally, David Lynch sat down in a chair, and the final act of the movie came to him. LOL, as JJ put in the research here.
Beautifully said.
I sat down in a chair at 6:30, and at 7, all of the ideas were there. They came out of darkness and made themselves known. Cool, sounds good.
At 8 o'clock, you took a shower.
But that's classic him.
It is.
It's just
Absolutely.
classic him. He's just like, remember, there's one interview with him where he says, if you forget an idea, if I forget an idea, you fall in love with ideas, and if I forget an idea, I want to kill myself.
Yeah.
He
Right.
literally says, I'm going to commit suicide.
Every idea is valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he starts writing, and yes, they essentially, almost all of the reshooting they do is the third act of the film. They do a little bit, I think, of finessing for the stuff they already have, but it's basically they're just reusing
like
that.
Winkies.
But then they do also, of course, have to like call Naomi Watts and be like, good news, Mulholland Drive is back. Interesting news. The third act is you as a new character. There's lots of sex scenes. There's going to be nudity. This is going to now be a feature film in Europe.
And
like,
so
it's
your
a completely
contract,
different thing.
your contract completely changes. I'm assuming there's some sort of renegotiation of the salary because it's so different.
Yeah, there has to be.
Right?
Yes. Has
yes.
to be.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think it's one of the fascinating, just sort of like in the soup things about this movie is when her character shifts, it's not just that she is a skilled actress who is playing a second character, but it's like you feel like she is a fundamentally different actor.
I can't.
Like her
It's incredible.
approach is different to the parts.
She
Not
doesn't.
in terms of process, not in terms of interpretation of character, where I'm like, this is the difference of when she's shooting the pilot, it's
Agreed.
that nervous pilot energy of like, this might be the next 15 years of my life. Am I on this forever? This is my big shot. And then by the time they go and film the third act, she's gone through the process of like grieving for the thing that went away.
That's right.
And
That's
was
right.
like, I guess it doesn't fucking happen. And coming back to do it, you feel her having kind of don't give a shit energy.
They also
in
magically fuck up her teeth. It's incredible. I don't know what they did.
What was that?
I don't know.
It's so weird.
It's so
But you know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
do know what you're saying.
there's a sense of abandon with how she plays the last act that is someone who doesn't have anything to prove.
So they shot it, just to answer your question, Griff, in October 2000. So we're talking basically like close to 18 months after they shot, the original.
Imagine the fucking cycles.
It is a mindfuck. Yeah.
Of like true like creative career grieving in those 18 months.
Yeah.
The film premieres at the 2001 Cannes Film Festival. Liv Ullmann's Insane Journey jury gives it to The Sun's Room, the Palme d'Or, which is like an okay movie.
It splits Best Director with Man Who
Lynch-
Wasn't There.
Lynch shares the Best Director prize with Joel
Wait,
Coen.
what one Palme d'Or?
The Sun's Room. It's an Italian drama about a family
of course
that
you remember
loses.
it. The film that beat Sun's Room.
It comes out, it was released by Universal/Focus in America, came out October 2001, expanded to about 250 screens, made about $7 million domestic, $20 million worldwide.
And let's think of it this way,
and
Leslye.
was well received.
It might seem like weird, like, oh,
And got an Oscar nomination.
the Sun's Room beat Mulholland Drive, and Man Who Wasn't There, that feels like rude. And then you step back and you're like, well, if you look at the Cannes competition slate in 2001, Mulholland Drive did win one award over Shrek.
Shrek
I
was
just want
there.
everyone to think about they were
Shrek was
in
there.
competition
They sure were.
the same year.
Of course they were.
It was at Cannes?
Yep.
Yep.
The 2001 Cannes Film Festival. A great slate, including Correa's Distance, Man Who Wasn't There, Millennium Mambo, a wonderful movie.
And people
Moulin
were like,
Rouge.
Shrek might win.
Moulin Rouge.
Mulholland Drive,
Yeah.
The Piano Teacher, the Haneke
Oh
movie.
my God, I love that
The
movie.
Sun's Room, What Time Is It There? One of my favorite movies, and of course Shrek.
Yeah, no, this slate, it makes perfect sense that the Sun's Room
I love
won.
The Piano Teacher.
I think The
Jesus
Sun's Room, which I have seen, was just it's a weepy. It's a well-made
Weepy.
drama that's well acted.
Yeah, like Shrek.
Yeah, like Shrek. Mulholland Drive came out, and yeah, people thought it was okay. And so, Ben, do you want to hit stop on the recording? We're done.
Thank you so much.
Let's talk
and as
about
always,
Mulholland Drive. Film begins with a jitterbugging scene. My God. Wow,
when we did
jitterbugging.
our Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon episode with David Ehrlich, he said, has any movie ever announced it's a masterpiece faster than Crouching Tiger does? Which he said half as a joke, but he was just like, the title, the beginning of the score, the first image you see of the city. I'm not saying the opening of this movie is bad, but if you were to pause it on the first 15 seconds, I don't think most people
Which I just did.
would expect flat out masterpiece, widely accepted as one of the greatest films ever made.
That's so funny
it
of
does
you to
not
say.
begin like a masterpiece in an obvious way.
Well, okay, I suppose. I love the.
I think it's a great opening.
I pointed out to my friend recently, like, that's the jitterbug competition. And she was like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I just kind of let that wash over me. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's that she says she won a jitterbugging competition.
Oh, shit.
See, I was surprised to realize a lot of people don't put this together because they're like, oh, I'm in a David Lynch movie.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't
you
put that
know,
together.
I thought he was just referencing Swing.
That's what
I
I
did.
thought too. I
There's
thought
a
it was
bunch
swing
of
dancing.
people in, like, doing like a
and I was
sock
like, oh, it's
hop.
like people changing positions and
Yeah,
whatever.
I did think that was.
Well,
Ba-dum-bum.
clearly I didn't read the 10 clues clearly enough because number one, pay particular attention in the beginning of the film. At least 2 clues are revealed before the credits.
The most important thing before the credits, and the thing that makes me laugh every time I think about Mulholland Drive and how people are like, what is going on? Like, and when I say people, I realize I'm talking about abstract things. And lots of people understand Mulholland Drive very well. You have the jitterbug.
Thank you, David.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying, like, I just hate
Oh,
saying
so you think I don't understand?
You don't understand shit. No.
I didn't know it was the
Then
jitterbug.
there is a point of view shot of someone's head hitting a pillow.
Sure, yeah.
That is like, it's like, it feels like a studio note. I know it wasn't like the studio being like, I don't know that people are going to get that it's a dream. Can we have like a shot of someone going sleepy time bed buys on their big red pillow? Like, I'm just worried. Like, it's just funny that the movie starts with someone going to sleep.
And people are like, I don't fucking get it. What could this
To be clear,
possibly
I know
mean?
lots of people get it. That it's a dream story.
Yes.
So it begins with someone going to sleep, and then we see the opening credits, which were the opening credits of the pilot, which are the car snaking through Mulholland Drive as that beautiful music plays, the title shot of the sign with the lights flickering on it. Such a cool shot. Credits rolling. And Laura Herring, this glam bomb of a lady in a slinky dress, is going to get murdered in the car, we assume, or
Is
right
being
outside of it.
Driven to, it feels like nowhere good.
Right.
It's
and
just
then they're
immediate
like, get
bad
out of the
vibes.
car. Like, they have a gun. And then some joyriding teens disrupt this assassination and cause a big car crash. And then she's stumbles down the hills into L.A.
Right.
The city of angels.
And as she stumbles, her memories fall out.
Yes.
It's also very comical that she travels from Mulholland Drive on foot to West Hollywood.
Very much my experience of Los Angeles.
It's still nighttime.
That was
it's just she would that would
It's
take her a
perpetual
day
night.
and a half.
Yes.
Yeah. a day and a half to get there.
It's also like she's in high heels. How's she scaling this?
It's just. I know I shouldn't take it
hint.
literally.
Right, I got that something was askew. No, you're right.
Pre-rideshare apps, when I would go out to LA to like pilot season, do auditions, fucking take meetings, whatever.
Yeah.
I'd show up at places and they'd be like, "Do you need parking validated?" And I'd be like, "No, I walked."
Yeah.
And they'd go, "From where?" And I'd go, "Santa Monica." And they were like, "That would take 5 hours." And I was like, "Yes, it took 5 hours. That's why I'm caked in sweat." I would just fucking walk.
I took the bus. I straight up took the bus.
I would do that as well. If I could take the bus, I would take the bus.
Yeah.
Sometimes the bus was so complicated in terms of the amount of transfers.
A lot of transfers.
Or you miss the time and you're like, the next one's in half an hour. It's actually faster if I walk for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't skateboard.
I'm not that cool.
Then the next thing we see is the great Robert Forster looking like a primo snack.
$1 million.
I want to say.
Yeah, he looks
really
great.
like $1 million.
He really looks good.
The great Brent Briscoe, who's
a guy
we've
we
shouted
out
out
on the show. A Raimi favorite, of course.
Great character actor.
But it is so funny where you're like, well, these two guys would be
Brent
like
Briscoe.
The sort of like Greek chorus of the mystery you imagine on a series version of this.
Not to talk about the pilot too much, but weirdly, Briscoe is in the opening credits and Robert Forster is credited as a special guest star. Now, I don't know if that's Forster just getting some kind of like special billing.
Can I tell you what my guess would be? And Leslye, I think you'll probably back me up on this, especially at this point in time where people who were considered movie actors, there was a stigma against TV.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like how Edward Herrmann is always billed as a special appearance on Gilmore Girls, even though he's in every episode.
They're like, even if you have like a contractual, you're guaranteed X number of episodes, you don't want to be locked into the regular thing where they actually own you.
Yeah.
So you're
for
like
7 seasons, that's the thing.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
At pilot stage, you're signing up for 7 seasons potentially. So a guy like Forster is like, I will probably do every episode, but you need to structure my contract in a way where I could bail it.
I could leave at any time. Yeah.
So we see Laura Herring. Her character is not yet named, but we'll take the name Rita.
She has amnesia. She sees a Gilda poster.
Hiding, right, but she hides out in this woman's house. We
Yeah.
see this woman with red hair, who we actually see again at the end of the movie. But,
but
supposedly Diane's aunt.
Sees a woman leaving a house and is like, great, open house.
And goes and hides out. The next scene in the film is the Winky's Diner scene.
Yeah.
It comes quite early.
I was really did not remember that it was that early.
I didn't either. In which Patrick Fischler and who's the other guy?
That's a good question.
Because he's also got kind of a recognizable face.
Yes.
Are sitting at Winky's Diner, which
is a Denny's.
Right.
At Gower Gulch, which is just.
Is it still there?
The Denny's, probably not. When I lived there, it was.
It's on Gower and Sunset.
And it's this weird little. I mean, I know it has some history of like the copper penny or whatever, but like, in the mid 2000s when I was there, the Denny's was still there, and it's like a little strip mall-y.
The actor's name is Michael Cook.
Okay,
found out.
What's he from? Just a bunch of shit.
Not much. Yeah,
he doesn't have a Wikipedia
no offense
page.
To him.
Yeah.
Embarrassing for him.
How embarrassing.
He played Casino Letcher in Showgirls.
Well, hey, so he's one of our favorites.
Sorry, about the Denny's. Yes.
No. It just when I was talking about these kind of spaces in Los Angeles, this scene very much sums up that shitty middle of nowhere, but in the midst of everything.
Yeah, and by the way, these are the types of spaces where I feel most comfortable in LA.
But I think
like these weird, like, what is this diner that feels like it's in the middle of the suburbs, but is actually,
but it's actually on Sunset
and feels kind of frozen in time. Like when I would take these fucking 2-hour walks to appointments, and I could find a diner like that in between, I'd go inside and I'd be like, I feel safe now.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well,
psychologically,
So,
not like from Assassins.
I think what Leslye said is interesting.
Yeah.
Because what do you guys think of the Winky scene? It's an incredible scene. I've never been so scared in a movie theater in my life.
Well, it sets you off balance immediately.
And it's fascinating that wasn't part of the pilot.
It's not.
I would have guessed it was.
Nope.
Because the something I noticed this time around, it sets you off. I mean, I remember seeing this in the theater and just being like, this is the most terrifying scene I can think of. But I hadn't lived in LA yet, so I didn't really recognize this as like the shithole safe haven that it is.
Sure.
But the real thing is the coverage with the jib doing figure eights, basically. The camera never settles.
Yeah.
Ever in the overs,
which just keeps you on edge. You're just like, why is the camera not?
It just
locking
won't
down.
Stop. It just so you never get your bearings in terms of is someone going to stand up?
And the rhythms of the camera do not feel like they are in sync with the rhythms of the performance of the actors.
Yeah,
you're like, what's motivating this?
The thing with Fischler too, who'd only been in like a couple movies at this point, is
one of my favorites.
He's so good.
Got such an incredible face.
Yes.
And he's nervily describing to this. The other guy, no offense to Michael Cook, the casino lecher that he is, he looks like a regular fucking, Hollywood guy in his 40s, right?
Yeah, that's
Fischler
the point.
Has the most
Fischler's got these
energy,
eyebrows,
voice.
He's got this and he's describing to the guy like, I had this terrifying dream and you were in it.
Yeah.
I was here, you were standing over there, and there was something behind the diner that was so scary. I woke up and I can't even think about it. It's so scary.
I never want to see that face in real life.
I'm trying to confront essentially what happened.
Two things I want to call out about this.
Yes.
One, Lynch is a guy who mostly makes films that, if not directly inspired by his dreams, operate on dream logic. It is often used in shorthand that the most annoying, boring thing
is telling someone about your dream. Sure. Right. Yeah.
And here this guy is like 20 years into his career, basically opening the movie with a scene he inserts later. After just like a prologue that you can't make sense of. Here's the first scene that's on its face kind of straightforward, right? And it's a guy explaining his dream.
True. That's true.
Which is interesting to me. It's the first time dreams have been like textual in his movies outside of Dune.
That's a good point. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And Dune, he's like attaching that onto what's already pre-existing text.
I would actually disagree with you, because dreams are very, very important to Twin Peaks.
Okay.
Because Twin Peaks is Cooper saying, I had a dream, FYI, and we have to now do this thing because I had this dream. And of course, my love, Harry Truman being
Elephant Man's basically about a guy who can't dream and wants the dream.
That's true.
I just had this, I just remembered in Lynch on Lynch, he tells this story about that he would go to this Denny's. I think it was this actual Denny's that he shot in. And he felt, again, he's attracted to this like wholesome concept. So you going there as a safe haven actually now makes a little bit, it like clicks for me.
I think I connect to the same things Lynch does that feel comforting. Like there is this part of me, even as a weird city boy, that's like that kind of suburbia frozen in time 50s aesthetic feels really comfortable.
How much should I say about what I think this scene is about?
Say everything.
Okay. All right.
Can I make one second point very quickly before you say this? Because I think this is really fascinating. I don't know if any of you know this. In the Lynch casting of like how he loves to use Nepo babies or like former old Hollywood stars.
Yeah, people who
like,
have like some Hollywood
have some weight
in them.
Right?
Yeah.
Patrick Fischler's father it just announced it was closing very recently, a legendary sort of like dive diner in Santa Monica called Patrick's Roadhouse. He named it after his son, and his son was the mascot, and says he basically fell in love with acting by being like the barker outside the restaurant.
Hanging out with these actors who would come hang out.
And it's this place, if you're driving down to Santa Monica, you will always see it on the road.
It's got this green sign.
Yes,
it's very cool.
And it's got all sorts of shit on the roof. It's like, what if the aesthetic of like a TGI Fridays was on the roof instead of on the walls?
It has
inside?
like a T-Rex and a Statue of Liberty and shit on the roof. It looks pretty good.
It's the kind of place that I guarantee you Lynch loves, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And here's this scene in a diner.
Yeah.
That is being carried by an actor whose father ran this kind of diner that is notorious within the industry and people who live there. And that is his legacy. Whether that's intentional or not, it's all the interesting like meat.
No, I think it is.
Because he loves to cast people who are carrying something with them.
No, that's interesting.
Whether it's stated or not.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well,
give me your read.
To be clear, what happened, and Leslye, whatever you want, but what happens is they have this conversation. The moment that to me actually sort of sticks with me the most is he's like, so now you go pay and, go be where you were in my dream.
Sure.
And then he looks at him when he's standing there and looks terrified. And then, of course, they go outside and Lynch does this amazing thing where he switches to the POV of him like walking down the stairs and you're like...
Yeah, the steady cam. And
it's so And
then weirdly, like he clocks the payphone. He's like tagging stuff.
Like, there's garbage over there. Why am I going back here? It's the middle of the day.
It's like first-person shooter of mundanity.
I was thinking, too, that it was just this weird kismet thing that this is that in Zodiac, The Lake Berryessa scene is the scariest daylight scene.
Right.
I've ever seen.
Daytime scares are hard to do, but
And
if you pull them off,
this would be like a very close second.
Yeah.
Of just like there's no shadow, there's no cover, and yet this is absolutely terrifying.
And much like we talked about in that episode about that scene, you're like, what is unnerving is the weird sense of like normalcy around this horrifying
He's
thing.
He's walking.
Right.
There's
And you're like,
But
the
he's
tension of
tense.
this is unbearable.
You can
he
tell
is tense. He's sweating.
And the audience is like, this is a David Lynch movie. What the fuck is about to happen? And what happens is an insane noise plays and a weird, dirty hobo slides out, and the guy seemingly kind of like has a heart attack, and you lose your mind.
Played by Bonnie Aaron, the nun.
That's right, played by the nun
Played by the nun.
of Blumhouse's The Nun.
Of the nun fame, the titular
Yes.
role.
Famously, they built some prosthetic for her.
Mm-hmm.
And Lynch was like, no, like, I just want, just put shit all over her
She
face.
has
I
an-
want her bone structure.
She has an incredible face, and the nun is basically the same deal where they like put a lot of paint on her, but they don't change her bone structure.
And I read an interview with her. She says what she mostly remembers is that how hot David Lynch is. Because she was like, it was a lot of him like staring at me and like, us carefully putting together the look. And I was looking in his eyes a lot of the time, and he's so hot.
Gorgeous.
She says hot, which I really like.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she was horny for Lynch.
Do you know what's interesting? This is another like point about her bone structure. There's this thing where like if characters are largely created through prosthetics, the studio can claim they own the likeness because it's not your underlying face. And they have cut her out of like merch and shut for the nun because they were like, well, it's our design we own.
Right.
And she's like, it's my fucking face.
It is your face.
There's
You just built
no
on
rubber
my face.
There's no rubber. You just painted.
Right. But,
Right,
I don't mean build physically.
Yeah,
I mean like they took her face and they embellished.
But they can't argue like, well, but the nose is ours.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's her.
I just feel like
Yeah, I want your take on this.
what you said about the Winkies is so interesting to me, about the diner, the actual location,
Mm-hmm.
that it's like this. Because I do feel like this is some sort of like, the movie is largely a dream, right? For 90 minutes of the movie, we are in Betty's dream.
I want to go on the record and say I don't think it's a dream.
Okay, well,
I think it's about a dream.
I like this.
That's what I would say.
We could talk
but
about
let's
it.
keep going. Let's keep going. I just want to make that clear before we
subscribe to sort of the general theory of like, this is mostly a dream, and then the back half of the movie, the back act of
is
the movie,
reality.
She wakes up and
But why
she's
do we
different.
think that's reality? Why do we think that's because it's actually
I'm
No,
with
no,
you.
wait a second.
I kind of want to
wanna
litigate
hear
it, but
this
Okay,
too.
we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Let's finish your point first, and then we'll fight
I'm
about
not
this.
saying that this is the definitive take on Mulholland Drive. All the evidence is there. This is
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah,
The 10 clues.
blah. But we are with Betty for most of the time. We're with Naomi Watts. Like this scene, this is a person she doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
But we are with. Much later in the film, this is where she, Diane, the real Betty, or whatever, the other Betty, asks Mark Pellegrino to kill Camilla.
Yes.
To do a bad thing.
Uh-huh.
And when she's doing that, she looks over and sees Patrick Fischler standing there.
Standing there, yeah.
And it's this moment of fucking his eyes are boring into her because he's Patrick Fischler. God bless him. His eyes bore into you.
It's got those pussy willows over those eyes too.
He's got those
wiggling
big old
around
brows.
those fucking caterpillars.
He looks like that meme of "Have you seen this face?" Right, the creep in your dreams.
Yeah,
and it's like she was being.
It's like a
seen.
creepypasta. Yeah,
exactly. At the lowest moment of her life, or the darkest moment of her life, right? And it's like we're the diner is this like liminal space, right? It's like in between dream and reality, which you're saying the real diner kind of is. You're like, what is this doing here?
it's like the surge protector in Wreck-It Ralph. It's where all the right.
That's another Ben's choice.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Both of them.
Both of them we dimmed together.
And what this guy is doing in this scene, be he a real guy or not, is he's kind of like, I had a dream about this place. I want to go into it, right? I'm trying to kind of recreate the dream. I'm going into the liminal space of trying to think about this.
Sure.
Trying to recreate it.
Yeah.
And like...
Which is basically what Lynch tries to do as an artist.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's like he's sort of crossing or he's like trying
He's literally like stage directing.
Right. And like, shit is wonky. Like you're saying, the camera work is wonky. Like the perspective's just, who are these people? What is that thing behind there? Like, I don't know. Like that's the classic Lynch thing of Bob or all these creatures he creates where it's like some kind of representation of an evil or a force or what, you know, like, you can do whatever you want with it.
What's your take on it?
That's my take. Is that really clear? What I just said? That like just that like you're in that like that is like a because of the thing that
Winkies
Diane
itself
did.
is the transitional point between states of consciousness.
But I'm not saying it in a way of like if you go there you get to go into the dream world. I'm just saying like it's just
that's what Wreck-It Ralph.
Well,
is
I would
like.
say that my experience of watching
there's like a blurriness to that place.
right.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, why he's drawn there and why it freaks him out and why the thing from his dream is there or what.
This is what I like about talking about dreams is that feeling where you wake up and you're like, I have a weird feeling. I can't shake it, even though whatever I was just going through immediately now doesn't exist.
Right.
You have some lingering feeling. And then for me, at least, this is how it often works. Like halfway through the day, something I will come across will trigger the memory. Fuck, that's what the dream was.
Right.
And then I start reconstructing, okay, so that was part of it. And then what was the other things there? And you're trying to understand, why was I dreaming this? And why did it fuck me up so much?
Right.
Why is this still being held in my body? Which is basically what he's trying to do. Like, let me go back to the space of here in the diner. You stand there. Can I like reconstruct this in a way where then I can deconstruct it?
I think as we go through this, I feel like I think it'll be really interesting, this conversation, because I think I would love to hear, I really am dying to hear takes of like, this is what, but I also feel like what I can contribute to the conversation is the experience of it. Like when I was sitting in the theater and I watched the scene, to me, first of all, I didn't understand what the fuck was going on until this scene was the scene that locked me in. And I went, boom, I'm in the movie now.
Yeah.
Like up until this, I mean, the amnesic girl, I was kind of like, okay.
I mean, it's a setup. You get it.
Yeah.
Sure, right.
But this actually locked me somehow into the movie. I was now, you know, for lack of a better term, like hypnotized into the movie. And I think that the experience of it is everything that you guys said, the setting, the performances, the sort of odd retracing the steps. But to me, it's almost the thesis statement of the movie rather than meanings. Again, rather than meanings.
I like it.
Is that he's describing a dream and then the dream is now in reality.
Right.
So there are two things that are concurrently happening.
Yeah.
There's the dream and then there's the reality.
Yes.
And that those two things actually do exist at the same time.
I agree. So this is what's interesting to me.
Yeah.
And David's probably about to tell me that I'm wrong.
No, I'm not going to tell you. There's no wrong with this movie. Is my fundamental belief.
Well,
you can think whatever you want.
Yeah.
No.
I watched this and my interpretation more is that the last act of the film is the dream.
A lot of people
you guys
would
are
make
crazy.
that. Yeah.
I fucking said it. You were going to say
Why do you think the last act of the film is the dream? Why? Because two tiny little people come out of a box? Like what? That doesn't happen to you in real life? What do you mean? What are you talking about?
But to my point, I think you are the most right, even more right than Big Smart David.
Let's argue right now.
Because it's about the relationship between the two.
Yes.
That's the actual truth of the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I think one of the
to
things,
some degree, it's about the blurriness of the relationship
right.
too.
Absolutely.
It's
Because-
a woman looking at another woman and going, I wish I were her, and being both sides of her.
Yeah.
And you could read either way.
So that's why I say it isn't, I don't think the movie's a dream. I think the movie's about a dream.
I agree.
That's why, because I think that Lynch talks a lot in McKenna's book
Yes.
about how he believes the mind works this way.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't, he believes that the mind is not separating dream from reality.
Yeah.
That like you were saying, you can be walking, you can have had a dream, then be walking in reality, see something, and then you're back in the dream.
I sort of know what he means. I mean, he's trying to describe an indescribable feeling that I think anyone has had.
Can I briefly tell a stupid dream story? It is brief. Don't sigh that loudly. You're allowed
I
to
think I
sigh,
should have sighed loud.
but not that.
I agree.
Actually, Ben, if you could actually like bump up
I would
my
bump
sigh.
that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put a little reverb on it.
All right.
This story will make me sound crazy, and I swear that's the point. I'm doing that on purpose.
Go ahead.
In
watching
college,
the clock.
I have a dream. I think this is after I see Into the Wild, where there is the scene where Kristen Stewart begs Emile Hirsch to sleep with her, and he says, like, I can't. You don't know what you want, and leaves her. I had a big crush on her as an actress. I was like, I cannot imagine someone making that choice to leave the fucking trailer.
You've talked about this on the podcast multiple times. That's that feeling.
Right.
Your revulsion at the very idea that someone would reject Case Stew.
A week later, maybe, I have a dream that is the most like emotionally mature interpretation of me being in a relationship I had ever had or felt in my life, in which the person is Kristen Stewart, but I am consciously in the dream going, God, Kristen Stewart's good in this dream. She is playing a character.
Right.
It's a Kristen Stewart type performance in a different context. She's not an actress, this and that. And I go through this whole cycle of how we meet and how we date. And then I'm going back to college. She's in a different city and is going to be able to work long distance. And I wake up the next morning and I'm in college in California. I don't have a car. I beg my friend. I'm like, you have to drive me to fucking Blockbuster. And I go through the used DVD bin to find any Kristen Stewart movie. And I'm like, I can't process this until I watch her in a film. I'm now like hung up on this idea of this fake character she played, and I need to somehow like create a separation of reality again. And I like find a used DVD of In the Land of Women, and I watch it, and I'm like, okay, she exists back again in movies.
I don't know if I should build on this because I do feel like it will. We're 15 minutes into the movie.
Keep going.
Okay,
Build.
I think that is an experience that I've had many times.
Same.
Many times.
I will cast actors in my dreams all the time.
Specifically,
to play parts.
Mark Ruffalo. I
kind of the Kristen Stewart of men.
Mark Ruffalo, you can be in my dreams anytime.
In a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. In a lot of ways.
You know, saw You Can Count on Me a year before this.
Yeah.
In the theater.
Yeah.
That man dropped into my consciousness in a way that I could not shake.
Yep.
I could not shake until he played the Hulk. And then I was like, I'm free.
Yeah.
I'm free.
Hey,
he's gone mainstream.
And you know what?
He's always angry.
Leslye, that was my exact relationship with Kristen Stewart through the Twilight. It was when she got to Twilight, I was like, you know what? She belongs to the culture now. This isn't about me.
I'm safe. I'm safe. You know,
the exact same arc.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ben, what does the Winky scene mean to you, if anything? Do you have any like sort
the
of
Winky scene's about my
relationship to the
experience in
Winky
college
scene?
and buying the DVD of In the Land of Women. That's what it's about. That is the correct interpretation, Ben.
I also find it terrifying.
Very scary.
I feel like
would be weird if you were like normal scene. Happens all the
Funny.
time.
Well, yeah. I mean, don't you guys have monsters that live in your dreams come to life?
Slide out on fucking dolly tracks. Like,
vibes are immaculate.
I feel like I have dreams where stuff that takes place then come true. And I am a little bit of a believer that I do think that sometimes your future arrives, or like visions of your future arrive somehow in your dreams.
Like a deja vu kind of.
Yeah, and I have that experience a lot.
Yeah.
But I also find it really terrifying how sometimes I'll be like, I feel like I've dreamt this before. Like that experience is really scary and weird.
Well, throughout your 20s, you kept having recurring dreams about listening to idiots talk about movies for hours. And then one day we rang your doorbell and said, have you seen The Phantom Menace recently?
That's true. Yeah. So I find this idea of being like, you know what? I'm going to actually like follow the path and and see where this leads. And then it's like real.
You got to kind of own it in your waking life in order to process it.
Yeah.
In some way or another.
Yeah.
Winkies. It's this sort of picture perfect diner, right? It's very, like you say, throwbacky All-American. And behind it is like this like monster, but also essentially the bum is just a homeless person. Like it's like like that you can take it as you like, but it is basically a dirty, unhoused person.
May
right?
I say that when this happened in the theater, I closed my eyes.
Yeah.
So I had no idea.
You didn't know what
happened.
they saw. You just knew something fucking
I knew it was something fucked up. And finally, I watched it. By the way, watched it again, still did the same thing.
Right.
It was only when I was watching it with my boyfriend at that time where he said, you have to watch it. You have to look at it.
Humble brag.
And then he made me do it. It came out. She came out. I screamed. And I said, oh, okay, it's okay. And he was like, yeah, but you didn't know it was going to be a gooblin. And so now every time I see it, I think that's a gooblin.
That is a gooblin.
By the way, this guy sounds great. I already like him a lot. If he
He's
calls
wonderful.
It sounds great.
He's fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm seeing him next week.
Hey,
It's like, but it right, like, you know, like just again, if you're just thinking about this as like a weird liminal place where it's like there's sort of window dressing over something we like to ignore, right? Like this kind of person in terrible circumstances, or this monster of an evil we can't understand, or like someone who's in control of everything, or just a person back there that isn't the real problem. But, you know,
I know I keep reading most Lynch films as being about this, but his sort of like guy who lost his keys, guy who has a headache. But no, the incredulity of like, what are these rules of society that everyone agrees to abide by? This is so strange that we all just are like, this is normal and this is what we do and this is how we act and all this sort of shit.
Yeah.
Talking about a diner like that as a place of comfort and security.
Yes.
Part of it is you're like, well, I just need to eat food and this is comfortable and it's homey.
Yeah.
But there is this thing of like, and there's this unspoken rule that unhoused people are not allowed to walk in here. I'm not saying that is the number one value we put on private inside spaces.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But in theory, it's like if you're inside a business, there's an idea of like certain parts of reality are supposed to be kept at bay.
I also like that he keeps cutting, once she leaves,
Yeah.
he keeps cutting back to where she was.
Yeah.
And there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Which is
just for
also
a
unnerving.
second.
You're like, why are we cutting back
Why
here?
are we still here?
Right.
Yeah.
Why is the camera still filming this?
Slides out, he goes, "Ah," you know, and then the music goes out and the, you know, becomes this crazy sort of sound.
Right. They play All Star over the opening credits.
Right. We see her slide away.
Shrek kicks down the outhouse door. There's a flush, weirdly, even though in theory there's no plumbing. Go on.
The next sequence is Mr. Roke, Michael J. Anderson, the small person who played the man from another place in Twin Peaks, in a full-sized human suit that has been created for him to sit in
the world's
human
longest room.
like in this like crazy kind of Twin Peaksy room that's all curtains and
When
shit.
you say human suit, it does sound like the Edgar suit for Men in Black. What you mean is a full size.
You're right. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but right, this sort of prosthetic of a 6 foot tall person that he's sort of sitting in. And I guess one assumes if this was a TV show, we would have had more of him. It's just such a cool, like they built this crazy like rig for him to be in essentially.
I see.
You know what I mean? Like he's sitting he's playing a big person.
But he's also shot from a Ned Beatty in Network distance where you're not quite sure what you're seeing for most of the time.
Right,
Yeah.
you do, but then...
that's a good reference for the way he's shot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's similarly dark and distant, and there's like nothing else in the shot really other than him, even though he's so far from the
Also
camera.
lit kind of similarly.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. In shadow, in sort of shadow. Anyway.
There's just sort of like a strip of light that's illuminating him, and a lot of the other room is a little abstract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first time in a David Lynch project Michael J. Anderson gets to like speak
forwards.
words that go forwards like the whole time.
Yeah.
They were never backwards at any point. Calls someone, says the girl is missing. Someone else calls someone else. Someone picks up that phone and calls a red lampshade. Phone is ringing. No one picks up. I'm just mentioning that. It's very important in my opinion. Anyway, and it is one of his clues.
It's one of his
I was
clues.
going to say one of the fucking clues.
But no, it's very well. If you got, it's,
notice appearances of the red lampshades. Number 2.
It's Diane's lampshade.
My favorite phone is the one that has a light right on it.
I love that phone too. A big sort of trucker hand picks it up. What's going on there?
This is wild.
And then we're with Betty.
Yeah,
Betty. Beautiful Naomi Watts getting off the plane with these nice old people.
Again,
it's just the woman actually. She meets her husband.
She meets her husband. Right. My immediate experience watching it for the first time and seeing Betty was, I hate her.
Well,
because she's a pain in the ass. She's like, oh my god.
I just say that you're just like, who is this optimistic about shit? Who is this like unhaunted? I distrust people like this who just seem like.
I also hate her sweater.
Her little pink cardigan.
Oh my god, it's the worst.
It beautiful woman. It just annoys. It's this tiny thing that annoys you.
Well, because it's the buttons and it's not really closing.
It's not the right size.
Yeah,
and she seems to have. Again, this is why she sunk in. Like again, I'm going to keep using that word. I would sink into the scenes and really sort of make a split-second decision of how to feel about it.
Sure.
And this one was immediately, I fucking hate this woman.
Right.
Yeah.
It also looks ADR'd, this whole scene. And it looks really, really fake.
There's like a heightened artificial emotion in this scene that, unlike the Lynch, like, weird heightened uneasiness is just like, why are they acting like this? Like, it's almost like fucking Verhoeven Starship Troopers. Like,
Watts,
everyone be as broad
Watts talks
and
about
as clean and as
what did
happy.
she say?
that Watts is like that. I would be like, I'm just so excited to be here, and Lynch would be like, more,
bigger.
and she'd be
my
like,
God.
that's crazy. I can't go crazier than that.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, yes, like you need to be as outrageously sweet and simple as possible.
But I think beyond that, it's just like, it's all surface level. It's performances that are not only really loud and large, but like have no subtext to them, right?
Seemingly, at least.
At this
like,
point, the subtext
she-
is
I think
created
you're
by
right.
the
is a
by
cute
the film
blonde girl
around
who
it.
says she won a jitterbug competition in Ontario,
Yeah.
and on the back of that is like, guess it's time for me to go get cast in movies. You know,
Right.
like
But
I'm
Naomi
going to go
Watts
be
can
a
obviously
movie
play
star.
great depth, and as the film goes on, you start to see that
That's
bottom
the
develop
thing,
in her.
yes.
But at this point, it's like this is top floor only.
Yeah.
She is saying the line.
There
She's
is no-
opening her eyes wide.
Yeah, it is text.
It's text.
The subtext comes later.
From the
it comes.
yeah.
I agree that it's the rest of the movie, but it's the scene where the old people are in the back of the car,
Yes.
So
smiling. It's the period
over
on that
with no
scene.
dialogue is the two of them in the car smiling at each other.
And to me, that's the period of this, like the
Yes.
end, like the
That's the end of
punctuation
the
of the scene,
sentence. Yeah.
saying, "Now here's the subtext."
Right, and here's the other thing. They later in the movie directly say, like, you're not fresh off the bus, are you? Here's this scene that's basically a fresh off the bus scene.
100%.
Absolutely, it
But
is.
they're like,
yeah.
well, but it's a plane. You know, like some of the
Shut
details
the
are a little
fuck
different.
up.
No, but they do make this distinction where someone says to her, like, you're not like one of these naive, I just won a jitterbug contest. Like, they're basically saying you're clearly not the kind of person that you are.
she shows up at her aunt's home.
I want to ping this. This is very a West Hollywood
Architecturally.
architecture,
Right, yeah,
meaning
yeah.
I have been in so many of these.
Right,
you
these
know?
kind of like little housing courts, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like lots of apartments and,
And I
this
feel
big
like,
courtyard.
Again, the old Hollywood connection. I think this is where little starlets would live.
My
Right.
friend just
You know.
moved into one of these.
Yeah,
I think
it's just-
literally one of the ones in this lot that they
Yeah,
filmed in.
like when they mentioned Sierra Bonita,
Yeah.
Sierra Bonita.
Mhm.
That was the first street I lived on when I came to
Yeah.
LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the iconic Ann Miller, who had basically not been in a movie since 1956. She has
little break. Yeah.
Yeah.
she has a tiny
she
cameo in
earned
one
it.
other movie.
She earned that.
I remember telling my mom, Ann Miller's in it, and my mom being like, "What? Ann Miller is alive and in the movie?"
And
I'm
then
like,
this is
"Yeah,
her
she's
last
her
performance
kooky
too,
landlady."
right?
Yeah.
It's her only performance across those 5
That is
decades that she
correct.
remains alive.
The iconic and beautiful dancer Ann Miller,
Mhm.
Yeah,
best known I think for Easter Parade and
On the
I don't know,
Town.
On the
Mhm.
Town, and a million other, Stare, Kiss Me Kate,
Kiss Me Kate. Yeah.
Sure.
playing again, if you're thinking about it in TV pilot form, kind of like a very Lynchy supporting character, right? This is great.
Yeah.
We have Peggy
Again,
Lipton,
connection.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
we have this old Hollywood lady. Lord knows what she'll do, but she'll be around.
And I
She's
don't
some
need to-
paprika, you know.
Weirdly, again, like Patrick, it's like I don't need to give visual context for what this person is because they're just that person.
Exactly. Right. I'm going to put her in pearls and all that, but like, I think Coco, the lovely Coco, who is the
Mhm.
nice landlady in this part of the movie, and then is this kind of imperious mom in the later part of the movie, right? Like it is the two sides of like the old legend, right? Where
Yeah.
you're like, oh, this is so cool. This person who has all this history in them. And then later, like the way she's sort of scary, you're like, right, that's like a gatekeeper.
Like a jaded.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
also,
Of
right,
like
here's-
everything evil in Hollywood is like this
Yeah.
person who's like, okay, sweetie. You
Yeah.
know, well,
here's the person on the absolute other end of the experience that Naomi
Right.
Watts wishes she could start.
Right.
That's
Yes,
right. This
100%.
is the end conclusion.
This is the-
so
right.
even,
This is
even
the
in the
business
best
end.
of even the best of circumstances.
Yes.
You're the
Ann
kooky
Miller,
landlady. Right.
Ann Miller being the iconic star that she was.
You make into the
A
tapestry of
name
film
that
history.
my mom will hear and know.
Right.
Like, of course I know who Ann Miller is. Yes.
This is the best. This is the end.
This is the end.
Yeah.
And that you want to desperately get to that end. And in both realities, it's like, this is where it ends?
Obviously, there are some shots of dog poop, which ABC was like, why the fuck did you film dog poop, bro?
I love him
In your
so much.
ABC pilot. And he's like, I put another
But that's the
shot.
thing,
It's
he's
cutting back to
constantly-
it.
And then, by the way, they got dog poop in an
Again,
overall deal.
I just have to
Spent
say,
like 3 seasons trying to slot it into different pilots, and it just didn't really stick.
I want to talk about the dog poop. I want to talk about the dog shit because I think again this thing about Lynch that I just fundamentally disagree with is that he's presenting the ideal or the good, and then he's undercutting it somehow by saying like again I think it's that one shot that from Blue Velvet that cemented everybody sort of like, well, this is the take,
right?
And the underbelly.
My personal opinion, the way that he talked. Again, I've read sort of more David Lynch talking than watched his. I've seen this one a lot of times, but he constantly is sort of name checking that these two things exist at the same time.
Yes.
There isn't one that's better than the other.
He's not saying
tied.
This is reality.
Is
the truth, right?
Exactly.
He's saying, no, yeah, you have your nice Hollywood courtyard, but the dog still shits in the fucking courtyard. Like, and Miller says he's going to bake his little butt for breakfast.
These things are married.
And when they, exactly. And then when she walks into the apartment for the first time, it's also POV Steadicam.
Yeah.
So it's the same, it's the same shot behind Winkies.
Yeah.
So again, you're immediately unsettled. You're like, I mean, whether you realize it or not, he's using the same language.
Yeah, you're like,
No. When she's walking through the apartment for the first time, so you're at any corner, the Goblin could come out. At any
Goblins.
At any moment,
Goblins, man.
And it's now because of Paul. That's every time I see it, I just think she's a Goblin. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Right. She's led into this apartment, and who is in the shower behind the glass door, but Laura Herring as question mark.
Sure.
Woman.
Yes.
And our mystery begins. Who is this woman?
And without being crass, this is a body that reads with like a striking announcement through fucking tapered glass.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Like, here's someone who looks like a Coke bottle.
Yeah, no, sure.
Abstracted, where you're
Famously,
like, what is this shape?
Yes.
She was Miss USA.
Yes.
Right. And
so,
she sees...
I don't think it's crass to say that.
She sees the Gilda poster. She decides to call herself Rita.
Because she doesn't remember who she is.
And, right. And
how she got here.
Here we are in this Hollywood dream, and we have these two, like, golden age Hollywood archetypes. We have the ingenue... the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed one, and the sort of like sexy mystery, like what's going on, dark noir on
Rita Hayworth and Ginger Rogers.
Well, I also think that their states of mind also sort of sum up your first experience going into Hollywood, which is one of and again, I think they can exist at the same time, which is, that exactly what you just said, the bright-eyed ingenue, but then also this woman who has completely lost her identity.
Right.
Like actually enters Hollywood going, I don't know who I am in any way.
And you tell
I'm
yourself,
I'm literally going to be a Hollywood actress, essentially, a Hollywood character.
I'm going to create my personality in real time.
Right.
Based on the stimuli that I'm getting from Hollywood.
Right, which to some people, they're like, that gives me a sense of autonomy.
Yes.
To be, I am in control of deciding which of these things I'm going to do in order to become the person I want to be.
Yes.
Versus a Naomi Watts who's like, I still believe that my path to success and immortality can be much like me winning a jitterbug contest. I show up and do what feels right to me, and everyone will go, great job. Thumbs up.
I think she is also...
We love your thing.
Like, oh boy.
Don't change at all.
A Hollywood mystery. Like, who's this?
Right.
Anyway, we move on from this to one of my favorite scenes in the movie, in a movie filled with some of my favorite scenes, which is Justin Theroux being sat down, hot director, being sat down and said, the studio just wanted to have a meeting. And in walks the two chillest people in the world, silent Angelo Badalamenti and Dan Hedaya, just looking into his briefcase. So he's just all forehead. Like, it's just like dark shadow forehead.
He's almost doing the Clooney.
He's doing the Clooney. And he just like... swipes over. Now, I don't want to be mean about Melissa George. Do you know Melissa George?
I don't know her personally, but I was those what was it, 3 years that she was a thing.
Yeah,
I sort of vaguely remember that. Yeah,
it kind of felt like the mob was trying to force Melissa George on us in real life.
I agree.
It feels mean for me to say this, but it is just funny that This Is the Girl is about Melissa George, who is someone who
went through
That's exactly right.
Don't you love Melissa George? And
I'm
it's like,
I don't.
She's fine. I don't know.
I have no problems with her.
I hate to be mean, but it's about these people, but it is so true. It's like you go through these like seasons of faces, right? It's and I hate to say this, but like in my mind, it's like the Gretchen Mol, the classic,
a very classic
example. No offense, with the Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
And then, honestly, Ryan Phillippe. Like, I just was like, why is
Leslye,
this person?
I couldn't agree more.
Why is this person just here suddenly?
I feel like he is not discussed enough as the male version of that.
I mean, it's what
and
happened.
I have always been like, I didn't ask for this.
But like, even a great actor.
But again, Hollywood marriage.
Yeah.
Around a little too long. Around a little too long.
With someone who was legit.
A guy I love, like Colin Farrell.
The juice, yeah.
Like, the initial backlash Colin Farrell faced that he then, he merged and evolved or whatever was like people being like, we can smell you trying to force this guy on us as a movie star, and we're not sure how we feel about it.
It's like, even though they have the juice and the talent, it's like they were sold in the way that makes you go, look, this has mafia vibes.
Now,
I do not want to go off on a tangent, so I'm just going to say this very briefly, and I hate to be the person name dropping. Colin Farrell is probably the best Hollywood meeting I've ever had.
Look,
Leslye, stunner.
I
hate to tell you, there was an off-ramp and David's going to welcome this conversation.
Class act, beautiful, succinct conversation.
David will not move on from this.
So I will move on quickly.
A beautiful text after receiving the material.
A beautiful text.
A beautiful long text.
Leslye, it was lovely
written.
to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Do you know what David has on his desk over there?
Tell me.
It's a little Lego.
I got him a little
Farrell
Lego
in
Colin
Minority
Farrell
Report. Colin Farrell's my favorite.
His number one guy.
My favorite guy.
David's number one guy.
Oh my
and
God.
Leslye, I will also say this. You are the second person I know who had a general meeting with Colin Farrell that didn't end up going anywhere, but also reported to me, that's like the best fucking meeting I ever had. Like, what a guy.
Always.
What did he say to you about raising your daughter?
I can find the quote. It's my pinned tweet on the normal website X that I never visit anymore.
It's such a shovel so you can dig that pinned tweet up
said,
from the graveyard.
I told him that my daughter was a year old, and he said, "They grow. Keep watering her and make sure she gets sunlight." It was so cute.
Oh,
did
he repeat it? Didn't he say it?
They grow. Oh. It was lovely. That was Kogonada, friend of Leslye Headland.
Yes, yeah.
When I asked to interview him for After Yang, and Kogonada was like, I know you love Colin Farrell. You should just talk to Colin.
Yeah.
And instead I interviewed them together because Colin was being an unselfish star and trying to share But as the interview began, Kogonada was like, Colin, this guy loves you. I'm not going to talk. Like, you should just talk to him. And I was like, no, we have to, all of us have to talk. But anyway.
Do you folks know that Melissa George...
Oh, God.
This is the girl.
This is the girl.
That's what the scene is the mob saying, this is the girl. Thoreau being like, what? What are you talking about? This is my movie. You can't pick my actress. What do you but what do you want to say about Melissa George?
I want to pull this up, get the name right. Melissa George has patents for inventions. Physical...
Shut the fuck up.
She created a thing called Style Snaps, quote, a device intended to allow changing pant hem length without sewing, that was sold on like shopping networks in Australia and still makes tremendous money to this day. And she's like, that's my main income. It's never been acting.
Well, good for you,
Sort of
Melissa.
like talks about her career in the way of someone on the business end of like a Mulholland Drive experience where she's like, the one consistent in my life, the thing that's kept me above water is that I created Style Snaps when I was 22 years old before Hollywood tried to sell me on everyone.
The aesthetics of this scene are, if someone was having a dream about how Hollywood works a little bit, like, Justin Theroux has his golf club laid out in front of him like a sword. Right? Hidayah has the briefcase from which he's just pulling headshots.
Here's a meeting. We are deciding that this person's a star.
Badalamenti is silent.
And if you disagree, then you will be executed.
And then essentially what looks like basically like a hotel bellhop, a giant man in a red jacket, comes in with a tiny espresso, gives it to Badalamenti, who drinks it and will not let it profane his throat. So it spits it onto a napkin and says it's shit. And everyone loses their mind and they're like, this is really one of the best espressos in Hollywood.
So,
and like, I don't know what's going on. And Hidayah screams at the top of his lungs.
The people in these corridor of power boardroom meetings who get to make the decisions that change the world, or at least change the entertainment we consume, the tapestry of the public consciousness in mainstream media, are lunatics who spit coffee into napkins and act like blubbering idiots. But also, all of this feels kind of completely random, right? Like, the core moment of this movie for me is Naomi Watts, not to jump way ahead, nailing this audition and then looking at this other woman and being like, I'm about to not get this part for reasons that have nothing to do with me. And their decision of like, we're telling you it's this girl.
Yes.
There's like a controlled chaos of this scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, it's like even though everyone's
It's incredibly
still,
tense, you're not really sure why.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's like this thing. One thing that I wanted to ask you guys, there is like, what's interesting is that there's a hard iconography with some of the characters, like the bellhop, and then the sort of blandness of everyone else, not unlike the other guy in the Winky scene. There's this sort of wash of white guys in a suit.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was curious, like, what's the visual reference for Thoreau? Is it Tarantino?
I feel like it's that kind of a guy. The black shirt, the glasses.
I think it's the guy who wants to be the Tarantino.
Yeah, it's like I wonder, it's like I love the idea of Lynch just sort of going, he's wearing these glasses, his hair is like this, he's got a golf club. Like there's something about
it's a bit of self-parody as well. Like
I was gonna
Lynch
say
with the up hair.
I was gonna ask.
Like,
yeah.
Right. You know.
Yeah. That he's not that he's a self-insert character, but it's but the design of the character feels like extremely
the younger 99 version of him, but also the version of him who is like, well, I got to play the game to some degree, right?
But he also, that you immediately clock him as the director, too.
Yes.
That's what I love about Lynch, is that you're just like...
It's down to the golf club.
Yes, yeah.
But it feels like Lynch... Well, go ahead.
So hot.
I was going to say, my distinct memory is watching this movie on DVD with my mother, and he comes on screen, and she gets hot and bothered. And for years after that, it was like Justin Theroux was her #1 celebrity crush.
Like, where's Justin Theroux? Why is he not in movies?
And anytime we were watching something that he was in, and my dad would walk behind us and go, really, him? And let's just say, kindly,
very handsome.
My
He's a pretty
father
boy,
is about as far off from Justin Theroux as a person could possibly be. They're just very different types of men. But it was this thing of my mom being like, oh, Justin Theroux. Like, I saw him on the street. I saw him at Cinderella. Justin Theroux. Like, she'd say it like this, and he'd be like, he's got like tattoos and spiky hair. What are you talking about?
This is certainly Lynch parodying and working through hilarious, awful, evil Hollywood meetings he's had and putting them through his filter and his,
and this is
style.
The version of him that is 20% more amenable to the terrible Hollywood notes. Right?
Right. But then also...
It's a self-insert, but it's also like a kind of a shadow self version of how his career could have gone astray, say, if Dune...
He didn't have Final Cut. Like, if he didn't have that, again, the blank check, like, if he didn't have that, then he'd be this guy, or he'd be stuck in...
If Dune had gone okay.
Amen.
Right?
Bitch.
And he was like, I guess this is a partnership.
Yeah, sure.
I make movies where we meet in the middle.
Dune is the best thing that ever happened to him.
That is our exact take.
I think it's his take too, in a way. I mean, well, he hates talking about it, but like,
but if it had
put him on the path he needs to.
In Room to Dream, to Dream, he says when you what the blessing of a massive failure is there the only way the only direction is up.
Yeah.
You can only go up from there.
And also teaches you everything you never want to do again, rather than those being abstract ideas of maybe I could do something like this.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
But within the text of the film, I do feel like, now again, obviously in the TV pilot version, this is clearly just going to be a plot. Is Justin Theroux plays this director.
Sure.
He has to cast Melissa George. What happens next? How will he interact with Betty? Blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
But if you're thinking about, this is the sort of scenario of a scorned Hollywood starlet, right? Mm-hmm. Or a person who didn't make it.
Yeah.
This is them being like, this is how the fucking system works.
Right.
Like, it just, in the wood-paneled office, suddenly a shadowy mobster is like, no, you can't cast her. You're
Amy
casting
Adams,
her.
and why are you always in the conversation, but you never get the job?
And of course...
It's not completely out of reach.
Yeah.
It's within grasp, and yet somehow you never grab it.
Yeah.
Thoreau freaks out.
There have to be forces at play.
Smashes the window with his golf club.
Yeah.
And we cut to Mr. Roque, the Michael J. Anderson again, who's just like, shut everything down. Mm-hmm. And that's that.
Yeah.
The next scene, which again, this is the one I was like, this isn't in the pilot.
You like this scene. Okay.
Well, I like every scene in Mulholland Drive.
Sure.
No,
that was the joke.
Mark Pellegrino talking to another guy who's laughing.
Yes.
And the guy is clearly explaining what went wrong with the hit on Camilla, Rita, whatever, and this is crazy. Droid riders. And the
this scene is everything I hate about LA, is that LA has people like this in offices like this.
Well, but then aren't you happy that he
gets
shot and his hair turns into like a sort of fried,
it is
arrow?
The feel-good moment of the movie for me.
And then this insane slapstick plays out, where the hitman accidentally shot someone else, like in another room, and has to kill her. And then there's the cleaning man who's just staring blankly, and he has to kill this guy too.
Are you saying that you used
I was like, there's no way that's in the pilot.
And it is, right? It is.
It was in the pilot?
Yes. It's all in the pilot. So I guess that was going to be something else too, right? Once I went up with this guy.
Sure.
What do you guys? Anything you want to offer on Mark Pellegrino taking out an entire group
about
of folks?
This movie is just this thing of like the difference of. I mean, now it's fucking changed a little because TV shows are told to conceptualize themselves as 10-hour movies or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But it used to be like this thing is so scattershot, you have no guarantee of how many episodes you get, that when you're designing a pilot, the idea is how to put enough pieces in play that like there's open, expansive terrain of where this could go.
Yes. You
conceptualize a character like Mark Pellegrino, and maybe there's a fixed endpoint you hope you get to, or maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe you're just like, you know what this show needs? A type of guy like this. A plot thread that exists in this kind of universe.
I got a real sense of, again, watching the scene for the first time in the theater.
Yeah.
I got this real sense of parody. I got this real sense of like, because I feel like what was in the water then was this Coen Brothers, Tarantino.
Sure, absolutely.
Elmore Leonard.
Yep.
Barry Sonnenfeld.
Right. This scene feels like it could be from Get Shorty.
Yeah, it just feels, and then the parody of it is the continuation of just like, it feels like his commentary, or maybe not commentary, but his experience of the temperature of Hollywood at that point.
Yes.
Genre-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's like we see, is the next scene Thoreau again?
No, the next scene after the big hitman thing is Betty and Diane like going through her bag and finding money, the key, and well, I said Betty and Diane. I'm sorry, I'm so bad with the names. Betty and
Veronica.
Rita. No, Rita. And Rita crying and being like, I don't know who I am. Like, and the mystery advancing, basically.
Can I ask the two of you, as people who've studied this movie far more deeply than I have and seen it far more times than I have, on the Lynch clue list?
Oh, sure.
Number 3 is, can you hear the title of the film that Adam Kesher is auditioning
Sylvia North Story, yeah. And you hear it, you do hear it twice.
What is the meaning of that?
Explain.
Yeah. I'm not going to do this with other things, but that was the one where I was like, I missed that, and I don't understand what the importance of that is.
So the Sylvia,
say it again, the title?
The Sylvia North Story.
Okay.
So the movie that he's directing.
Yes.
Kesher, right? That's his name. The Justin Theroux character. Yeah. Seems to be this kind of like American graffiti 50s throwbacky thing, right?
But
like
also some biopic-y.
Possibly. I mean, the name is absurd, right? Like the Sylvia North Story.
She's some kind of singer.
Right. The audition scene is like a singer.
Yeah.
What I'm never really clear on is what the audition Betty does is. Because it's not for the Sylvia North Story.
No, that's for the project
that's a different director.
Going.
Right. It's this like
but later in the movie when it does get mentioned again.
When does it get mentioned again?
It gets mentioned again when she's at the house party.
In the other
they ask how Camilla and Diane met.
She says, I was up for that, and I had a smaller role.
And then she say
like, Camilla was great in that.
Yes. And doesn't she say she said the director didn't like me, and he says Bob Booker or whatever it is. And so that's the director at the audition.
Right.
The project has also like transmutated.
Right.
Yeah.
What the project, the brass ring project, the star making project is, has changed at the same time that the identities have changed, you're saying, basically.
Right, yeah. So
the project that's never getting made has become the project.
The project that got made and then made someone a star.
Yes.
So to me, it's not necessarily like I don't know. Again, I want to ascribe meaning to the movie, but in walking through that, it does feel like, and because we see the cowboy again in that scene. At the dinner party, it does feel like the random fate of Hollywood,
right?
Meaning the line between success and failure is so thin and it's so ephemeral.
Yes,
and that's why I keep coming back to this idea about the movie that it's not.
This is
because it's not good or bad,
and
or
it's
better.
It's not real or fantasy. It's that these two things are so close to each other,
and who knows
and almost
why
indistinguishable, and yet they feel wildly apart.
Exactly.
Right. And that's the whole experience of trying to live in a city like this that is run entirely on everyone's ambition or fear, right?
Yes.
That it's everyone who doesn't have it trying to figure out how to get to the other side, and everyone who's on the other side being terrified of it going away somehow.
You're also metatextually looking, where you're watching a movie that David Lynch initially made for a television network.
Yeah.
Right? And then when we exit the TV network version of it, and
it has
the other
transmutated
shit
into
made with
different
European money. Right. It's like so I'm kind of with you on like, is that reality? No, it's an entirely different way of storytelling.
And this is what's interesting too, is like when we're talking about, that's weird. Why would he put the Mark Pellegrino version in the TV show?
Right.
You're watching it and trying to go like, so what would he have done for that character over X number of episodes or seasons?
Yeah.
Versus them going, well, now this character is a closed loop. Everything I ever want to say about this character happens within this.
Yeah. No, there's more Mark Pellegrino in the movie. Like,
no, that's what I'm saying, though.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But like, right now, this is what I have to work with.
Right.
This scene
now,
of him
everything I want to say
as a
has to
hitman.
be in this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same with every character in this film.
But obviously, you can sort of, if you want to be more basic about it, I guess you can sort of think of it as like, this is her rerunning something that didn't work out for her, as no, what I did was I crushed that fucking audition.
Right.
I was going to be taken to him.
Yeah.
We meet, our eyes lock. Like, this is my moment. Then it's like, but Adam, you have to watch. Melissa George is about to do our audition, and you have to say this is the girl.
Well, I also think that there's also this feeling of like when you compare those two scenes, that there's this. She is triumphant in this scene, but the film is not getting made. In the other version, she fails miserably, and the director doesn't like her.
Yes.
And the movie is a success.
Yes.
So there's this feel again. This is why I hesitate to say one's reality and one's not.
Right.
Because those two things are outside of her control. We know she's a great actress because we saw it.
And the feeling of that audition room and the weird reality that's created within it that she like accepts and enters into and like wins the game, and then you walk out the doors and the behavior of the three other women who should be her allies in this industry, you hope.
Yeah.
Aren't there three others?
No, two. But they're like,
doesn't that woman come in at
what
the
a
end?
disaster. Maybe someone else shows up at the end.
Well,
but
they get introduced.
The old casting agent lady is basically like, that poor guy, he's never going to make that piece of shit. But you were great.
That her first line walking out the door, it's like their performances changed. Their energies changed. The second they leave that room, what a disaster.
Yeah.
You're feeling the way Naomi Watts did.
Really? What do you mean? Didn't
what
she
do you
just
mean?
knock
Why are you
that
saying
out of
that
the
to
park?
me?
Yeah,
and
right.
they're like, no, you were incredible. None of that means anything.
Right.
Yeah.
That was nothing.
Yeah.
That's a bunch
you're
of old
something, and now we'll work out in some other way.
Yeah.
And I'll bring you across
And
the
again,
street.
that's the experience of being in Hollywood, which is like, you can do the best that that scene is transformative. When I watched that in the theater, I was like, I've been watching, you're kind of experience it. When she does that audition, you're like, who the fuck is this woman?
And it's the metatextual thing of like,
fuck are you?
It is that for Naomi Watts as well.
And this is the thing in terms of like casting Ann Miller, casting Patrick. It's like, I am going to, instead of going with he could have cast, I guess because of the TV of it all, he probably couldn't cast a movie star.
But even still,
but
he could have cast someone who was more well-known in TV, but not in leading roles or whatever.
Or he could have, not unlike Kyle MacLachlan, he could have convinced an actress that he'd worked with before to say, like, this is going to be something special, et cetera, et cetera.
If not a star, he could have found a more familiar face versus someone who really was new to anyone who hadn't watched Tank Girl, a Future's Ben's Choice episode.
Oh, God. So he is, what's odd is that he over and over again relies on your public consciousness of something that you probably don't know about.
Yeah.
But it's weird. He sort of trusts the fact that you experienced a cultural osmosis.
Yes.
Again, subconsciously possibly, so that as you're watching Naomi Watts go through the experience that she has actually gone through in her life and knows that this is the audition that she must nail. And to watch her, I have never been so thrilled by a performance.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed performances. I've admired performances, but I found it thrilling.
Well, you're watching someone make the argument for their worthiness in real time.
Yeah.
And the character's doing that, and the actress playing the scene is doing that.
Yeah.
Where they're like, I need to be undeniable in this moment.
And the footnote is the movie's not getting made.
Right.
The footnote, the punctuation on the scene is none of that matters.
So quickly, they say at the same time, of course none of that mattered, but also it mattered because you impressed us.
Because
and
you
now
impressed
us,
us, and now we're going to.
Then they go to the other room, and the other room is inaccessible to her for forces that are outside of her control and perception.
Yeah.
She looks in the eyes of this other woman and feels some sense of transference. And it's like, I don't get why it's her and not me.
Yeah.
But there's something going on here that's unknowable.
And there is no reason.
Correct.
It's
meaningless. They don't explain to fucking Justin Theroux. They just go, this is what it has to be.
That's why I think that the arm, whatever, I don't know the actor, the
Michael J. Anderson.
The man from another,
The arm.
Yeah.
He is correct. So canonically the arm.
The arm.
You're right.
He is the arm.
Well, he's kind of the arm here, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just this image, not unlike the cowboy and the goblin. There are just these images of chaos. Like there is no way that you can control what is going to happen to you in life, but specifically in this particular industry.
Absolutely.
Like there's no not I know we're kind of skipping over it, but to bring it back to the Thoreau cucked scene.
I'm bringing us back. Don't worry.
Well, the cucked scene.
I have much more to say about the audition.
Yeah.
But the cuck scene is next. After this shitty day he has, he arrives home. His wife has fucked the pool man, Billy Ray Cyrus. And he, in a very Freudian act, despoils his wife's jewelry box with paint.
Yeah.
In a very Freudian?
Yeah. Graham Fuller said that in his review. I've never forgotten it.
Interesting.
If you think of a jewelry box as sort of a vaginal, secret, metaphorical, he's like,
dumping paint on it.
Dumps paint all over it.
Oh, that's so funny.
Like this destructive, odd sexual response to this, like sexual
jewelry box.
I felt it to be just another example of his powerlessness.
Sure.
Yeah.
And his again, the whims of the fate and his impotence.
Yes,
impotence
absolutely.
in every single way.
It's this very impotent act.
He can't choose the girl. So
he can't fight this man.
He can't fight this man.
Yeah.
He can't
fight the mob.
He can't fight the mob. His
can't
acting
fight her.
out.
He can fight the sort of theatrics around her of like, this is your like play acting costume.
To me, it's a mirror. Exactly, it's a mirror of the golf club into the windshield and the way he runs away.
Another impotent act.
Yeah,
it's
like,
just sort of
these are objects of status.
Right.
Yeah, the objects of status that I'm going to destroy.
Right.
And so it feels like this again, this kind of like odd acting out in a way that is never actually going to affect the actions that have already transpired.
Let's say
that's what I thought you were going to say about Freudian. Like I thought you meant like that's what I thought.
Objects of status that he's going to destroy, but in both cases, he is basically causing surface damage.
So, exactly.
The windshield's been busted.
The windshield's
you could drive the car. The car hasn't been destroyed.
Probably shouldn't drive the car.
Yeah.
And you
can get it replaced. You can get it replaced.
You're Ben and you maybe have a strong take on how it could fit into a fashion line. But in both cases, he's affecting the most surface level of the thing in a way.
100%. I also think Billy Ray Cyrus is very funny that his mode is basically like, hey man, just leave and don't forget about it. Don't worry about it. And then when he starts acting up and he like shoves the woman, Billy Ray goes into kind of like, all right, buddy mode. And then just finally calls him out. I just think that's funny. I think he's so funny. It's a very funny performance from Billy Ray Cyrus.
One of our finest actors.
And the last thing I'll say about the impotence of it all is that then when he goes through the rest of, or not the rest of the movie, but like for the next few scenes that he's in, he's covered in pink.
He is covered in pink.
He's not covered in blood. He's
not covered cool guy Hollywood all black outfit is now this kind of weird comical like paint stained thing.
Girly pink.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think David Lynch selected these things, offhandedly.
But I think,
again,
I don't know if
he was just fucking throwing shit
I don't know if I don't think he makes these like intentional
things. Again, it's not like I've left you a clue, you better figure out the clue. There's only one answer to the clue. No, of course not.
He's sort of just like listening to the muse and just being like, for some reason, this is calling out to me and I'm just going to do it without explaining.
And that's what I felt watching it for the first time. I just felt like this guy is
he's tapped into something.
He's just and that Justin Theroux is just sort of not that he's not talented, but that he's so hobbled that to me, I was like watching it and I was like, God, this guy's super hot. And then as it kept going, I was like, God, this guy's pathetic.
He seems pathetic. And it's like, right. You think
my
as a
mom
director,
remained undeterred.
As a director, you're like, I'm now in control, right? Like that's the whole point of being a director.
You make one concession and it's like, did I just give up the whole fucking thing?
He feels really Gen X.
You're not wrong.
He's not wrong.
Gen X is hell.
That's the reference. That's what I was trying to figure out. There's something about it that was like
that attitude.
Basically, right as that is dying, as we're on like,
the
this is shot in 99. It comes out in 2001. You're on two sides of Y2K.
Yep.
And it's like, this is the guy who used to be tip of the spear, coolest, youngest, freshest.
Yeah.
And this guy's about to be phased out by whatever's coming.
It's not just phased out. It's more like,
Yeah.
hey, I get to make a big movie. I get to do what I want, right? No, you get to do what we tell you to do. Fuck you. I'm going to do what I want. Okay, well, now you have no money.
Right.
Now your life is falling apart. Now you have to go to beg Cookie. God bless him. Seems like a nice guy. Big white mustache.
Sure.
For, a room for the night.
Yeah.
This, in between the cucking scene and the scene I'm about to talk about, we have more of Diane and Rita, Betty and Rita. Jesus Christ. They call
Jack and Diane.
what they think might be her phone number. Like she figures out her name. Maybe my name's Diane because she sees it on a waitress's name tag. Then
these outfits are just psychotic. Like, what are these girls wearing? They just look crazy. It's literally like they went to Party City.
Yeah.
Or Claire's.
Well, they don't have a lot of money.
And they just fucking
except for in a bag.
Yeah, and they're hiding it. Yeah, they hide them, which,
They look like fake clothes in a way I can't describe any better.
That's correct.
But they don't look like costumes.
Yeah,
they
feel
look like fake clothes.
Fake. What are they made?
But you know what I'm saying?
They're not even made of fabric.
It's beyond fast fashion. It's like rapid, instant fashion.
There is a brief and comic scene in which the mob dispatches a person I can only describe as a golem who is like 40 feet tall and wide.
Sure.
To the same house. And he's just like, what's the guy's name? Adam Kesher, right?
Yeah.
Adam Kesher, and both the wife and Billy Ray Cyrus like try to charge this guy, and he just like shrugs them off. There's that shot where he like turns his hand into a fist, where he's like, I have to go fist mode to like punch one of them.
He punches her in the face,
right? Because she's like on top of him.
And that made such an impression on me the first time I watched it too. I was like, but
he like doesn't even acknowledge. He's still just going, Adam Kesher, and like, it's like this is what they have. They have these like robot automatons that are strong.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all.
They wrote his name on a piece of paper and fed it into his mouth.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But when you saw it, did this really disturb you, this scene?
Well, it disturbed me because of how funny it was.
Like, the audience is laughing, too, I feel like, at a lot of these scenes.
I think it is truly the X factor with Lynch's career, where you're like, how can a guy make things that are this abstract and against the norms of Hollywood storytelling that more often than not have hit to some degree and connected with the public, even if they can't quite make sense of the story? And the answer is that he is inexplicably funny.
He really is.
And if people are laughing, they're a lot more willing to tolerate some shit they don't understand because they're being locked into a physiological response.
I also just remember the audience at this point. We're pretty freaked out. We've already met the Winkies guy. This is a weird, tense movie.
Yeah.
So these scenes like the Billy Ray Cyrus scene, even the mob yelling scene, like you're kind of like, this is funny, right? Like, this is weird and funny.
His most upsetting
I'm trying
work
to
is
calm
still
down.
disarming you with comedy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Past and future guest Kevin Smith has talked about
Past and future.
Yep. When Clerks like blew up at Sundance, and here's a movie that was made for no money by non-professionals with non-professional cast, with like threadbare production values and whatever, and everyone flips out over it. And he's like, the answer is like, the thing I was able to convey in that movie was something funny. The audience was laughing.
Yeah.
And Hollywood cannot like buy that on purpose. You need to find someone who has the instincts. And if like the audience is laughing, studios are kind of like, I guess it works.
That's I was at a film festival, and John Waters was interviewing Roger Corman.
Yeah.
And he said, what do you think what genre, would you not do, or the hardest genre? And he immediately was like, comedy.
It is.
Because immediately whether it's working or not.
It's less subjective.
Yeah.
If you're like an exec who's watching a screening of a fucking thing, you're like, well, either people are laughing or they're not.
Yeah.
I can't fight with that.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing where if Lynch can nail 5 things in a movie that are inexplicably funny, people are like, I guess there are like handles for people.
Right. There was something too that like when I watched this the first time you're absolutely right. This scene kind of got me back in.
Yeah.
You're just so
because the
confused and tense.
Well, the mystery.
A guy getting cheated on by Billy Ray Cyrus. You're like, okay,
well, it's more active. Right. It's more active than the A story. You know, the A story has now sort of morphed into
so elusive,
and it's kind of like you've seen it before. It's like they're starting to the detective aspect of it is starting to hit the familiar beats.
Yes.
You know, 100%. You're not.
Is this pastiche?
Yeah, you don't. And these scenes are actually the most energetic. They're the scenes. I mean, again, the Mark Pellegrino scene as well. They just start to pop. Mm-hmm. They start to give you these shots of comedy. And like you said, I think
the Twin Peaks back and forth. It's the dance of like, just the murder mystery of the girl isn't the thing. You have to go between that and a log lady or whatever.
Well,
you know,
and the soap opera of it, like Twin Peaks.
All of it, but it's moving between these spaces.
Yeah.
Because the Betty and Rita is like Betty, you know, playing Nancy Drew and being like, well, maybe it's this, you know, and then the occasional scene of like Lee Grant shows up at their door and is like, someone is in trouble, and you're then. As an audience member, you're back to like,
that's right.
Oh God, like something weird's about to happen.
And Lee Grant, famously, like one of the most blacklisted actresses,
completely
where it's like
written
career
off by
stripped
Hollywood.
down, has 20 years where
Valley
she
of the
can't
Dolls.
fucking work.
Yep.
Right.
Like a young up and comer gets an Oscar nomination, then is like benched,
right,
and then comes back and like wins basically the revenge Oscar and has like an incredible career.
Yeah,
becomes a filmmaker lasting decades. But like someone who comes in with that sort of baked in power of like,
at this point, obviously she's quite old.
Both a good
although
and
she's still alive.
Yeah. But this is someone who represents both like the best and worst outcome.
Exactly.
For them disposing of you.
Well, that's the because like Coco shows up and is like, oh, don't worry about her. She's just an old kook. Like, don't. But like, right. It's like if Coco is this more put together, like, I'm an old Hollywood broad and like here I am now running this little, you know.
And it's the point from A to Z for her.
Right. And then you have this like weird ghost lady who's like, you know, like you're like.
She's sort of, again, the in-between place, like being good, but the movie gets canceled, being bad, and the movie does well. Lee Grant represents essentially, or again, not represents, I don't want to say that, but the scene, it's a two-shot. There's no coverage. It's just, you have to experience both these women at the same time.
Let's put it this way. Lee Grant, my opinion, one of the greatest screen actors of all time.
Agreed.
I think incredible, right?
Yeah.
Made it. Was
in
in Hollywood, was getting Oscar noms, was validated.
Yeah.
And then there's 15 years of them basically being like, that's a crazy lady, don't pay attention to her.
Right.
Get out of here.
We treat her like a ghost.
We don't care.
Right.
The 50s and 60s.
You are dead.
Yes.
She's on the blacklist. None of those credits she had before matter. Right? And
I understand what you're saying. Absolutely. Right. That's the point. That's the point of her being
some
used.
miracle, and she's talked about it so much, it didn't drive her insane.
No.
And she thankfully had this like incredible second act.
Yeah.
But that's how she was treated, was like Coco being like, don't
worry about her.
That's not a thing.
That's not a thing.
That's not a thing.
Yeah.
After this, Justin Theroux's character goes to meet a guy called the Cowboy up in a ranch. And, you know, like, and I do feel like that's also Lynch's like, in Hollywood, right? There's a magic road at the top of the hill that like winds like a snake.
Sure.
There are diners in the middle of downtown that feel like they're from, you know, the small town. There's a fucking cowboy ranch. Like you just drive 10 miles and suddenly you're in the desert.
And it is,
there's a cowboy ranch.
But if you go to the top of, I think it's like, not Benedict Canyon, but
you could say anything
Runyon,
and I would know.
Yeah, Runyon Canyon or something like that.
Sure.
There is a corral up there.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. Like, because it's old Hollywood. Like, let's go shoot the Western shit. Like,
is this a real ranch or a movie ranch? Well, it was a movie ranch, but now they don't really film stuff
kind
here
of a real
anymore,
ranch,
so it's kind of a real ranch.
Like, again, I think we can talk about what I would love to know what you guys think the cowboy sort of represents, quote unquote. But my experience of watching this, and I was more rewatching it for this, that I did wonder, again, with the stilted language, the stilted performance, the strange language, the fact that he's wearing literally the clothes of the first Western star in silent film. It feels the beginning of Hollywood to me.
Yes. The most elemental kind of like brute force,
icon, and then this stilted language that feels like a silent movie star moving into the talkies.
Right. Yes.
That's sort of, here's where the obnoxious, impotent, Gen X, admittedly hot, director.
There's another part of it in my reading, which is here is this guy. He's had like fucking actual like sort of like mafia tough guy criminals, weirdos.
Yeah.
Be like, this is fucking happening. You're casting her.
Yeah.
And Justin Theroux's still trying to fight against it impotently. He's trying to pour paint in their jewelry box.
That's right.
Even though he knows they control the purse strings, right? Yeah. And guys like this are in this dance of like, do I stick to my guns and not get the movie made? Or is there a way I can meet them halfway and make my Dune and it works, right? Those people think of themselves as fucking cowboys.
Yeah.
You're taking a last stand.
That's interesting.
You're not listening to the notes, or you choose the one battle. I'll give them this, but if I win everything else, then it's still my movie, right? Which is basically what the cowboy is saying to him. This archetype of not just movie history, but of the kind of renegade. How do you meet in the middle between business and commerce, or rather business and art, commerce and art, right? And what he's saying to him in a much more even-keeled tone than Hideo or anyone is, if you cast the girl, you can do anything else you want.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's just, look, it's classic Lynch in that there's lots of things you can project onto it, but I also feel like Lynch is like, I feel like he's going to meet a cowboy. I have this idea that's cowboy.
Yeah.
And the cowboy will tell him essentially, your attitude governs your life. Sometimes there's a buggy. We'll speak in these kinds of almost like Western versions of like Eastern aphorisms. It's basically like you need to give yourself over.
But the Western movies are all these cowboy poets who are like,
that's what I'm talking about.
The moral reason of I stroll into a town and it's like, what is the empirical right that I have to do and I have to protect?
But like he's this definition of old masculinity, like, the people pulling the levers of Hollywood, fine. But it's also like, it's very easy to read this movie as, the Diane, whoever is dreaming the movie, a bunch of the movie has descended into maybe some sort of sex work. We see her sleeping in a bed. The cowboy comes in and says it's time to wake up. He's sort of pimp coded at that moment, like
that's
no
true,
other.
Yeah.
There's stuff
and
like
also
that.
Also the blurry line between literal sex work and the sort of like exchange of sex for power.
You're kind of like
the
industry level actress. You're going to be someone's date, exactly. Like,
and do you have agency? Are you choosing to do this, or are you manipulated into a broken system that actually has deprived you of agency by even putting you in the position where that's the choice?
And that's because, and then it's followed very closely to what you guys are saying, like almost, like a scene or two later is the audition.
Yeah.
Which I want to talk about. But the cowboy says, you'll see me once if you do good, you'll see me twice if you do bad. We see him saying, it's time to wake up. We see him once. We see him again, very briefly, in the background of the party scene, much, much later in the movie.
After Melissa George has exited?
Yes.
He does a wipe.
He just walks by.
Yeah.
He is completely incongruous in that scene because everyone else is dressed for a party and he is dressed like a cowboy. And that is like one of those things where you're like, this is the thing Hollywood doesn't like to think about, that they're like guys like that, right?
Yeah.
Like he clashes so much with the nice aesthetics of that party. There's that fucking cowboy in the background. It's like, yeah, well, half the girls here, like.
And I think in Los Angeles, you see people like that where you're like, how do you exist? What has your fucking life been for the last 40 years?
Right.
You're like this all the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
The cowboy is also, I will say, it is a very funny scene. Like, the way he's talking is funny. The whole bizarreness of Theroux being like, the fuck? What are you talking about? The cowboy's talking to him like just with no expression, no eyebrows. It's funny.
Oh, yeah, no eyebrows, yeah.
It's creepy and funny and cool, and it's why people like David Lynch.
Yeah, because he's fine.
The next scene is the rehearsal of the audition, which is so crucial to the audition.
Right.
How shitty Betty is in the rehearsal.
Exactly.
And that moment, the best moment where she's doing the line, she's sort of selling them like I would sell them or whatever.
And by the way,
and then she goes, and then I like cry, blah, 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 and I say this one last thing.
Here's the other thing.
And that's where her performance really comes alive.
She's doing a shitty, superficial performance, and yet you can see the difference of she is fundamentally an actor in a way that the Laura Herring character is not.
Right.
Yeah.
She's just reading them blankly.
Helping her read.
Right.
And you're like, well, undeniably she has more juice than someone who has no acting ability.
Yeah.
But yet you are not prepared for what she's about to do in the actual audition.
No, you're not prepared at all. And you're absolutely right that it's crucial for us to know the scene before the scene happens.
Correct.
It's definitely the setup for the payoff.
How it's quote unquote
if you don't have the
supposed to go.
first part, the second part doesn't hit nearly as much.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think is so interesting is that again
You're right that there are 3 ladies sitting there. I don't know where the third lady ends up.
Thank you, David.
but I also think
when they're walking, there's only 2. I don't know.
This is Blackbird Gate all over again.
at the last part of the scene, like when everybody's leaving, I feel like one more lady
July.
comes in, and you're like, "Who the fuck was that?"
The audition.
So the audition, I think that when he puts these things in, he says, here's the bad audition and here's the good audition.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
What I think is interesting is that with Lynch's work, everybody sort of leans into the positive side of the dream.
Yeah.
And they say, there's the negative side and then there's the positive side.
There's a
if you wanna
value
be that,
judgment he's making, you're saying. People
and then you have to make that value judgment.
Right.
So
He's
for example,
not doing it.
for example, we think of the Betty Rita as a dream because it
Yes.
is so heightened. All of these good things are happening to everybody.
Yeah.
So in our mind, we go, that's not reality.
Mm-hmm.
But why? Do you know what I mean? Like we think of this as fake, and yet in this storyline, in this quote unquote dream that everybody is saying that this is Diane's dream,
Sure.
we see this scene that is so realistic.
Mhm.
It feels so dropped. Again, like there was no part of me that was prepared with the tone of how she was behaving and how
Yes.
Rita's behaving and what their storyline has been like.
Yeah.
That's
For
interesting.
her to drop in the way that she does.
I don't find this scene realistic. But
I think her performance within the
performance
scene,
is realistic.
the context
So
of the
I
scene
would
is
like to-
as
I
heightened,
would like
if
to
not
talk
more
about
heightened than anything
how I
else
feel
in the
about
movie.
this scene, which I think is an incredibly important scene.
I'd love to let you talk about it.
There's a bunch of stuff going on here. One, it is this, again, Hollywood pastiche. You've got the crusty orange face soap opera actor-y kind of guy, right? I'm going to do this one a little close.
Yeah, and let me
Very
tell you
creepy.
how acting works.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got the
Kid,
direct.
I've been around the block a few times.
You got the nice guy producer in the sweater who's like, meet everyone, right?
Yeah.
You got the ladies sitting there quietly.
And you're so unclear on the power structure of the ladies where he's
Right.
like, she's the best casting
Yes.
director. I wish we could
I
get
wish
her.
she was, but
So
she's
why
just
is
here.
this-
He doesn't reveal
It's
the
all a
ex-wife thing until
favor,
later,
right,
but
yes.
you're like,
I
then
agree
what's
that
she
the-
doing here if
The
she...
power dynamics are difficult to because really everyone's at the same level.
Yes.
No one is blocked in a way that we would understand.
Correct. And it's so intimate.
It's so
you know.
intimate. The director's
The director is this
incredibly-
hilarious parody.
And the second you leave this room,
good,
your
you know.
perception of every single person changes immediately.
exactly.
But-
exactly.
Where you're watching and you're like, well, this guy's a big enough star that he reads with the actresses and he gets to make the decision. She leaves. They're like, this project's not going.
Yes.
You're like, so that guy's not a big enough star for this to actually mean anything.
That's
It
right.
doesn't- No, he's a crusty old creep.
Yeah.
No offense to him, but he is. And I think he is an old soap opera actor. Lynch loves that kind of
Well,
guy.
also in the script, she's talking about her dad.
Yes. Okay. So this is
So
what
it
this
would make
this
no
scene-
sense,
Oh.
like
No,
for
but
him
this
to
scene
be
is
the
the
actor.
crux of everybody's theorizing about the film. Is this scene?
I agree.
It's like,
yeah.
why does she suddenly come alive? Like
If
this?
the Winky
right?
scene is the thesis, then
Yeah.
this is the turning point of like, that these things, continue.
Why is this cute, bubbly girl who shows no real sign of talent outside of being nice suddenly
wearing
the
the
most
Virgo outfit?
killer fucking noir, like real actor? She's crying. The emotion is right. Like, why is it so
Sure.
good? Now, if you want to think about this scene one way, it's like we are in her dream, right? We're in this failed actress's dream. One, she's imagining she crushed the scene. Great. That's
Sure.
but two, this is about, this scene it comes close to her real life of like, she did something terrible. She did something dark. She acted out of revenge. Like suddenly we're seeing reality bubble into the dream, right? Of like
that
now.
her whole
But is it reality?
I don't.
mean,
I'm just talking. I'm not
Okay,
saying
okay,
this
okay.
is a definitive read. I'm
just
just
saying.
talking.
Okay.
A lot of people think this film is about much David Lynch stuff, abuse, like very, very dark abuse that happened to Betty, Diane, whoever, Naomi Watts, long ago. What do the old people represent? Like, this terrifying like specter of her life, long ago, right? Like who then finally charged her before she dies.
The family past that
Like-
she ran away from, but also is running back
Right.
to, and
Why
can't
does
escape.
she suddenly like flip a switch when she's in this like creepy scenario
Yeah.
where this dad figure is suddenly has his hands all over her? You know what I mean? Like, what does the cowboy represent? What does the best moment in the movie in Club Silencio, not to jump a little bit forward,
Yeah.
when essentially the guy just, makes thunder noises and she starts rattling in her seat. What does that represent if not someone surfacing like some kind of trauma? And the trauma can be, oh, this is the dream of a woman who had her girlfriend killed and like that's it coming out, right? Or it can be something else. And like much David Lynch, such as Twin Peaks, is about him trying to reckon with that like unspeakable darkness.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
I would almost argue that for me, this is the best scene in the movie as opposed to Silencio.
I think Silencio is the best. But this is amazing.
I would listen.
It's weird to rank scenes in Mulholland Drive.
It would be strange. But I would say that this was the scene that like that moved the film from intriguing,
right? Like what's going on here,
into cementing it as a masterpiece in my mind.
Right.
So maybe it's not the best or the most important.
No, but whatever. This is the scene where you're right, where you're suddenly like.
And what I felt was watching it for the first time. What I felt was survival. That's what I thought watching her was that she switched the power dynamics and the status of everybody.
Yes.
For survival.
Yes.
So it's not
she's being thrown into the water, kind of.
And,
right.
And that the way that she combats that is a weird mixture of acquiescence and agency.
I agree.
It's so weird.
I agree. This is my exact read.
She's playing the role they all want her to play.
It is
the diamond in the rough.
But she makes it's very clear that with the hand pushing the hand further onto herself.
Close.
And for her to say like, yes, we're doing this, but I am going to protect myself.
It is
within.
My read is it is a Faustian bargain.
Yeah.
Right.
And the key part of the story of Faust is that Faust says, yes, the deal is presented to him.
Yeah.
And he goes, I think I can make this work. Much like Ed Hosley.
Yeah.
He goes, I can make this play out in my favor.
Right.
Right.
He's sort of ostensibly not being tricked.
Right.
It's like, the deal's on the table and you know what it is.
Here's a guy setting up fake rules for a game, right? He's saying, well, we're doing that classic thing where we play it real close. You're a fucking creep and you want to touch my body.
You're disgusting.
Right?
Yeah.
You're giving them the look like, hey, I'm going to do the same thing with her I did with that other woman earlier. You're like, okay, so when he thinks they're attractive, he plays the scene
especially
a
as
different way.
we now know this is kind of a fake audition in a weird way.
Then he's turning to her and saying, like, because acting is reacting. I need to be getting something to react off of.
Right.
And it's turning into this bullshit lesson to justify why he's acting like a creep.
Right.
Yeah.
But she actually takes that lesson.
She actually reacts. Right.
Where she goes, fuck, if he's going to do something that is not allowed, then what can I get off of this? What he's doing that unlocks a different part of the performance. Whether it's unlocking something because it is tied to a memory of an experience she's had, or
exactly,
it's an
or
idea
this is
or whatever.
Just how Hollywood is. Where you have to do
she
this.
thinks, well, if you do this, and especially if I can use this and turn it into art, make it into something ecstatic,
as someone
I'm in control again.
And as someone that has been very deeply abused in this industry, your instinct is to somehow, you have to survive it.
Turn lead into gold or
in
whatever.
The moment you have to survive it. And you just go into fight or flight.
Yeah.
But I think what this scene is exemplifying is, like I was saying, it's somehow you have to transcend what's happening to you.
Because once
it's almost like because that's abuse, right? Is that you just leave your body, and you just go into a particular survival mode. And what's so awesome about this scene is that her version of that switches the status of everybody in the room.
Yeah, here's another thing. As the last 8 years, there's finally been a more open discourse about this sort of abuse of power in Hollywood. And when there's literal abuse, or when even just the abuse is people putting in this type of situation.
Yes.
This kind of test.
Yeah.
To offer this as a test is
It is a test. It is absolutely a
test.
It's
a test. It's how bad do you want it, which is the fucking shorthand people use when they play scenes like this out, right?
Yeah. It is this test of if you withstand this in this moment, not you have to do it right now.
Yeah.
How are you going to survive this? Then, if Hollywood runs on fear, they are in that moment. You are asked to produce the fuel of this, of this fucking city and this industry.
And the thing I find interesting in a way that's emotionally overwhelming, but the last 8 years where suddenly it's like the black box has been opened, and there's a landscape in which people can share stories as survivors, right?
Right.
You
and it's not just the most top extreme, like monster shit. It's the low
even
level.
Within one person, right? Who suddenly now like a ton of victims come out of the woodwork or whatever it is. Let's use like Kevin Spacey as an example, right?
Yeah.
You have stories where it's like he did this to this extreme, physical boundaries were crossed and this and that.
Yeah.
And there are also stories where it's like Anthony Rapp, right? Where he's like, he crawled on top of me and I pushed him off.
Yeah.
And some people would go, well, so he didn't rape you. What's the problem?
Right. Like,
And you're like,
take it to
moment
court, buddy.
He creates the test of I'm trying this and seeing how you respond.
Yeah.
Your reality has forever been broken. Something has changed in that room.
Yeah.
The second the guy says nice and close, it's like, well, fuck. Do you walk out of the room? Do you play it?
It's even below, right? Forget Spacey. It's right. It's more just what you're talking about, just the general context of a casting
It's
scene.
before the scene starts.
Yeah.
Of just where no one would ever, call the police over, like, there was an awful
That's the thing.
vibe to this casting
The shocking thing that I experienced, again, being very intensely abused, is in this industry is it comes out of nowhere. It's even if you know the person is abusive, you're still surprised that it's
They
directed
actually
at you,
did it.
and you're shocked that they actually did it within that context. Going back to what you were saying about Winkies and just the understanding that unhoused person.
We just agree that she doesn't open the door and come in here. That's her space, and this is our space.
There is a bizarre thing that happens when you are shoved or screamed at or threatened.
Yeah.
That you are in a room full of people like this. Full of people, usually men. Usually, older men. And there is no one helping you.
Yeah.
No one steps in and says, stop doing that to her.
And also sometimes it's 3 women sitting on a couch watching it happen.
Exactly.
And
like
you're looking at them and you go.
And almost checked out. Like, just like,
and the feeling is, they're not acting like this is weird.
Right.
Well,
so
that's the thing.
I weird for thinking something's weird?
Exactly. And there's no reaction shot. That's the other thing.
Right.
And I think that's how he expresses probably what he has experienced.
Yes.
Is that the abuse happens and then there's no reaction. And so the audience is going, I'm expecting a reaction. And it's like, no, it's only your reaction, viewer.
Right.
You're the only person who's going to react to what is happening to her.
Yes.
You might just watch this movie and not think about it. Like, that's the scene where she crushes the audition. And then you see it a second time and you're like, oh, it's funny how they're arranged. Like the people in the room. And then you watch it again, you're like, oh, I see how the old guy is not acting, is trying something. What, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, right, whatever.
Right.
It's
there's more
kind of the crux
performance
of the
in the
movie.
setup of the audition than there is in the performance that happens within the audition.
There's a lot
of everyone playing their roles,
there's
of
this-
being benevolent and happy.
performative kind of, absolutely.
And then it's like what we're saying of where the fuck did this come from? What did she just drop into? It's like the veil has dropped and now she's actually in the context of I'm faking it, achieving a greater reality.
That is what's crazy. It's like, oh my God, it's so triggering because you're right. It's like you come into the situation and everybody is so like cordial.
Yes.
Everybody is behaving the way that we have all agreed that people behave. And what's so shocking, and again, my experience, it's this particular industry, is that there is this performative aspect of this is a safe, not even safe space. This is just a normal space. This is just a normal, work.
This is how it is.
This is just how it is. We're all working, you know, and then all of a sudden this violence happens.
Yeah.
And you cannot process it.
Yes.
What you're forced to do in that moment as a victim is you have to process it as something that is, again, what I think Lynch does so well in this movie. You have to process it as something that is probably one of the worst things that has ever happened to you, and this like horrible, horrific moment. And yet you're also feeling this oppressive normality coming at you.
Right.
There's no
how do you force yourself to cry in a controlled environment?
Exactly.
It is unnatural to be able to make yourself cry when you're not actually being punished.
Yes.
Or suffering.
Yeah.
Right?
If you cannot, you just sort of fall into this. That's why this scene feels, like you said, the first time you watch it, you're like, what a fucking brilliant actress. Like
Right.
what I don't even know what's
You're thinking about
unfolding in front of me.
Naomi Watts.
You're thinking about Naomi Watts.
Yes.
And
You're
it's
not-
only
yeah,
later. I mean, you have that kind of moment when he touches her.
Sure.
And then,
but again, I do feel like a lot of the people at the time were probably like, old Hollywood.
yeah, you just kind of
guys.
breeze over it. Yeah. And
Right.
watching it exactly like in the time that we're
Even
in
though
now.
we're not in the time this movie comes out, even though it was a culture where people were not allowed to share their stories of their experience in this kind of way,
Yeah.
it was so well known that movies like fucking Toy Story 2 can make a joke about Stinky Pete, like having a private
Right.
audition with the Barbies.
Yes. Yeah.
And you
yeah,
were
yeah.
like, this is shorthand in a kid's movie. Everyone knows.
But I mean, but
So
you did
creepy.
just, it's just the most wonderful Griffin thing in the world that you're like, I mean, like we all knew Stinky Pete was right there with
He's
the
right there.
Barbies.
He's telling you it's normal that he's staying in the box, and it's not.
And it's, yeah.
It's not. That's not normal. No, I think, acting is a great expression of this idea because it's an art form that is just about manipulating your own emotions in your body and
That's
brain.
correct. Yeah.
Right? But I think most artists who are able to work in grand emotion in any way, make things that make people feel and represent great feeling.
Yeah.
Not to make a blanket statement, but very often that either comes out of some trauma they experienced in their life up until that point that put them in touch with something dark and deep, right? Or you are born with like an innate painful sense of sensitivity.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if your experiences in your life, as Lynch sort of describes his childhood of like,
Nice
my childhood was
childhood.
actually the white picket fence.
Right, right.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
I say to you, these things actually represent worth to me. I was
Yeah.
not living in the darkness underneath the grass.
Yeah.
But clearly is a guy who was born with like this innate, my skin is ripped off, my nerves are exposed, I'm noticing everything, I'm feeling everything.
Yeah.
And that allows me to then bring those feelings back up to the surface again.
You crush the audition. You get to go see
Yeah.
Adam Kirsch, but then of course it's like, no, it's too late. He's already being forced to cast
Sure.
this other
That's right.
person.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Yep.
they have this. They exchange this look. Again, feels sort of like a TV pilot thing of like next week on
Later.
Mulholland Drive,
Right.
we'll see whatever that is.
But
Exactly,
in a fixed object, it becomes this is the one.
It's this moment where
Yeah.
it could have happened, and then now we're moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She goes back, and then the mystery resumes where she and Rita then like go to this house, and they sort of find their way in. There's the sort of scorned other woman.
They think it might be her.
Correct. This might be
Her
her house.
home.
And
This will
instead,
unlock
they
the
find
mystery.
a rotting corpse in the bed.
And I
Right.
just
The
have to
TV
clock.
pilot, to be clear, ends here.
Wow.
That's it.
Oh, got it.
Yes.
I just have to clock that Rita is wearing the craziest thing I've ever seen. She's like Morticia or something
Yeah.
with those sleeves. It's just wild.
And then right after that, of course, they make her seem even more normal by putting her in a crazy blonde wig.
Yes.
To basically being like, we're afraid for your life. And then the scene after that, it is so funny to imagine the phone call of like Lynch is like, I started writing. The next scene is you fucking a bed.
That's yeah.
I mean,
This-
it's right to it. You know, it's
I
like,
was-
that's
I
the
was-
next
This
thing.
movie's now rated R.
I was not out when I saw this scene.
Sure.
And I have to say, like, again, it was just so it was just I don't know what to say. I do believe that when you're a queer person, there's sort of a moment where you get unlocked.
Sure, something
sort of happened. Like my
helps you
wife says, like when
refocus.
she saw Ellen, come out,
Yeah.
come out, or at some point watching Ellen, she was like, "Oh, that's what I am."
This is why representation matters.
A blue key.
It's why
in
It
a
is.
way,
I hate
right?
to sound like
It's so
a
true,
horny
though,
little
But you
fuck.
go like,
Yes.
this mirrors something that speaks to something in me. Here's a blue key. I'm opening a new door.
I'm opening a new
Yep,
door, and
yep.
I hate the phrase "representation matters,"
But it
it
does.
sounds corny,
The
but
second I
sometimes
saw
it
this,
does.
and it's why everyone who complains about it needs to shut the fuck
they just
up
need to shut the fuck
forever.
up. They just also the sex scene is so intense, meaning like they feel like they have already been.
That's why
lovers.
it's such an interesting sex scene.
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah.
like they get it. I remember my audience laughing very clearly when, it's like Rita gets in bed naked. There's this kind of, oh no, yeah, chumminess that then they
Yeah.
have this kind of kiss, and Betty asks, have you ever done this before? And Rita's like, I don't know. And I remember my audience laughing because it's like,
that, but it's
yeah,
funny.
she doesn't
I mean,
fucking
she
know.
doesn't know.
She's
I mean,
an
again,
amnesiac.
it's like the girl getting punched by the golem. Like there's just
Right.
this sort of pop of like a pun, or
Right.
a,
That's objectively a funny little thing for her to say at this
Yeah.
moment. But then, right, they have this moment where it's like it feels like they've been doing this forever, but
Yeah.
also they don't even know each other. One of them doesn't even know who she is.
Yeah.
It's like very intimate, but it's
And
also
again,
very
Betty
fumbling.
Betty is coded very heterosexual.
Of course.
Like, so
Like,
you're just
I
like,
want
what?
to with you, she keeps saying. Like
Right.
this kind of like,
Yeah.
This happens to me anytime I have sex. The person then falls asleep and then wakes up and starts saying, no, I banda, silencio, silencio.
Yeah, no,
you
I bond
hate
it. Yeah, very
We've
normal.
I'm there
been
smoking my cigarette and they're like, no, I banda. And I'm like, here we go.
Okay.
I
Gotta
think
go
that-
to Club Silencio.
The old ball and chain going off again.
What I like about her doing that, or I would say again, my experience of watching her doing that and then going into Silencio is this sort of, and her, and then Betty shaking, is that there's this sort of breakdown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, the whatever we're in is coming apart. At
You've
the
Yes,
same
acted
exactly.
upon
There's some sort of
a feeling
Yeah, there's
that
something.
alters your reality.
Yeah.
And Club Silencio is
Sense of
very
self,
different
yeah.
from like the lodge in Twin Peaks, but still there is a big red velvet curtain.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a place where someone comes out and is basically saying, this is a dream. Not to say that Leslie's reading on the film is
I have a reading on this. Keep going. Keep going.
but
keep going.
but obviously
this is a dream. Yeah.
beyond the fact that it's about maybe someone saying like you are in a dream, it's also about Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Like this is all a tape recording.
Place
This
where
is
dreams
staged.
are made, the dream
Right.
factory.
Exactly. You
Again,
know.
this is why it feels like it's about a dream instead of it's not. It is a dream because
Yeah.
he's saying,
I love that.
There's no band. None of this is real. None
Yeah,
of this is
fun.
real. None of
Right.
this is real. And then, of course, it's very real to them. And
Yes.
even as a viewer, I remember seeing it for the first time and going, I when she falls, I actually had forgotten.
Yeah.
And I think that was the point. I think when the guy from the motel comes out
Yeah.
and he does something, he says something or does something,
Cookie.
and
He comes out next after
and
the
you
magician.
do think, in some way, your brain just goes, "This is a different scene." And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because you recognize the actor or you recognize it. So suddenly there's this weird, like, I don't know if it's and then maybe it's he uses that blinking lights or electricity a lot to like
yes.
signal some sort of transition. So I think that it's the blue light on the microphone. Is that what happens after the No Hay Bando?
So he no I banda,
Yeah.
the guy comes
Banda.
out with the muted trumpet, which I love, where he's
Yeah,
and then he like,
again, probably just
do you love this, Ben?
I do.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it's silly. It's
it
very
is-
silly.
It's silly and scary. It's kind of funny and also kind of profound.
Again, with the geographical location, I just love that he's pinging downtown LA here.
Yeah.
Right, sure.
Which is like honestly a part of LA that very rarely anything takes place in because it's
Well,
so
Geely.
Does it?
Am I wrong?
You're right that Gigli is set in downtown Los
Oh,
Angeles.
okay.
and I'm glad that you brought it
But-
up on
And that was part of
Mulholland.
Martin Brest's argument for why
He was
wanted
like,
to
no
make
one ever
that
talked
film.
about this. We're going to keep moving.
And he had a lot of interesting stuff to say. about
The
it.
guy who plays the magician is Richard Green. The guy's called the magician in the script, which is sort of interesting to think about. And he says that Lynch would not let him read the script, but built a full body cast of him that he was going to set on fire as part of this scene, and
Are
then
you kidding me?
decided that would look stupid, and they didn't do it. And instead, he does the thing with the thunder and lightning, right, where Betty starts shaking, and then he vanishes in a puff of smoke.
Oh, right, he does.
He sure does. And then we have the blue light, and then out comes Cookie and is like, please welcome Rebecca Del Rio. And she comes out and she sings Roy Orbison's Crying in Spanish. And it's the most perfect scene in history of film.
If I'm remembering correctly, the blue-haired lady is the script supervisor or the
Oh, like who plays the?
Yeah, it's
in the
like a-
movie, she represents the script supervisor. That's
Yeah.
who she is. But she's the script girl.
No, it's somebody
you're
on
right.
the crew.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
somebody on the. I thought that about the muted trumpet guy as well.
I think you're right.
You get
These
this
are
sense that
folks.
I agree that it's silly. It's like you get this sense that he's just grabbing people.
Well, it's
Not
one of
the singer,
things,
obviously.
yes,
Yeah,
it's one
yeah.
of the things that helps maintain such an odd reality in all of his work. Is he like puts actors at wildly different levels together?
Yeah.
Right, where you're like you have people who are naturalistic and people who are heightened
Yeah,
and
she was
people
a
who are
script.
from an old school. You
Yeah.
know, like Coco, where you're just like, oh, wow, right. This is someone who hasn't acted since the 50s. This is a different type of movie acting. And here's someone who doesn't think of themselves as an actor at all and is
Right.
just an energy and a look that he recognizes.
Yes.
And these people are all interfacing with each other.
Yes.
The
yeah.
magic of the song where she's singing, it's like, for one, the dreamy thing or like the things are being refracted, right? Like an
Yep.
old 50s, 60s, whenever Crying is from, my favorite Roy Orbison song that's being like sung in another language by a different person, right? And it's so intensely emotional, but maybe you don't know what she's saying, right? If you don't know Spanish. and she's so in it, but then she faints dead away and the music keeps going. So like the artifice is completely laid bare for you of
but
it,
also
but
like
it's
familiar
nonetheless
things
so
being
powerful.
made unfamiliar.
Right? It is
I know
everything.
this song, but
yes,
why are
like,
they?
What's this? Is
why
funny.
is she singing it in Spanish?
Right.
Yeah.
This movie isn't in Spanish.
And then kind of the creepiest thing to me, creepiest unspoken thing, is that they go back home and Betty just disappears.
Yeah.
And then it's just Rita in the apartment by herself. And then she's like, I guess I'll
they get
open the blue box.
Well, they get the
but like Betty's just gone and no one like says anything.
They get the Betty takes out the at Silencio. Betty takes out the cube,
and suddenly the cube has
materialized.
Right. Yes.
And her manicure is terrible. I just want to also say that.
Wow.
Not unlike all of their costumes. Like it's just bad.
Yeah. Fake nails.
But and then we are in the other part of the movie. Time to wake up.
Uh-huh.
Where should we start with this? I want to start with Watts' 180.
Okay.
I mean,
you lead
the
us
most powerful
fucking shit
trick of the new world is how different she is in look, in attitude.
But also the movie looks different.
It does. Yeah, her apartment looks weird and creepy.
But beyond that, you have to think about in the pilot, the footage that was shot for the pilot, you are still trying to conform to television standards, which is this pilot, despite being shot on film by Peter Deming, by a filmmaker, was going to be aired on standard definition 4:3 television.
100%. Yep.
I was wondering about
you
that.
You have to light things pretty brightly because people's TVs aren't well calibrated.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And now it's
I wonder how much, right? Because they talk about how they sort of tried to adjust it.
That's the thing, because you're unlocking now at this point in the movie him designing images that he knows will be projected on a bigger screen. People are going to actually be able to engage with this imagery in a very different physical form.
Yeah.
And so suddenly it's like the texture of the film stock, the color palette of the movie, the angles, all these things become totally different while her performance is in an entirely different register.
You're absolutely right. This is why I think, and again, I don't disagree. I would never disagree with somebody saying that the first 2/3 are a dream and then the last third is.
I present that more as the sort of basic reading, not consensus even, just kind of like that is a basic reading one can have of Mulholland Drive.
But there are two things I'm going to do. I'm going to offer up a reason why I don't think it is, and a reason why I absolutely would agree that someone would think it is.
Well,
the first one is that the reason I kind of get hung up on the whole first part as a dream is all of the changes of POV. And I'm not saying that you don't dream.
Right. Why are we suddenly with this person?
Why are we here and we're suddenly with somebody else? It doesn't feel like, only because, not that you can't be in different storylines in a dream, but they're so tonally,
we're being dropped into the middle of things.
Yes.
It's odd.
Yeah.
Yes. Things like the Hitman and
it doesn't
the
feel
Winkies.
like Betty's, anyway, so that's one thing that kind of trips me up about it. What I will say that the why I think people immediately go to the place of this is reality, or this is who Diane actually is Watts' performance. Is that but I mean, it is very, but again, it's very over the top. The way she behaves when she sees Camilla, that weird, like, and then smiling and like, this, like, he came back. Like, it's this horrifically pathetic mirroring Adam Kesher, like just, and having been
she's pathetic in every way. Like she's pathetic there.
So she sees,
not to be rude about
no,
it.
but she does that. She does it at Camilla. She does it at Camilla.
Her a tree.
She suddenly has this. Then she retracts and she kind of does it, and then we cut to her looking at herself.
Yeah, it's such a cool.
As you move on, so as you move on for the rest of the story, there is this feeling of, unlike Kesher, there's this feeling that she has the self-awareness of her pathetic. But the fact that she's pathetic.
Yes.
Because
which is, I mean, all the stuff we're talking about the decisions you make in the industry to what you will accept to get ahead and whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, but then you cross a line and you're on the other side of reality, which is just like, this is just who I am. I've made this bed for myself.
And when I watched this in the theater, this in the masturbation scene, and I really don't mean to get too dark here.
Please.
But when I watched her seeing Camilla and standing in that kitchen with that shitty coffee maker, and then the masturbation scene, I was like, this is me. Like I related with it so, and again,
I mean, I also
I was just like, how has he? So I get awakened.
How does he know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. I was like the lesbian scene awoke something in me. Again, it was so not dreamlike, but dream fulfillment-y that they were like
yes.
beautiful. They already know each other, and then you get dropped into this like horrifically lonely, desperate, pathetic place that.
I jerk off to Pebbles all the time in my jorts, just FYI. So I don't want that.
I have 2 Pebbles here on my desk. I pull them out of my shoe sole if you want them for later. Not to get too horny on Maine.
The thing that blew my mind, too, in seeing this, and I constantly use this as a reference, too, is that I just think it is the most... I know that it's very dark, and the tone around it is very dark, and the character is very dark, and is in a very dark place.
Yes.
But the actual masturbation is so realistic to female masturbation. Like usually when you saw it in movies,
hard, sweaty work.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like when you,
I'm not joking.
You would see very intense male masturbation in films. Like you would see the sort of emptiness afterwards. This kind of.
Whereas with women, it's like this sort of.
They're like,
the head goes in the secret place.
Right.
It's
interpretive dance.
And they're sort of, yeah, and it's like still beautiful. And
Joan Allen makes a tree catch on fire.
She does. Well, hey, wait a second.
Exactly.
It was pretty intense of her.
Like Pleasantville,
but that's her in a bath and she and then like color.
And suddenly like she's in color. It just to watch this, and again, I don't mean that every time it's like Pebbles and like
she could just be looking at something that's not just fucking cobblestones on the wall, in and out of focus.
Well, I felt like she's imagining,
she's remembering this sex they
trying
had,
to do that, and she cannot conjure it up. That's why, again, about a dream, she's trying to recall and hold on to that
herself
dream.
back in
somehow I'm
and
going to
it
be
keeps
back.
losing it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, nope, shitty life. Because the scenes are, it's
Nope,
like
shitty
life.
It's her making coffee and seeing, she thinks Camilla, it's just herself.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's her on set remembering, we assume, Adam like kissing Camilla, being like, this is how we're going to do this scene, right?
Yeah.
Where she's like dressed in this really dowdy costume as some like shitty tiny character, like watching, sort of with
It's
envy.
also this.
And then the sex scene that she's remembering and the masturbation.
Yes, I mean the loneliness, the intense.
She's pathetic in all these scenes in different ways,
and the intense fantasy, like to have those things. Again, it's like I just feel like he's trying to capture some sort of like. All of this stuff is happening at the same time. Your future, your past, what you want in life, what's actually happening. The dangerousness at daytime, the dream of having a comfortable home, understanding that like somebody can love you and also not want to be with you. Like there. Again, I do get why when you drop into it, it does feel like reality. But I think it's because again, that first shot of Blue Velvet, I think, just cemented him into this idea that the dream is good. Mm-hmm. Everything that is good is the dream, and everything that is bad is reality.
And that the dream is a lie.
And that the dream is a lie.
Right.
I don't think.
And the ear is.
But like the dream
truth.
is not good exactly. The dream
that's
is
the point.
weird.
That's the point.
That's what I'm saying. It's
that's
weird
my
and
point.
jarring.
Listening to him or reading his interviews about a lot of stuff, it just feels like he's trying to, or not even trying, he's accomplishing. I think that's why people are always saying it's a dreamlike state, because that's the only time we are actually aware that that's happening. I think right now I'm having a podcast.
Right.
Having a podcast. I'm
Thank you
on
for
a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with being here. I love this movie.
You've been here for so long. And
I've been here for so
really
long.
bad.
I'm obsessed. Like this is so. But there's this. As I'm sitting here, there's all kinds of things going through my mind.
Yeah.
Right? There's things I have to do. There's things that I did do. There's like, I'm in watching images that he has put together. I am remembering being 26 years old, living in Hollywood and feeling absolutely desperate, and that I was never going to make it, and I was never going to get paid, and I was never going to get into the union,
and you're trying to game it out in your head. If I were to make it, what do I need to do? What am I fucking up right now?
And the only thing,
what am I willing to give up in order to get to the other side?
And exactly. And what I relate with so much in this section is the only way you can survive that level of depression, borderline personality disorder, whatever you want to call it. In my experience as a person with mental health issues and having come out and addiction issues and having come out the other side. When you're in it, though, you have to hang on to the dream.
Yeah.
And usually the dream is other person centric. Because that's much more tangible than the dream of becoming famous, the dream of being, Stanley Kubrick, the dream that's never going to happen because that's not what Hollywood is anymore.
But I think with aspiring for success, fame, whatever it is, notoriety,
yes,
the other person centric can be, and this is back to the core of what this movie is.
But
Kristen Stewart, version of yourself. It can be a version of a different person.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be, I'm 100%. So in love with this person and I'm building my entire dream around the idea of our relationship. It could be your relationship to the version of me that has made it on the other side.
That's exactly right. And if you're super, Kristen Stewart, Mark Ruffalo, these are
so good we brought this up. And David was scoffing.
He was scoffing.
Now,
he was trying to cut us off.
People are throwing awards at us.
I want to speak.
We did it.
I wish to speak.
But one thing that I noticed was I would have sexual partners at that time and at that very, very dark time in my life. And my experience was you do enter this weird liminal space where what's elusive is the approval of an entire industry, right? What's elusive is, Bob Booker didn't like me in the audition.
Yeah.
What's elusive is I don't understand why this person is making it and I'm not making it. I don't get why I'm getting the chance to make the movie, but I have to have it be this girl. And therefore, the monomania of if I got the approval from this one person, do you know what I mean? Then it would be a tangible. And that's why I think it's about a dream. That's the dream.
If I could just blank, I'd be happy.
I'd be happy.
I'm not even saying I need all of it.
If I could fuck this person again, even if I'm begging for this person to fuck me again.
The David, other fantasy that she is indulging, in both sides of the story, but in the dark side, is what if I fucking killed that person who is the responsible for all my misery, right?
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, it's Camilla. She took my parts. She screwed me over romantically.
Yeah.
She's the reason I'm not what I wanted to be.
Totally
blah, blah,
agree.
blah.
Yeah.
Because the idea of hiring Mark Pellegrino as your hitman, one, Mark Pellegrino's too hot to be your hitman.
Two, we've watched it. This guy turns into a fucking Keystone Cops routine, bungling the job.
We've all seen Netflix's
Keystone
Hitman.
Cops.
There's no such thing as Hitman anyway. But right, the fantasy of I hired someone to kill her.
Sure.
That's a fantasy too, even if this back half of the movie is the real Diane or however you want to think about it.
But also at that
it's
point,
another
you're basically
Hollywood story.
creating a loop, which is why is she being driven in a car to get killed at the beginning?
Well, that's the thing.
Because the greatest wish is that you had never met her in the first place, that you stopped the first meeting from happening in a certain way.
But
you can kill her, but what does that solve? Because you have the experience.
But it's also the imagination maybe of but what if I hadn't killed her? Or what if she hadn't died?
Right.
And she'd escaped and we'd found each other again.
Yeah.
In the city of dreams, Hollywood.
Yes.
And we'd figured this out. It would go great. I would go too great at that audition, which would be normal and not actually unsettling if you think about it. And it would be great. And we would solve the mystery. What's in the mystery? It's me in the bed dead. Of a drug overdose.
Yeah.
I can't escape. It's that's the Lynch thing of I've made it to the end of my dream. Oh God, I'm back where I died, essentially.
Right.
Because the end of this movie, it's the scenes we talked about, and then the party, its own kind of Hollywood nightmare of you're dolled up, you look good. No one at this party wants to fucking talk to you.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing better than you. Right?
Which I think is the absolute core base reality of what drives most people insane pursuing a life in show business is it's actually never enough.
And one thing that I think that this last part of the movie is hitting so many specific pieces of pain, that occurred in the first 2/3 of the movie. They popped, they happened, the impotence, the abuse at the audition, Winkies. There's all these kind of violent moments.
Right.
But there is this, when I saw the movie, again, later in my 20s when I was in Los Angeles, there was this what I identified having experienced it then was there is a really specific, almost exquisite type of pain being in such close proximity to it.
These people who are making it, they're making the movies, they're so famous, they're so successful.
And I'm here for some reason. I feel displaced. I'm
in a dress. I even look good, but it doesn't matter.
I don't have my, like with Rita, I don't have my memory. I'm making up my personality as we go along. My North Star is this person I'm maniacally obsessed with.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way to anchor yourself in those situations.
Year of me trying to audition and not getting callbacks, I was less miserable than when I had transcended to the point where I was testing for stuff but not getting the part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And everyone else was like, well, you're doing well. You're getting further along. Progress is being made. And I'm like, no, the fact that I'm closer makes it harder.
Speak, Ben.
Isn't it the dinner party where the accident takes place?
Well, like, you mean like
where she gets dropped off
Mm-hmm.
is kind of where we start.
Yeah.
After the horrible dinner party, it's just her at Winky's with Mark Pellegrino and him saying, like, when I do it, you're going to get this blue key. And then we just go to the back of the diner. The hobo is there, which is in the pilot. That is in the pilot. Just a shot of the hobo sitting behind the diner. So clearly it was this idea that Lynch had.
And he was like, I'll get to in episode 20, and instead had to add the earlier thing to set it up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Why?
But then this is not in the pilot, which is then the hobo puts down the blue box and little goblin old people run out of it.
Excuse me. You said that incorrectly.
Goblin people run out of it going, and then they charge her.
Like they're the fucking borrowers.
They're borrowers, but then they're full size. Yeah. And then she shoots herself and she's dead.
But for whatever reason, when I saw it, and I'm just trying to conjure that feeling. The old people were so fucking scary.
They're scary.
I mean, it was like, the top scariest things in this movie are like Goblin and the small old people.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if they represent anything. It was just so horrible. And
part of it is I can't make sense of this.
Yeah.
It's terrifying how unknown
deranged.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really deranged to see old people act this way and smile and look like they could hurt you.
I think it's why it speaks to so many people who watch the movie is like, right, the original horrible thing, whatever it is, right? It's something like that, like this, it's something so unspeakable that they represent.
That's
right? It's not just like guilt of like, oh, my fucking shitty life in Hollywood. Right. It's like, no, this is all the way down.
This is some sort of, this is actually, the word that's coming to mind is like demonic. Like this is demonic. This is like, I did want to come back to I know that we were like, Mark Pellegrino's too hot to be a hitman, and then he leaves the key. And I guess if there were one part of the movie I don't buy, it's that part. And I wanted to ask you guys, like,
that's
why
what
do
I was
I
sort
feel
of saying
that way?
about like it feels dream, like it's too clean. A hitman, a blue key, like does it feel a little obvious that it's like the blue key is kind of looped up for you.
They're about to it's like
is it too neat?
Because it's one of Lynch's clues. Who gives a key and why?
Yeah.
That's right. It's like, I feel like he sat down for 10 minutes. He was like, lampshade,
key, Sylvia North story. I think also it just feels so, there's this abruptness to it that seems almost like it's trying to shift gears into like, like I'll run up to the end of the movie and the suicide.
Well, he's like literally shifting gears on the notion of how this story was going to be told.
Yes, and Camilla and Kesher are about to announce something. And I think it's really interesting that they don't. It's like
it's going to be they're getting married. One assumes.
One assumes, although this time when I was watching it, I thought they were pregnant.
That was my read.
Yeah. I also love when she kisses the girl.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk
Melissa
about that
George.
or we don't care?
I mean, an iconic image. Like, I feel like that was a still image that was used all the time.
It was also
what's the dynamics, though? That's what I can't figure
I agree.
out.
But I think it's all about the transference of her making eye contact with Melissa Leo on the set of the audition.
George. If it was Melissa Leo, that would rock.
God, that would be cool.
Leo was the girl.
Let's consider.
Yeah, what if, wait a minute.
Let's consider
it's like,
Melissa Leo.
Like, this is crazy. I love Melissa Leo too, but the woman's a character actress. She doesn't read for Sylvia North.
But do you guys agree that wait a minute, hold on though. Do we agree that Melissa Leo did have a moment?
Yes, she did.
Wasn't there a time where she was the girl and she was pushed?
Yeah, before second act is character actress.
But
all right, I'm sorry. We have to move on.
we're moving on. Okay,
It's that moment where she locks eye contact. It's like, what is the trade-off here?
Yeah.
I could be her with the part,
right.
but then does she end up with the person I want to be with?
Yes. Yeah.
Whether that's literal or the idea, it's like, what's the give and take of every decision, every opportunity?
I agree with Ben. It's like, I don't know what the dynamics are, but the again, what I felt was the transference.
Yes.
I don't know if it was the transference of, it just felt like there was some sort of movement from that she's being left behind in so many different ways. But
it's
that
not literally
cemented
her being part of a throuple that New York Magazine will write a profile on.
But
and then we see the cowboy.
Yeah.
But we do see the cowboy. But it is also, I just feel like he is nailing this scene of like, right, I'm here. Nobody wants me here.
Yeah,
like the way
so
Coco
good.
talks to her.
This was the room you wanted to be in, and
right.
It
and it's like this is
and
the
nobody
worst,
wants you
right.
here. And like there's this I love that she's late. Like that
yeah, I like that too. I think it shows
that,
a lot of like integrity.
Yeah, she was just like, I'm gonna fucking
David is weird. I was looking for somebody to throw
darts
at you. I was looking for somebody to throw at you.
He's loading a gun.
I want to say that after the suicide, and the smoke rising from the bed, which is such an amazing just piece of imagery.
Oh, I agree. Like what a
cool,
bizarre
like,
kind of
this,
theatrical
like,
moment.
exhaust, right?
Yeah.
You have this image that makes me.
By the way, it reminds me of Silencio.
Yeah,
well,
like it
right.
feels
We're entering Silencio.
Yes,
sort
yeah.
of. In the like the last shot will be the blue lady,
yes.
blue-haired lady.
Yeah,
Marge, I call her.
As you should.
But this image that kind of makes me well up, which is this like bleached out slow motion shot of them in their wigs, smiling in the car, right? Like this kind of, but it's like it's their dream, and now it's like so. Whatever, like lost or
abstracted.
It's like been dreamed over a million times or abstracted or whatever, and it's sort of like fading away, and it just speaks to everything he's thinking about Hollywood and like,
and also about what it feels
about
like
ourselves.
when you lose your keys. That's
and then she just never gets her keys back, and it's the worst part of the movie.
And doesn't that really grind your gears?
And then the blue-haired lady says silencio, which is Spanish for silence, and what she's telling everyone is shh.
Right. Huge Ellen Burstyn energy.
And then right. And then the credits start rolling, and the audience all stands up and goes, well, we understood that. That made sense. Let's get out of here.
Clean.
Or you go and take ecstasy.
Want to go to fucking Five Guys? Wait, so you hadn't taken it yet.
I don't think
this
so.
is what's interesting is the experience you're describing is its own weird Mulholland Drive loop of, did you take it before and watch the movie on it, or did you take it afterwards as a response?
No, you take it before a movie, then you're just to your like seatmate. You're gonna be like, "Hey,
well, I don't know. Maybe the first
I
two acts are the dream, or maybe the last act is the dream.
Listen, Spring Breakers really fucking hit.
Yeah, it does.
When I was impaired.
Let's play the box.
Leslye had one
game.
final point she was about to
please.
make.
No.
You were about to say something.
No, I was just going to say that I couldn't remember. I think that
feels appropriate.
I mean, I guess maybe I would just. The only thing I might still say is like to wrap up this incredible conversation is like I was fundamentally changed by this movie.
Yeah.
It instantly entered my top 10. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days, weeks. Again, it was my first David Lynch movie, and I feel like it actually bizarrely is a good entry point. If anyone listening to this,
I think that absolutely
certainly was for a whole generation.
It's sort of the question I asked on Blue Velvet. It's like, right, that and Mulholland Drive, those are the two kind of like David Lynch-er movies. Like, take your pick.
Right, 15 years apart.
Right,
Those were two entry points.
Agreed,
Right.
Or Twin Peaks.
But that's...
I think Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks are paired, and this and Twin Peaks The Return are paired of like the eras.
I love The Return. It's
pretty good.
What a fucking...
You haven't gotten to it yet, right?
No.
Well, I love the fact that The Return is a... This is why I love David Lynch. The Return is an unrecapable show.
It sure is.
Do you know what I mean? In a world,
it was very funny to watch the TV recap economy try
completely
and
break
fail
down
to deal with the return. Being like, we can do like kind of the Westworld theories thing with this thing, and then immediately being like, oh, maybe we can't.
God, they're going to be so sour when we do 4 podcast episodes on it and recap it perfectly.
I can't.
Don't worry. We're going to recap it so perfectly.
But I do feel like we live in this like consuming, content moment era.
The takes economy.
Where they, where you basically can just read the recaps instead of watching the episodes.
Right. But not Twin Peaks: The Return.
But
the thing with Twin Peaks: The Return is it is like the back half of Mulholland Drive to Twin Peaks, right? Where it's like David Lynch is like, "Oh, you want me to do more?" And people are like, "Yeah, can it be kind of the same?" And he's like, "No,
absolutely not."
But I have plenty of ideas.
Yeah.
And the same people will be in it. So will that make you happy?
We are so excited to say that this week's box office game is brought to you by our friends at Regal. With the Regal Unlimited program, it's an all-you-can-watch movie subscription pass that pays for itself in just 2 visits. See any standard 2D movie anytime with no blackout dates or restrictions. Here's what you should do. Follow the link in the show notes or go to the Regal app, click the Unlimited banner, and then follow the instructions to sign up and enter promo code BLANKCHECK when prompted to receive your 10% discount on your first 3 months. So box office game, this opens number one, $112 million opening weekend.
October 12th, record, right? 2001. This is opening limited on 66 screens.
Okay.
Number 14 of the box office. Number one of the box office is an Oscar winner from this year, Griffin. It's number one for the second week in a row.
It won a major Oscar?
It did.
It's not Beautiful Mind. That hasn't gone wide yet.
How does he fucking know this?
It won. It's Training Day would have been.
It's Training Day.
It's still wow. What say the date again?
It's second week, October 12th, 2001. It's in its second week, staying at number one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great, fun movie that I think is a bit of a breakout, surprise.
My
for a
brain
dark movie like that.
Always
that's
incorrectly
really R-rated.
Incorrectly thinks that movie came out in September because it was supposed to, got pushed back only like 2 weeks because of 9/11 because they were like, maybe let people rebound.
But you guys, I forgot this was in the fucking wake of. Oh my God.
Huge.
Because I was there, I was like 5 blocks away. I lived in the financial district when that happened.
Jesus.
It was fucking insane.
Yeah.
Talk about trauma.
Yeah.
But it was that weird echoey period where everything was
everyone's walking
so.
around
and a movie
in a
like
daze.
this that
Yeah,
like
yeah,
premieres at the Cannes Film Festival in May. And then comes out in theaters in October, and you're like, different realities.
This is 2 different. I mean, honestly, it's kind of perfect. I mean, it is the perfect kind of thing to consume where you're like, I want my attention.
Mm-hmm.
I want rapt attention on something.
Yes.
And I don't want it to be a straightforward narrative in any way.
There was a Training Day billboard on the West Side Highway that we would drive by every day when my dad drove my siblings and I to school that said like whatever, September 17th.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it for so many months that in my brain, I'm like, that movie came out in September.
This is our longest episode ever. Just have fun.
Yes,
right? I mean, no question.
You fucking did it.
Yeah.
All right, we got to wrap up.
Number 2 at the box
so
office.
Hungry.
I am too. I need to pee so hard. It's
Alex is going to be so mad that I
you're
trash him every time I come here.
Yeah.
Number 2 at the box office is new this week, Griffin. I feel like it's a film you liked at the time. It's a bit
I don't like it now.
I don't know how you feel about it now. I just feel like you were kind of riding for it. It was a bit of an underperformer.
Huh.
Big director, big
2001.
actors.
Bandits, which you're always rude to. That movie's solid.
Yeah.
It's got great
Bandits.
stuff in it.
I
and
still
it's
have the 2001
Sam
Oscar
Raimi?
watcher, Barry Levinson.
Barry Levinson.
I still have the 2000 Oscar watcher thing, like back then, 2001.
It didn't
like
have
where
the
I'm
juice.
like,
It didn't make
that
it.
thing's going to be huge, and instead it was like, okay.
This is Billy Bob Thornton?
Yep, and Bruce Willis and Kate Blanchett.
3 great performances. All 3 of them pretty excellent in that film.
But a film that slightly underperforms.
Yes.
Number 3 at the box office is a film I wonder if Ben Hosley saw. I'm not sure if he did. It's almost insulting for me to ask that question. It is a comedy film starring a member of the television show Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
In October 2001. It's not, is it?
A time when people need to laugh.
It is not an SNL spin-off movie.
It is not.
But it started, they were a cast member at this moment?
That's a good question.
It's not Corky Romano.
Yes, it was, and yes, it is. Chris Kattan is Corky Romano.
Rude. You guys want some cookies?
I'm kind of amazed that Corky Romano opened to $9 million. I'm like, that's a lot of money for
we were
Corky
a proper
Romano.
country once.
Wait, when was Zoolander at this point?
Zoolander had come out
sank like a stone.
3 weeks ago.
It's already
sank like a stone. It came out last week of September, and it's already out.
It's at number
down.
7.
It did?
Yeah.
That's all we could talk about.
Yeah.
All we talked about was Zoolander. I didn't
Here
realize
in New York
it tanked.
City, it was the center of the universe and bombed everywhere else. Truly,
that's
I
sort
think
of true, yes.
Yeah.
And America was definitely not ready for Zoolander right then.
But my friends and I were quoting it obsessively. We all went to go see it after school opening weekend. Donnie Darko comes out August?
I thought it was fall.
I mean, Donnie Darko also, and I believe Donnie Darko like
Had a
literally
long
came
tail,
out on like September 11th,
That's
basically.
Yeah.
And I might be wrong though.
But another one that like
it
bombed
might
in
be a little
theaters,
later.
but for a collection of people, it was like, well,
Cult.
this is clearly
That was
the
cult.
most
Instant.
important.
Instant cult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 4 at the box office is a rom-com that I've just never liked.
Serendipity. You're always, much like Bandits, rude to.
I just
I don't get
like
it.
it.
I agree.
Great.
It's a bummer.
I don't think it's bad.
I like
wouldn't
it.
even
It's the
argue
beginning
good,
of
but I don't
Cusack's
think it's bad.
curdled vibes.
That's the thing. That's what it is. It's tired Cusack.
He's good at playing mean Gen Xer, and they use it so well, right, in the High Fidelities of the world or whatever.
Yeah.
And by serendipity, you're like, he hates this. Like,
But yeah, as he's coming off, and he's coming off Malkovich. Like he's coming off like this. Oh, cool. I mean, maybe Lloyd Dobler can do whatever,
Right, can be
you
an
know.
A-lister,
And then he just goes
And High
straight.
Fidelities 2000, and then 2001 is Serendipity and America's Sweethearts, and it's like this guy has fucking
My sister loves American
listened
Sweetheart.
to the cowboy.
He listened to the cowboy.
The cowboy was like, sometimes there's a buggy, and it's called American Sweetheart.
Jesus Christ.
At least he's not in Corky Romano. That's what I would tell him.
Guys,
Number
some
5
cookies.
at the box office is a pretty solid thriller hit, famous for a line from the trailer.
I'll never tell.
Don't say a word.
Opened
Oh
against
my
Zoolander.
God.
Fucking crushed it at the box
She'll
office.
never tell.
People thought Zoolander was going to
Yeah.
do well.
Yeah.
Number 6 is Iron Monkey, the Hong Kong
yeah.
martial arts film with Donnie Yen, which Miramax is putting out. You
Oh,
got-
presented
right,
by
that's their
Quentin
year.
Tarantino.
That's their
Yes.
kind of like
Right.
let's get the Crouching Tiger
Mhm.
thing
exactly.
going. Yeah.
Anything we can get in there to make a
Tarantino
little
is
bit of
putting
money.
a stamp on movies from
That's
4 years ago
Right.
and releasing them
Hero.
wide.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got it.
You've got Zoolander. You've got Joyride, which is pretty fun. The Paul Walker.
I did a Photoshop of Deadpool faces on the poster.
Sure.
Everyone laughed.
Number 9, you've got a film I'm sure
Remember?
Griffin saw, Max Keeble's Big Move.
You know what? I didn't.
I guess you were maybe a little too old for it, right?
I'd say a little too sophisticated.
Of
I
course.
just have taste. Did I see Spy Kids 3 times in theaters the same year?
Spy
Of
Kids is
course.
good.
And Corky
that's my
Romano? Are you serious?
I saw Corky
Me,
Romano opening
Corky
day.
Romano?
Yeah, that's actually.
What about me says Corky Romano?
You've seen so many bullshit movies with SNL guys in them. That's one of them.
All right. I guess you have a point.
Did you see the one where Jamie Kennedy, who I know is not an SNL
Malibu's
guy?
Most Wanted?
Yeah, that one, Malibu's Most Wanted.
Yeah. That face says yeah.
How much worse is Corky Romano?
Ben,
Fine, I saw it.
I love you. And I want to say that I don't mean this in a pejorative way at all.
Yes.
You would actually love Corky Romano. If you watched it tonight, you would enjoy it.
I don't know if I've ever met anyone that has the taste that Ben has.
That's why he's
Never.
the secret
This
sauce.
is, he's the whole thing.
Not
he's
once.
the fucking brick and
He's
mortar.
the fucking Silencio scene. You're just like, I'm never going to totally understand it.
Yeah.
How is he offended by you assuming he likes Corky
Yeah.
Romano?
No, it's like it is Silencio
that doesn't
scene actually.
track with what I'm saying, but there is an
I
internal
can't
logic
believe
and
we
it's honest.
started this episode at
That-
10
but
a.m.
That's the thing. It is the Silencio scene
10 a.m. on
because it doesn't make any sense.
Friday. Now
But
it's
it's the
Sunday.
main thing you take away.
Yes.
It's the main thing you take
Number
away.
10 at the box office is Hearts in Atlantis.
Jesus,
A
what the
movie
fuck?
that eats farts.
It's the Shine guy directing Anthony Hopkins.
I remember convincing 3 friends we should go see
The
this. I hear
Shine
there's
guy.
a lot of Oscar buzz, and they
There
never
was.
let me live it down.
They shouldn't have.
They were like,
honestly.
that's not getting shit.
Yeah,
that thing is fucking goose egging.
Leslie,
Even in a light year, Hopkins
Leslie,
isn't getting a tip
Thank
of
you
the
for
hat.
joining us on Blank Check
You're
to discuss
oh my God,
Mulholland
I-
Drive.
I mean, this was a absolute
I'm really
pleasure.
sorry how long this
I can't
took.
wait. I can't wait. I
So
was settled in.
sorry.
I felt very
You
bad.
d- I will say your body language is relaxed.
I'm very relaxed. I felt bad about Zodiac.
Hey.
I felt like we could have dug deeper. I made a commitment to myself, and I broke the record.
Here's the thing about Mulholland Drive. We could still keep digging.
broke
There's
the
plenty to dig.
That's the thing.
could.
I was like,
Fine.
I could talk about this for another hour,
And you know
except
what?
we've been talking about it for 4 hours.
I
think.
guarantee a bunch of listeners are going to complain we didn't go 20 minutes longer. They didn't even talk about.
I wonder. I'm actually, you're right, and I'm trying to think what it will be.
What is the thing they did that we didn't talk
yeah,
about?
it doesn't matter. We can talk about it later.
We'll talk about not talking about it later.
Yes.
Leslie, Acolyte, Disney Plus.
Yep.
Right. Disney Plus.
You have a play off.
I have
on Broadway.
Yes, on Broadway. I have a play.
When does it start?
It's called Cult of Love, and we start rehearsals in October. I'm not exactly sure of our preview start. I think it's mid-December.
Okay, so
Yeah.
when this is posting, it's starting in about a month. Go buy your tickets now at the Helen Hayes.
That's right. Second stage, Helen Hayes.
Oh yeah.
Come, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
There's music.
As I told you,
Not a musical, but has music. In it.
As I told you, I saw Bachelorette when the second stage put it on Uptown many years ago.
That's right, you did.
And now you're back with the second stage. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't done theater in I want to say 8 years.
Yeah.
Wild.
So yeah, I'm really excited to get back into it.
I'm so excited. And
thank you both for
welcome.
having me again.
So great.
Come back anytime.
I said this to you before we recorded, but we had marked this episode as maybe this one's guestless, maybe this is too big, maybe we don't need a guest. And we had been wanting to find something to have you back on for. And it was like, let's just throw one flyer and see if she has any interest in doing this.
And I leapt.
If she wants to do it, we'd have a guest on. But it was truly, we didn't offer it to anyone else. We had put it behind bars.
I leapt at the chance. I of course wanted to come back. I had such a good time on Zodiac. I was very sad that it was only 2.5 hours.
It's so rude that you only gave us 2 hours and 45 minutes.
And I was thinking, I want to come back, but I it's hard to top Zodiac. I was like, it would have to be a movie that's also in my top 10. And so
next
I can't
time we'll have
believe
you on
guys
for Corky Romano. You'll wait until
perfect.
We do Corky when Ben chooses it. Because he's about to watch it and fall in fucking love.
I didn't realize that there's a timer behind me.
It's
part of
intentional design that we put it behind the guest's head so we're not making them self-conscious. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for helping to produce this show. Thank you to AJ McKeon for editing, being our production coordinator, Joe Bowen, Pat Rollins for our artwork, Leigh Montgomery for our theme song. Ben is rubbing his head like he's fucking Balthazar.
Just keep going, Griffin. Jesus.
JJ Birch for our research. Go blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon Blank Check special features. We do franchise commentaries. I think right now we're doing Andrew Lloyd Webber, finishing up Tabletop Games, something like that. We're recording this episode 15 years in advance, and we've been here for so fucking long. Tune in next week for Inland Empire. Correct?
Yeah.
And as always, Silencio. There I go.
This is the girl.
To get back to the subliminal
Sorry,
thing.
I'm on my phone. I just canceling something.
Please cancel.
Hell yeah.
I'm just canceling something that's happening in 2 hours.
Great.
Well, we will be done.
No,
But you
I
do
need
you.
to get
You
home
do.
and I need to.
Yeah.
So I apologize
You
for
do
being on my
No,
phone.
and
You're-
I'm just
do not
quickly, I'm going to check
apologize.
my phone because I have a flight a week from now, and I'm going to push that back.
Just keep going. Just keep going, and I'm going to jump back in.
I'm going to push back the flight.